ships in the Charleston Harbor, where he learned to sail and navigate the coast. And
Ah,
that knowledge would change the course of his life drastically. When the Civil War broke out in
yep.
April of
There we go.
1861, he was forced to work on the Planner, a steamer that served as a supply ship for the Confederacy. Robert became the ship's wheelman, and a year later, Robert did the unthinkable. He and other fellow enslaved crew members stole the Planner, sailed out of Charleston Harbor,
Mm-hmm.
right under the noses of Confederate guards and cannons. Robert brought the Union Navy ammunition, guns, valuable information. He then became a hero for the Union Army and was influential in recruiting black soldiers for the war effort. Robert went on to become a prominent South Carolina politician, served in the U.S. House of Representatives for multiple terms. He succeeded despite numerous forces against him. Southern Democrats determined to enforce white supremacy, threats from the KKK and other hate groups, and the rise of Jim Crow laws around him following Reconstruction. Robert Smalls valued hard work and determination. He embodied it. He was known for
Ah,
talking about how he never needed any special defenses or exceptions. All he needed was a chance to succeed, and succeed he did. Robert lived during one of the most rapidly changing politically and racially tense times in our nation's history, despite so many obstacles set in front of him along his path. Despite so many rooting for him to fail or worse, he didn't. He kept his damn head up. He was determined to make his mark on the world, and he sure did. I look forward to sharing his tale with you today and also reviewing the past year of the Suck and the special year end, inspiring, keep on trucking, because what the hell else are we going to do? Episode of Time Suck.
This is Michael McDonald, and you're listening to Time Suck.
You're listening to Time Suck.
Happy Monday and Happy New Year, Meat Sack.
oh,
Dan Cummins, the Suck Master, Dennis Helper, Lucifina's Boudoir photographer,
there they are.
Popcorn Sutton's Appalachian Moonshine distributor. And you are listening to the
Ah,
last Time Suck of 2021. Hail Nimrod, let's party, Lucifina. Come sit by the fire with me on Christmas. Bojangles, let's hang out, have some treats, sing some holiday songs. Michael motherfucking McDonald's. No announcements today other than sorry, Appalachia, for committing the cardinal sin of not knowing who the fuck Popcorn Sutton was. Whoops! I just thought he was a random dude with a funny name. Did not know he was an Appalachian moonshine bootlegging legend before he passed away. R.I.P. Popcorn. I'll think of you when drinking powerful whiskey and or when eating popcorn. Now for a special year-end show. I'm very excited. We got a topic, Robert Smalls, and then a big recap at the end, highlighting some jokes, sharing some thoughts for 2022, expressing a lot of gratitude. 2021. I know many of you have dealt with a lot of adversity, hard times in 2021. Nearly all of us have been surrounded by a lot of cultural divisiveness since world government started trying to figure out how the hell to deal with COVID. For many of us, the most cultural divisiveness we face in our lifetime. The most fear of, oh shit, well, now what? What's next? What's coming around the bend? What bad news am I waking up to tomorrow? Cultural and political tension we've dealt with pales in comparison to the shit Robert Smalls dealt with. My God. Cultural adversity he encountered is heartbreaking, and how much he overcame and how he refused to let being surrounded by so many people who fucking hated him actively work to make his life horrible for him simply because of how he happened to look. Well, it's inspiring. Robert Smalls lived through 4 distinct periods of American history, 4 periods when being African American was incredibly disadvantageous. Smalls was a slave during the slavery period of the pre-war South, then made it to the North, fought soldiers who wanted to either kill or enslave him once more during the American Civil War. Being on the winning side of that war, he had a promising political career, derailed, ultimately destroyed thanks to the racism of the Reconstruction era. Finally, in his last years, he watched many of the improvements he'd fought so hard for, from the battle for equality for black Americans be repealed thanks to the long push for segregation and disenfranchisement during the Jim Crow era. But he never let any of that shit break him. In the end, he died in the house he still owned, the home his slave master used to live in, the house he grew up in when he was a slave. As a young boy, the one he bought from people that once owned him, or, well, actually, he didn't buy it directly from them, but it was the house owned by the people that owned him. He died at the age of 75 after a long and successful life in a structure so symbolic of overcoming adversity. Let's hop in now. Steal some inspiration and fortitude from this valiant, freedom fighting man. Before we dig into the nitty gritty of Robert Small's life, before I give a year end review of what 2021 was like here at Bad Magic at the end of the suck, and just where my head's at now, I'll I'll present a brief overview of each of the 4 periods of history I just mentioned. Robert Smalls lived through one of the most rapidly changing and turbulent times in American history. Shit that makes today's cultural turbulence look like fun.
It's free real estate.
Smalls
Oh
was
my
born and raised in the Civil
God!
South,
Hey, yo,
fought during the American Civil War, served in
man!
politics for decades
What you up
afterward during
to?
both the Reconstruction era,
How you
also the Jim
been?
Crow era. Kick shit off by
Oh,
looking at the
God.
history of slavery in South Carolina, where he's from. Africans were present in the
How's every
initial
little
founding of
thing?
this
Hope
English
you're doing
colony in
well. Hope everything
1663,
is
the
good.
original 13
Hope your
colonies,
day was
one of
good.
the original 5 southern colonies.
I
The
was
original part
going
of the same
to
colonies,
stream a
North
little bit
Carolina,
earlier,
we
and then
officially
I started
partitioned
playing
into 7 colonies
Pathfinder,
in
and it
1712.
was a big battle.
And slavery real
It
popular
was a
in
big
South
battle,
Carolina, like the most popular.
and
Capital-wise,
I
yeah,
beat
definitely
the
the most
I
popular.
beat them up. I won
In
the
several
big
decades of its
battle,
foundings, Africans
but
became the majority of the
but
population there.
definitely
First
it
governor,
was
William Sale,
is a bit
fought with him
close at the
3 black
very
slaves
end.
from the Caribbean in the state's founding fleet, 1670. Another a few months later. Sale, before
I
leaving
hope
South Carolina
everything's
settlement,
going
had
well
been
for
the governor
you.
of
Hope
Bermuda.
hope your
Governor of
art is
Bermuda
going
also
well.
helped
Hope
settle the
hope
Bahamas,
your
South
day
Carolina.
went well.
His first settlement rodeo. South Carolina's fundamental
Did you
constitution of
stream earlier or
1669
anything like that?
envisioned slavery among
I
other forms of
rarely get
servitude and
on.
social hierarchy in the colony. Africans were imported in significant numbers. Beginning in the 1690s,
Aw,
by 1715, the black
I'm
population made up
good.
about 60% of the colony's total population.
You got to
South
speak to
Carolina was the
your
only
your
colony in English,
bow.
in
Goodness
English North
gracious,
America
that's
where
good.
that type of proportion existed. In Virginia, many slaves in the 17th century South Carolina came from the West
I
Indies.
just
They were well equipped, both
I was
epidemiologically,
playing my Pathfinder
at the same
game
time,
because
resistant to malaria and yellow fever, and
sometimes you need
monocolized
something to wind down
and
from
their
the
ability
day,
to make use of
and
native plants. Cope with South Carolina's semi-tropical environment.
I would have started playing earlier if I wasn't talking to Board the whole damn time.
Skill in fishing enabled them to live off the land much more easily than their English masters could. They also got along better with native people. Like southeastern Native American tribes, the early Africans came from basket weaving traditions, both skilled in the use of small watercraft on inland rivers. Africans were.
But I'm
among
glad
the
you got to
first
talk to
appropriate
your
native languages
bow.
in South Carolina.
Glad
Were often
to you got to
translated.
talk to the person you
Traditions
love.
facilitated African adjustment
Hope
and the
everything went
appropriation
well.
of
Hope
local
you
skills from
enjoyed
natives.
yourself.
Often Africans were the mediators of knowledge between the tribes and European settlers. And because African men have square-shaped penises and native women have rectangular vaginal canals, and native men have square-shaped penises and African women have rectangular vaginal canals, and European men and women both have either oval or parallelogram-shaped genitalia, Africans and local natives were especially well-suited sexually, and that helped bring about a lot of goodwill between the two people. That made Africans even more desirable to English settlers. And that's where the term "fits like a glove" comes from. And if anyone just believed that, I am fucking surprised. And thank you, because that was absurd. Not even a well thought out. Are you now thinking about how weird it would be if different races had drastically differently shaped genitals? Are you picturing different wieners as if they were made by a Play-Doh dispenser, where you push the Play-Doh through different shaped holes in that little plastic rail? Comes with, say,
Well, that's good.
Play-Doh
At least
contact.
you got to talk
Are
to
you
him.
thinking about that now? Well, you're not alone.
To
Back to
make you
reality,
feel
African
good.
expertise,
That's
as well as
good.
rough night air
What's been
conditions,
going
these
on with
settlements
everything?
facilitated a degree of
I was gonna talk to Board for a little bit longer, but I was like, I need to fucking do this shit now. So I fucking beat the shit out of some cultists.
This kind of working
Fuck
together,
them.
a relatively benign period
Fuck
of slavery compared to
them.
what would come later was, of course,
Destroying the
not
peace of the city.
plantation
Fuck them.
slavery would take over at the dawn
Fuck 'em.
of the 18th century in South Carolina. The colony increasingly embraced rice as a staple,
But I
and the
mean,
English colonists
from
benefited from their African slaves' familiarity with the grain.
from
Many of whom
listening
came
to the
from
story, it
rice-growing
wasn't
regions in
always
Africa,
peaceful.
knew more about
But
the cultivation
that's
of that
neither
crop
here
than
nor there.
Englishmen. Combined slaves, Carolinians adopted a preference for people from the rice-producing Senegambia region, and this preference lasted through most of the colonial period. Many Senegambians also worked with cattle and were brought in for their expertise in that area as well. So a lot of cattle grazing and raising was being done in South Carolina.
I hope you can
I
hear
don't
it
know why that
just
surprised me.
fine.
I didn't picture it as cow country. The practice of free grazing and nighttime penning for cattle protection, along with seasonal burning to freshen pastures, all had West African roots. Historian Peter Wood, noted for his knowledge of the settlement of the original South, suggested that the cowboy prominently connected with 19th century American West, may well have found its first usage in the U.S. and South Carolina and came from Africa before that. How about that shit? Last week, we learned the banjo came directly from Africa. This week, we're learning that the American cowboy has some African roots. Most of the people working with cattle in early South Carolina
was talking about moving in together one day and fixing our lives and just being happy, finding ways to fix issues I have with my internet and everything. Just vibing.
15,000
Well, I was talking to my significant other as well about what we're going to do to just fucking see each other, you know, actually see each other IRL for the first time.
Imported more slaves than any other North American.
I was like, what do you think would be a good time? And he's like, I've got vacation coming up soon. And I'm like, that's great.
By then, some 300,000 Africans
that's great.
have been uprooted and pressed into slavery. In
we can't really plan a trip around that or anything like that. So, you know, that's great.
Had been brought into America to the nation's largest slave port of Charleston, South
Carolina. Heathen, she's probably at work right now. Thank you for coming in. I do appreciate you. Or she's headed to work.
So did laws restricting their rights because, you know, whites got more and more nervous.
I mean, I love them.
Reacting to the Stonewall Rebellion
I'm just like, we gotta figure it out.
Revolt in the southern colonies.
Long distance relationships are difficult.
Colonists trying to make it to Spanish Florida where they would be free.
I am indeed in work.
The colony in 1740 passed its most comprehensive slave law, which made it illegal for more than 7 male slaves to travel together.
She is probably working at work right now, so
more laws would follow. Southern slave owners, you know, feared rebellions more than perhaps anything else around this time. Sadly, no members of that Stonewall Rebellion ever did make it to Florida. 1740 Code was the basis for all slave laws subsequently passed in the colonial and antebellum eras. During the second half of the 18th century, and especially during the Revolutionary Crisis, racial attitudes in South Carolina would harden.
Hello there.
Harsher attitudes be shown in the increasingly restrictive laws passed to regulate the slave and the free black population as well. Free black population.
I'm in
very small, very rare for anybody
West
to be,
Virginia,
given their freedom, you know, which they
Blue Ridge
have to be bought for freedom.
Shining from a river,
all now capital offenses, punishable by death. Slaves were not to be away from plantation between sunset and sunrise, and at no time without the permission of the master, or they could be taken up and brutally whipped. Life was harsh and hard for slaves in South Carolina, as it was everywhere in the pre-Civil War South. Imagine that shit. First, imagine that someone else owns you, like literally owns you.
Mine is in Ohio while I am in Alabama.
Nervous that you're not going to make it there in time. Pick up your pace. Sweat starts running down your back, you know, more than usual. You're always probably sweating that damp, oppressive, sweltering South Carolina heat. Then, sure enough, you know, like it does every day, the sun sets. You're not home. And after it sets, some mean local bastard, maybe drunk, sees you on the road, yells for you to come on over to their porch. You know, if you don't, they'll do something worse to you. What they're going to do now, later on, what they do, you know, this night with the help of a few others is they tie you up to a tree or to a post and they fucking whip you. And then when you're released and you head home, maybe get whipped again for being out too long. Whipped in a way that tears up your clothes, shreds your skin, but no doctor for you. The gashes slowly heal, maybe get a bit infected at first before they do, turn into horrible scars, all for not getting home in time. That's your life. Imagine that as your life right now. Being fucking grabbed off the street, tied to a tree, and fucking whipped. Nothing's ever going to be perfect in America or anywhere else. I'm not saying I don't want things to improve in a variety of ways, you know, because I do. I want things to continually improve. But holy shit, things were so much worse back then. Despite the overall horrors of Southern slavery, there was a greater sense of community in South Carolina for slaves than in almost any part of North America, any other part. Slaves there could provide each other with moral, spiritual, and sometimes cultural support, more so than in other areas because of, you know, how many were concentrated there because of the numbers. As a result of the great numbers, the greatest number of Africanism
kind of
surviving
apart,
in British
but
North America can
we're
be found
together
in the Carolina region to this day.
I want to be with him,
South
but
Carolina,
you know,
Georgia,
fucking,
Florida. One historian suggests that early South Carolina was effectively bilingual.
He needs to be fucking closer. How about that?
Dialects their masters could not understand. So
fucking life needs to stop throwing me wrenches.
Give me
less wrenches and more actual duct tape.
Regularized
sometimes
into a separate Creole language. among Gullah
like,
and
I
Geechee
like him.
speakers along the South Carolina coast.
I really do. I
Small spoke
enjoy
Gullah.
his company,
I'll share more
and
on,
he looks
what that
nice,
means
and I would like
during
to
the
be with
timeline.
him.
I found it fascinating.
And then it's
In
like,
addition
oh
to having the
yeah,
most slaves,
he
South
also
Carolina also had
lives
some unique slave customs.
fucking
South
Ohio.
Carolina, an
Ah,
anomaly.
good.
With
You know,
the other continental colonies in British North
how
America,
many
and that it was
hours
the
is it
only
from
one where
us?
slave
12
concubinage
fucking hours.
was almost instituted
12
in open
goddamn
practice
hours. It's
in
fucking
imitation of English customs in the
ludicrous.
West Indies. And that
ludicrous,
means
I
that
say.
many male slave owners didn't do much, sometimes nothing at all, when it came to hiding their African American mistresses. Sexual relations between free white men and enslaved black women were common. This exact combination
But
was found in Robert Small's own parents.
hopefully,
White
you
women,
know,
black men, however, that combination strictly
once we find the
forbidden.
time and stuff like
By the end
that,
of the
we'll
18th
get
century in
there.
South Carolina, farming rice would give way to
I'm on the
cotton.
East Coast, and they
The
are
rise of the
all the
larger
way
cotton
to the west,
plantations,
closer
mechanics
to
of cotton
Nevada.
production,
Oh,
closer to those of tobacco than of rice. Cotton production not as labor intensive
lame.
as rice production. Be
Lame.
carried out by a man and his family, and this facilitated the spread of slavery by making it more accessible, right, to more farmers. Farmer can start off slowly, gradually acquire slaves, and expand cultivation, as opposed to having to have many slaves right away. The expansion of slavery throughout the state led to the full maturity of a slave society in South Carolina. By 1860, 45.8% of white families in the state owned slaves, giving the state one of the highest percentages of slaveholders in the country. During the antebellum era that lasted between the War of 1812 and the Civil War, the majority of slaves lived on plantations claiming more than 20 slaves, while the majority of slaveholders owned far fewer than 20 slaves. Largely concentrated in places such as the rice regions of the Low Country and the fertile cotton regions such as the Sumter District, slaves created communities shaped as much by their own interactions as by their relationships with whites. Slave cabins on large plantations, often built in rows, on either side of dirt roads or streets relatively close to the fields, but some distance from the master's houses. This arrangement provided both physical and, to some extent, psychological distance between masters and slaves, allowing slaves some autonomy once the workday was over, a luxury often denied house servants and those living on small farms. Smalls would experience an interesting type of autonomy and go work various non-plantation jobs, giving a portion of his money, giving most of his money to his master, but also being able to keep some for himself. Before the war breakout, he would save enough money to try and buy his wife's freedom, at least entertaining that possibility, as remote as it was. Let's move on now to the Civil War period the Smalls would live through, fight in. Haven't done a suck on the Civil War. We've covered a lot of how that war was fought. One area we didn't get into much previously was Navy's use in that war, and, an area that involves Robert Smalls. Before the war, naval battles have been fought using large
I would say
wooden ships,
who they are,
by
but
sails
we both
filled
are
with
in a
cannons.
situation that isn't the most
Ships pummel each
supportive,
other until one or
so gotta
sometimes
be
both
careful
were
talking
completely
about
destroyed.
it. It's
The
totally
invention of
fine.
the steam engine
I'm in a situation where
things.
I don't give a shit.
Steam-powered ships, first
I'm in a
used Europe
situation where I
1780s,
don't care.
more flexible for travel,
But
a lot
everybody
faster.
is different and stuff
Engineers
like
invented
that.
new techniques to
You
reinforce the
know,
breech
do
of the
what's
cannons,
best for
to make them
you.
smaller. They
You know,
created
my
large
way of living
charges
is not your
gunpowder,
way
bigger
of living.
projectiles that could travel
We all
faster
have
and
our own
farther.
differences and
Weapon
stuff like
makers
that.
carved
I'm
grooves
in
inside
the
cannon barrels, which made the projectiles
the
spin and
idea
increased
of
accuracy.
every one of my
They
friends
developed new
accepts
shells that could
me
explode
for who
upon
I am.
impact, sink a ship with one shot.
All of my
No
friends
more just
except
fucking around out
some
in the bay,
work
just constantly
friends,
blasting cannons at each other
which
for hours.
that's totally
Torpedoes
fine.
carry
I
bombs that
don't
attached and
care.
explode on the hulls of enemy
Like,
ships.
I just want to be at.
The first
I'll be
steam-powered ship
friends
used
with
in
them
battle
at
was
work,
the
but
Demogolos,
you know,
wooden
that's as
floating
far as it
battery,
goes.
or the Demologos, wooden floating battery built to defend New York
You
Harbor
know,
from the Royal Navy during the War of 1812. Never saw any action.
and
No other
that's
ship
life.
like her was built. Then decades later, just in time for the Civil War,
And
the
he
ironclad,
makes me happy.
new type of ship, better type of ship, invented in Europe in
Hello,
1859.
Genji. I hope you're doing
Ironclad
great and
ships
having a
plated with iron
lovely
armor,
day.
so they could withstand
Yes,
enemy
of
fire.
course,
Incredibly
Master.
effective
Of
for many years.
course.
The first
I'm
ironclad
doing all
battle took
right.
place
I
in
would
March
have streamed
1862
earlier,
at
but
Hampton Roads,
I was
Virginia,
playing
400
video
miles up the
game.
Atlantic coast from Charleston.
I was playing
Below the
video
400 miles.
game.
The ironclad CSS Virginia fought wooden Union warships, sank 2 of them.
It was a
Virginia drove the
big
wooden ships
battle.
away, but then the next day,
It was a
the
very
ironclad
big
USS
battle,
Monitor
and I
returned and ships
won.
engaged in
I
battle.
beat the shit out of
Two
these
ships circled each other,
cultists.
firing cannonballs that would bounce off each other's iron sides, and they actually just fought to a draw.
Jono,
The combination
big
of
battles.
steam engine and
I
ironclad
get they want
technology,
to
wooden
give
ships
this
couldn't
like
compete.
feeling
The
of
ironclad
like,
and its
oh
successors
man,
became the most formidable
you're really
weapons of
doing
warfare
it. But
until
like,
airplanes were invented and used
there was a
in
few
World War I.
times that I was
One
trying to
example of a
skip.
weapon used during the
I
American
was
Civil
trying
War
to
that
skip too
more
fast.
innovative
I was
and
hitting
destructive
the space
than
bar
anything
too
ever
fast, and I
seen before,
skipped
the
one of my
ironclad.
character's
The
turns.
Navy's real
I was
importance
like,
in the Civil War
God
was
damn it.
regarding supplies, though,
God
not
fucking damn it.
firepower, not as far as like just loss of life with the enemy. The primary mission of the Union Navy was, as declared by President Lincoln on April 19th, 1861, to maintain a big blockade of the Confederate
Other
ports
than that, it was
by
nice.
restraining blockade runners.
I was having lots of
This
fun.
mission would be the primary mission for the duration of the war for the Navy. While the
Hope
Union
you
sea
had
power
fun.
didn't
Hope
directly
your
win the
day
war,
went
it
well.
did enable the war to be won. By the time of Lee's surrender, Lincoln's Navy numbered 626 warships. 65 were ironclads, after starting out with only roughly 90 vessels total. The Confederate Navy started out with only 14 seaworthy vessels, ended the war with around 100 total ships, substantially smaller Navy. This fucked up their whole supply chain. And then their Navy would be made a little bit smaller, the Confederates, by Robert Smalls, who would steal one of their best ships and hand the Union valuable intel along with it. It would lead to a swift Confederate defeat back home in South Carolina. From a tiny force of nearly 9,000 seamen in 1861, the Union Navy increased by war's end to about 59,000 sailors, whereas naval appropriations per year leaped from approximately 12 million to around 123 million.
It's going lovely. Just wrapped up a
Confederate coastline.
Just wrapped up stream and finished the line art on my current sketch. Gonna go try painting tomorrow or the other day. Yay! If you want, you can drop it into the Discord.
Hard to win a
We'd love to see it.
Primary supply chains.
In our case, even though we're adults, we both unfortunately have to live with our parents. In my case, it's parents and grandparents. They're all struggling, but we both have families that aren't the most accepting, and that's not good for either of us. Well, my dad came out as gay.
An island fortification in the Charleston Harbor.
So,
Robert Smalls was working in.
I guess I have
1829 as a coastal
unique
U.S. Major Robert Anderson
perspective
occupied the fort December 1860
because of it.
That's when he started to occupy it. After South Carolina's secession, he initiated a standoff.
When my dad came out as gay,
Lincoln announced intentions to resupply the fort.
Like, who gives a shit?
What? P.G.T. Beauregard.
Oh, he's gonna judge me because I'm pan and all that? No, of course not.
Totally forgot. First shots of the Civil War fired under the watch of a dude named P.G.T. Beauregard.
So, like, I have a very unique perspective. And also, I don't care what my mother says. She has no connection towards me.
Three names, fucking mouthful.
I mean, and also, if I told her, she would not...
Easy.
She would be like, "Oh, you're breaking my heart," and all that. It's like I don't really give a shit. I would rather be happy than worry about what she cares about. So I just don't tell her because it doesn't affect my life.
Civil War spread, black men rushed to enlist in the Union Army and were turned away because of a 1792 law barring black men from serving in the Army. When one of Lincoln's generals, David Hunter in South Carolina, issued proclamations that emancipated slaves in the state and allowed them to enlist in the Union Army, Lincoln forced him to reverse that policy. By the summer of 1862, enslaved people had escaped to the north in the thousands, still wanting to serve in the Army. The Union, now noticing an increased number of escaped enslaved people wanting to fight, a declining number of white volunteers wanting to do the same. Their increased personnel needs led them to pass the July 17, 1862 Second Confiscation and Militia Act, which allowed formerly enslaved men to serve in the Army as laborers or, quote, in such a manner as he may judge best for the public welfare. And this Confiscation Act changed the law that would lead to former slaves becoming free forever.
My mom's
at this point in the war,
a lesbian, but she keeps misgendering me and acting all, you're going to hell for that type stuff.
More soldiers, Lincoln came up with a plan to gradually emancipate enslaved people in border states. Abolitionists criticized him for not coming up with a more aggressive plan.
I don't know.
In August of 1862,
I don't know
Lincoln
the
wrote
specifics,
an editorial for the Daily National Intelligence that said in part,
"That's a bit of
my paramount object in this struggle
kind of
is
a
to
bit
save the Union.
of the
And it's not either to save or to destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it.
The
and if I could save it by freeing
right
all
there,
the slaves,
I think that I'm using it
and if
correctly.
I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone,
like I know it's two different situations,
so,
but also there are similarities to it.
Interesting, right? Not the exact narrative about Lincoln I remember being taught in school. Lincoln wrote his first draft of the Emancipation Proclamation on July 22nd, 1862.
God doesn't like that.
Now
what?
Now makes military sense. Now makes bringing the country back together sense.
I'm pretty sure that if you read enough, you'll find something wrong there.
Helped him work on a plan for emancipation. Secretary of State William H. Seward told him to wait to announce emancipation until the Union won a significant battle.
What kind of fascinating world you live in?
When the Union halted the advance of Confederate forces near Sharpsburg, Maryland. On September 22nd, 5 days later, Lincoln now issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared that on January 1st, 1863, all enslaved people in rebel states would be free, and that such persons of suitable condition will be received into the armed service of the United States. Freedom of slaves would very possibly not have come about from the Civil War, even with the Union victory, if it hadn't provided the North with a strong advantage, a larger army, and the depletion of the South's labor force. Lincoln called on Confederate states now to rejoin the Union within 100 days, or their enslaved people would be freed forever. And the Confederacy was like, "What are you fucking talking about? What do you? No, fuck you. Like, we're at war with you. We don't give a shit what you say." You know, so they, of course, did not do that.
Yeah.
And then Lincoln signed the proclamation into
Like,
law on January
who
1st,
gives a shit?
1863.
Like, enjoy who
Because he
you
wasn't
are.
actually in charge of Southern states, of course. You know, at the time,
Yeah.
this was just a symbolic
who you
emancipation.
are.
But the power of the act would change the history of our country forever when the Union would win the war. After Lincoln issued this proclamation, black men now enlisted in the military in the thousands. Volunteers from South Carolina,
Like-
Tennessee, Massachusetts filled the first black regiment.
I understand
Leaders
it's
like
very
Frederick
difficult
Douglass
when
and
living
Robert
with
Smalls
family. It's
encouraged
hard to
black
be
men
who
enlist
you
in the
are.
hopes they'd be awarded citizenship
I
after the war.
understand that.
May of
Though
1863, the
I
government
know
established
that
the Bureau
there's
of Colored
this,
Troops to
there
manage black
is
soldiers.
stigmas
By
and
the end of
stuff
the
like
war,
that. I
180,000
completely get
black
it.
men roughly would serve in
And
the
I
Union Army.
know we could tell
19,000
1,000
of them, like
stories
Robert
of
Smalls,
like, yeah,
would
and
serve
then
in the Navy.
this, and then this, and all that.
Public military service
But it's like,
would be just a
yeah,
small part.
even
It's a mark of
though
life.
we have our own
He spent most of his adult
situations,
life
doesn't
involved in
mean
politics.
that it negates
Served in the House of
yours.
Representatives during Reconstruction, one of the most politically
So
turbulent
what we're
times
trying
in
to
US
say
history.
is,
Reconstruction
we are here
is
for you.
regarded as the period following the Civil War.
I'm not
from
even kidding when
1865
I
to
say this.
1877.
My
The goal of
biological male
Reconstruction was to
donor
figure
is
out how to
gay.
reintegrate
He
the
never
Confederate states
earned the title
determine the
father.
legal
My
status of
mom's
4 million
a
newly
lesbian.
freed
Yeah,
African
both
Americans.
misgender me.
Reconstruction defined U.S. Citizenship, expanded voting rights, changed the relationship between
mean-
federal and state governments, and highlighted differences between
Yeah.
political and economic democracy. President Andrew
Yeah,
Johnson,
that
who succeeded Lincoln
seems
following his
like-
assassination on April 14, 1865,
kind of seems like
5
some
days
bullshit,
after
you
the end
know?
of the Civil War. Dude
But,
didn't even get a fucking
you know,
week
I don't know.
to celebrate that shit.
I don't know. They may have
Johnson wanted to return the South to
may
its
have done
antebellum state,
something. I don't
but
fucking know. I
Republicans
don't.
determined to stop him. He passed laws and
I
amendments to
tried
affirm equality
to
between the
try to
races,
get all
made free black
information
full
before
citizens, put
pass
laws in place
judgment
to
on
ensure
people. I don't
voting
want to.
equality, although
I don't
many
want to be a
states would
dick to
refuse follow
people.
those laws. First, Reconstruction,
Yeah.
seemed to work. They were making some progress. Black men voted in large numbers, held offices at local and national government levels. In the South, the black community quickly joined with the Republican Party to bring the party to power at a national level. But fucking Andy Johnson sabotaged some shit. That president literally never went to school. Did you know that? He never went to school at all. Not kidding. His wife would teach him rudimentary math skills and how to not read and write like a fucking 5-year-old, well into his adult life.
Okay,
Let's
if
make
you're
that guy president.
all
What could
right,
go
if
wrong?
you gotta lurk, you
Johnson
gotta
offered the
lurk.
presidential pardon to all
It's
Southern
totally
whites, including
fine.
Confederate leaders, wealthy
Diminished
plantation
sketch is
owners.
limited
and then he
to
eventually
safe to
pardoned
work,
them too.
right?
Johnson restored their
Oh.
political rights, returned all
Oh,
their property
mass.
except formerly
Yeah,
enslaved
yeah,
people.
it is.
This move would
You
not
know it
bode
is.
well for former Southern
You
slaves. Their
know.
slave masters had just been given a slap on the wrist and basically put
You
back
know
in
the
power.
rules.
However, black people down south did still hope they could gain true economic independence. Some would. In January of 1865,
All right,
General
General. If you
Sherman
need
issued
to,
Field
if
Order
you
Number
need to
15,
lurk, that's
set
totally
aside
fine.
land
You know,
along South Carolina and Georgia's
that. I
coast,
understand. If you
where
need to go
Robert
to
Smalls
bed,
lived.
that's fine.
Set aside that land
My
for black
mom's
families.
with her
Freedmen's Bureau Act of
fiance,
March 1865 authorized the Bureau to rent or sell that land formerly
who
enslaved
she
people.
says
Then later in the
she
summer
was
of
talking
1865,
about wanting
fucking
to
Andy
transition,
Johnson,
but that
fucking grade
was
school
put
dropout. I call
to
him
a
that. He
stop.
never even went to grade school. Ordered all land in federal possession to be returned
Just put it
to
in
its
20-minute
owners.
sketch so
Dreams
that
of
I
land
can do
ownership
it.
were now squashed. Many black people had to return to working on the plantations they used to be enslaved upon for low pay that basically left them in the new type of slave. Southern states responded to Johnson's plan by immediately establishing black codes, laws requiring black people to sign yearly labor contracts. The codes also heavily restricted their activity. So again, just a new kind of slavery. A new 13th Amendment prohibited slavery and servitude, except as punishment for crime. And Southern legislators really abused the loophole in this amendment. They poo-pooed that loophole. They passed the black codes to criminalize daily activities so they could imprison black people and basically force them back into slavery. The black codes were first enacted in South Carolina and Mississippi. Black men and women weren't allowed to loiter. Vagrancy was prohibited. Gathering in groups was prohibited, and unemployment was a crime.
Do it.
Imagine that.
You said
Imagine you're
tomorrow.
born a slave.
So
You were
just
raised
do
as a slave.
it.
That your dream was to one day live free, only be beholden to the same laws everyone else in your society was beholden to, but be able to stay out as long as you want, date who you want, live where you want, work where you can get work as opposed to where you're ordered to work, etc. Then a big ass war breaks out, lasts nearly half a decade. And then the war, when it's won, you're given your freedom. Just, hallelujah. Possible dream comes true. So many tears of joy. You allow yourself now not just to dream of what you'll do when you're free, but now to plan what you're going to do now that you are free.
And so do I.
Like, a couple months later, just fucking take that shit away from you.
And so
and you're right back on the plantation. Getting whipped, living in fear, all the same shit. These new laws force black people to sign yearly labor contracts to avoid arrest. White planners refuse to allow black people to rent or buy land, pay them as little as possible. Imprisonment and fines were just a way to enforce the black code. Slapping somebody with a fine they couldn't pay, easy way to force somebody right back into indentured servitude.
Never gonna give you
just issue high fines.
Never gonna let you down. Never gonna turn
working off the
around
debt, a system
and
called debt
desert
peonage.
you.
Most
Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna say goodbye. Never gonna tell
black
a
children also
lie
forced to work.
and
Parents were
hurt
deemed
you.
unfit. Children would be taken into state custody as orphans, forced into unpaid labor.
Where am
Black
I
people
over
under
here?
constant surveillance,
Where am
even when meeting privately, even when attending church. They needed special passes from white sponsors just to walk around town freely. And if they didn't have a pass, hello, big ass fine. Hello, fucking whip. That's some evil shit. Northern legislators angered by these black coats, as they should have been, with the support of President Andy Fuckface.
Nice.
President Andy, who probably couldn't spell Andrew Johnson. The KKK, founded on December 24th, 1865, also a direct reaction to Reconstruction. The group targeted Republicans who supported true emancipation with assassinations and beatings. Also targeted African Americans who asserted their newfound rights, who stood up for themselves with beatings and murders. KKK started in Pulaski, Tennessee, as a club for Confederate veterans. And it turned into one of the most evil organizations in our nation's history. And I've said it before, it's been a while, but man, I know it sounds obvious, but apparently it's not obvious to some people still. Racism, it's just truly so fucking stupid. Like, of all the things to worry about in this life, why worry about that? And it's stupid in all forms, from black to white, from white to black, and every other variation. Seems to generally come from either making huge generalizations, based on limited interactions. For example, two people who are blank, and those two people are assholes. So now all blank people are assholes. Or it comes from not understanding where behavioral tendencies originate from. If you're in the South in the early or mid-19th century, you notice that blacks are illiterate at a rate far more often than whites around you. You could develop racist beliefs thinking that blacks are, genetically inferior to whites when it comes to their intellectual abilities. If you didn't look at the trend more rationally and understand that how could one race be as literate as another? If the one race was literally forbidden from receiving a formal education, a massive education disparity is to blame, not some inherent inferiority based on any racial
That almost hit
attribute.
the emotional tones.
KKK guys, they're not
We're
having
no
fun.
strangers
Back to
to
the KKK now. In the summer of
love.
1867, local branches met
I
the General
mean,
Convention
my
to
mom
establish what they
constantly
called
uses
the
the
invisible
excuse you've
empire
been
of the
X for
South.
so many years.
Imagine
It's
they could
not
say
that
it kinda
easy.
like that.
And
The
yet,
invi-
all my
welcome to the
friends changed
invisible
like it
empire of the South.
was
We
not
will,
even
like our
slightly
president,
difficult.
never need to read or write.
No, it's totally
And-
fine. I understand that you're upset.
Through ignorance, we
I
shall
completely
prevail.
get it.
Members
I don't
elected
know you
Nathaniel Bedford
personally,
Forrest
and
was
I
the
don't know
first
your
Grand
mother.
Wizard of the
I-
KKK.
You
He'd been
know,
a Confederate general. One of
I
his
want to give
nicknames
the
was
benefit
Wizard
of the doubt
Saddle. That's a fucking weird ass nickname.
and stuff like that.
Not
I want
sure if
to,
that sounded tougher or cooler back
maybe
in
she's
1860s.
going through rough
Sounds
times
dumb
and
as shit
stuff
now.
like that.
Sounds like
I don't know.
D&D nerd who's also into pony play or something. Oh, hello, ladies.
I know that
I'm the Wizard
it
of the
probably
Saddle.
bothers you and messes with you.
At least 10%
But,
of black legislators elected during 1867
I'm always of the
1868,
opinion
were
of
victims
like,
KKK violence. 7 were murdered. Black schools and churches also targeted.
if people
because they were
can't,
symbols of
if
black
it's
autonomy.
very difficult for people to
Legislators in
change,
Congress, not happy with,
all you can
how
do
presidential
is just
Reconstruction's
hope
going.
for the best.
During the December 1865 Congressional Assembly, radical Republicans, Representative Thaddeus Stevens and Senator Charles Sumner, called for the establishment of new Southern state governments based on equality and universal male suffrage. Moderate Republicans wanted to work with Andy 2+2=7 Johnson to modify his current plans. There's a lot of internal tension. For a time, Congress refused to seat representatives and senators from Southern states. A lot of bickering, a lot of fighting going on. February of 1866, Congress does pass the Freedmen's Bureau and Civil Rights bills, legislation, that would help African Americans. They extended the
I
life of
always
the
try
Freedmen's Bureau.
to
The Civil
find,
Rights Bill made all people born in the U.S.
I know
citizens,
the
therefore granting
the
everyone
biggest
legal
thing is
equality, at least on
like,
paper. Civil Rights
Try not
Act
to
also gave
find.
African Americans
Try
the right to
not
rent
to
their own
look at
property,
things with
contracts, bring
anger.
cases
Try
to
to
court,
look at them
but only against
with
other
kindness.
African Americans. How crazy is that shit?
It's so easy
You can
to
only
get
bring cases to
angry
court
and
against
annoyed at
other
people, and
African-Americans.
it's
Your
very
Honor,
difficult
Jack
to
Johnson
forgive.
stole my horse in front of 15
But
eyewitnesses.
I always
Is that true,
say,
Jack?
you know,
Yes, Your Honor.
people are
True as
not
the day is
perfect.
long.
Humans are
And I
humans.
reckon the court finds you guilty
We're
of
not
horse theft, then,
made
Jack.
to be perfect
But
beings.
Your Honor, I am
You
white,
know?
sir. Oh, yes, you are, Jack. Apologies. I forgot you were. nearly
Sometimes you
10
need
among
to
some
talk
days.
about these
Case
topics, to be
dismissed.
honest. I fall
It's
under
insane.
multiple flags, and
The Freedom
that
Bureau established
has
by
definitely
Congress
caused some
1865
issues,
provided
unfortunately.
food,
I
housing,
mean,
medical
when
treatment,
my mom
legal
came out,
assistance, established
there was a
schools for formerly
literal
enslaved
crap
black
storm,
people.
so I don't
Bureau
understand
was a
why
noble
she's doing the
organization.
same to me.
Sadly, never able
I
to
mean,
accomplish many of its goals
It's,
due to short
I
staffing,
mean,
lack of budget, intimidation
the old
tactics
song
by
"Cats in the
racists who hated them and
Cradle"
what they were doing. President
does bring up a lot of
each ship of breakfast
good
Johnson
points
did everything
in
he could
that
to do
in that
to undermine the
situation.
Bureau. He pardoned Confederates, fired Bureau
Where, you
employees
know,
he believed were too sympathetic to black people, before retiring to his chambers to flagellate himself while shouting over and over, "And he's a stupid, stupid
You're
boy."
like, I'm nothing
a
like my
stupid
parents
boy.
and stuff like
That's why I
that, and you
couldn't
find
read.
out you're way
Imagine
more
hearing
like
something
your
that in the White
parents
House.
than
You open up, like,
you
a storage
initially
closet,
thought.
Find the fucking president whipping himself, crying while yelling shit like that. Makes me very happy to envision Andrew Johnson that way. And he's a stupid boy.
You know, you find
there was
out
much
that
internal debate over how much money the Bureau should get,
that
what services they should
as
provide,
much
how
as
long
things
they should receive
change,
funding.
some things are
Bureau would have
hard
11
to
districts, almost 900 agents.
hard
Bureau
and
agents
stay the
constantly threatened
same.
violence from the KKK.
You know?
Although limited, the Bureau would do important work. They provided food,
And
built
maybe one day
hospitals,
you'll have a
settled contracts,
situation
legal
like
disputes,
that
legalized
when you
marriages,
get older.
reunited families, assisted black veterans, and more.
You know,
Also founded a few
maybe
schools and
there,
colleges that remain to this
maybe
day.
you might
Howard College
have
in
a
Washington,
kid
D.C.
or somebody
founded by the
that
Bureau.
looks up to you that you
Hampton
consider
University in Virginia, also founded by
like
the
a
Bureau.
child of yours.
The Bureau would be dismantled.
And you're like, oh
sadly, in
man, I
December of
respect this
1872. Let's
person and
refocus
stuff like
now,
that, and they,
back to
well,
February
they have a
1866.
different opinion than you.
Andrew used his fingers to count for his whole life. Johnson rejected
You
the
know?
Civil Rights Bill on the grounds of states' rights, preferential
I remember
treatment to
my
one group
dad
of
was
financial
very
burden.
much like we
but in reality, he just didn't
have a
like
lot
black
of different
And he did
opinions
like
about
wealthy, white,
a
Southern
lot of
people who supported
things.
him. Congress,
We have
not happy.
we have a lot
In
of
July of 1866, Civil Rights
similar
Act becomes the
but
first
different
significant U.S.
opinions.
legislation to ever become a law, despite a presidential veto.
And
On July 9th, 1868,
You
a year
know.
later, Congress approves the 14th Amendment, which puts birthright citizenship in the Constitution and forbade any
you know,
states to deprive
we've
people of legal
had
protection.
heated
This bill
we've
considered,
had a
the most
heated
important
argument
amendment by
before,
many to the
and
Constitution
it
besides the Bill of
was
Rights.
definitely
And Andy
something I
Halfwit
don't
on the wrong
I don't
side of
want to
history on this one.
have with him.
Back in the supply
I don't
closet, he
like
went when the bill was
making my
passed,
dad angry. I
despite
don't
his
like
veto. And he's a
making him
stupid,
mad, but
stupid boy.
I'm not going to change my opinions just because he got
huge
pissed at me.
Before this, citizens' rights were decided, state by
know.
state basis.
And
Now
maybe
all
they're stupid
citizens, for the first
opinions,
time, had federal
but
protection.
You should
at least
talk
on
to
paper.
me about them.
We've talked about
Stuff
trail
like
tyranny and
that.
stuff, how this didn't necessarily apply too well
And
to
you should talk to
Native
people
Americans and
not just get heated
By
and
1869,
angry and
Republicans
punch
controlled all three
things.
branches of the federal
It
government.
doesn't
Johnson was
help
impeached
a
by the House in
situation.
February of 1868 for attempting
So,
to remove
like,
Secretary of War.
Every family
Edwin
has
Stanton,
that.
Violation of the Tenure of Office Act, which limits the president's power
love
to
is
remove
difficult.
Congress-approved officials.
You'll
the
find
Senate failed to
yourself
remove
in
Johnson by just one
difficult and hard
Despite not getting kicked the
situations.
fuck out, Johnson was
Nothing
done.
is perfect.
Republican Ulysses
you
S.
know?
Grant would win the
If you
1868
think that
election.
just
Johnson would spend his
because you find the
post-presidency,
love of your
jerking off
life
stud horses
means
at a horse ranch
that
outside Lexington.
you're not gonna find
I wish he would,
stuff
spend his final year
that
jerking off
makes
horses
you
at the wall,
mad or
still yelling,
annoyed.
And he's a stupid,
Oh
stupid
yes,
boy.
I got
As he's
something.
jerking off a horse.
Got a bridge
He
to
actually
sell
ended up
you.
becoming a Tennessee senator shortly before his death in 1875 at the age of 66.
I apologize, but that's
Or died of
it's
a hate
not how
stroke,
it
being angry about something.
goes.
What did he campaign
Normally,
on?
when you add
how
more
much
than
he
one
hated Reconstruction
person
effort,
with
basically.
differing opinions,
Yeah.
you're
How did
gonna
he win?
eventually
Black
find
voter
something that
suppression.
they
February
have
of
a
1869,
completely
Congress
different
passed the
idea
15th Amendment,
from.
which asserted that a citizen's right to vote would not be denied on account of race, color, or
From
previous condition of
parents to
servitude.
loved
Another victory for
ones,
Black Americans.
to
Also
best
something else. It
friends,
takes decades and decades.
you're
to
just
actually, be enforced in parts of
you're
America.
gonna find
By
friction.
1870, all former Confederate states were readmitted to the Union, almost all of them dominated by the Republican Party. Black people made up the majority of Republican voters, excuse me, in the South.
Yeah,
Black politicians like Robert Smalls
I'm gonna
pushed
used
for an
to
end to the
agree
racial
on
caste
almost
system,
everything,
economic
and then
support,
suddenly she
former enslaved
changed into
people.
someone. I don't
During
know who
Reconstruction,
she
16
is,
black men
and
served in Congress.
is so full of
600
bitterness
black
and
men served
hate
in
and
state
is believing
government,
things that
and
aren't
hundreds more in local offices.
aren't factual. I
Transition of
mean,
black men to positions of
that's the
power
biggest thing.
created a
It's
lot of
like
tension between Democrats
I
and
don't
Republicans.
know the full
Durham
story
Rebel
or the full
was the
scope,
first
and
black man
like
elected to Congress
also
in 1870.
there are going to be
Democrats tried to
times
do everything
when
they could to prevent him from taking his seat.
me and my
Argued
own
he didn't have
chat
the 9 years of
probably are
citizenship
going to have
necessary to become a
completely
citizen,
differing
referencing the
opinions.
Civil Rights Act and the 14th
Like
Amendment. What a
that's
fucking dick move.
just
The
we're
residents
all
argued,
human.
yeah, he was
You
born a
know?
free man and born in the U.S. What are you talking about? Rebels
I
were
feel
sworn
like
February
you should
25th,
distance
1870.
yourself from her. I'm
New York
not
Times
saying
wrote,
this out of
Mr.
hate,
Rebel
but
showed
like,
no embarrassment whatsoever.
I mean,
His demeanor was as dignified as could be expected under the circumstances. The abuse which had been
have
poured
you
upon him and
told
on
her
his race
about
during the
these
last 2 days
situations?
might well have shaken
Have
the
you
nerves
told her
of
how
anyone.
this has made you
In
feel?
1871,
Like you can't
President
even
Grant
talk
launched a
to
legal
her, or
military
you
campaign to
can't,
destroy the KKK
you know,
and other hate groups.
she feels like a
These violent
completely
acts
different
continued.
person.
Grant was reelected in
Like,
1872, continued his campaign against the KKK. The federal government passed the KKK Act of 1871.
I mean,
trying to
love
stamp
is
out the hate group,
about
designating certain
compromise.
crimes as
That
federal
also
offenses,
means that
such
you'll
as
have to
conspiracy deprive
compromise as
citizens of the
well.
right to hold office,
You'll have
serve
to
on
meet
juries,
her
and enjoy
halfway.
protection of the law. Individuals who committed these crimes can be
Even
arrested
if
without
you
charges
think you're
and sent to federal
completely
courts.
right,
Still, the KKK rose
sometimes
in
you
power.
have to just let
Southern Democrats and
some
KKK worked
things
tirelessly
go.
to reestablish white supremacy in the South.
And I'm not saying
White supremacy
about
would
your
continue to dominate the
identity
South
or
throughout
anything
the
like that.
1870s
You
and
have
beyond.
to pick and choose
1873
yourself. You
depression
have
sent
to
the South into
decide
poverty and the political
on
ramifications of
your
massively
how you're
fucked
going to
over
live your
Republican efforts
life. And if
towards
you
racial
want her
equality.
still in your life,
Republicans have been in
you
control
got
for
to
almost
talk
10
to
years
her.
now, and poor, struggling people in both the South and the North wanted to change.
Like,
1874,
I
Democrats
say
won the House for the first time
distancing,
since the Civil War.
you know, from a family,
By 1876,
from a
only Florida,
family
Louisiana,
is,
and South
it's
Carolina.
very difficult.
Republican
It's
control.
hard.
And then the compromise
Especially in this,
1877 would mark
this
the end of
climate.
Reconstruction. 19th President, Republican Rutherford B. Hayes, agreed to end Reconstruction by bringing
Have confidence.
local self-government to the South. If Democrats agree to respect the rights of
No
black citizens
confidence.
and support his very, very narrow
When I
electoral
try to
victory to become
talk to
president,
her, she breaks
And, you know,
down, claiming she's
Southern,
a bad
white
mother and
politicians
makes
like,
it
yeah,
all
no,
about
totally.
her and her feelings and
Yeah,
yells at me and ignores
course.
anything I
we'll
have to
respect the
say.
rights of black citizens, but they had their fingers crossed behind their
I
backs.
mean, nobody likes being
After
told
Hayes'
they're wrong.
inauguration, he ordered federal troops to withdraw from Louisiana, South Carolina, and this ended Reconstruction and officially reinstated Democratic control in the South and doomed a whole bunch of Southern racial equality progress. Brought in a new,
Yeah,
worse era, the Jim Crow
I get
era.
that. I've been there.
Jim Crow law is a collection of
My
state and local
mom's
statutes
the
that would
same
legalize
way.
segregation. Jim Crow era lasted for a century.
Why do you not want to
1860s
eat
till
with me?
1968.
Because I always
Really
get
picked
sick
up
there.
steam
But
when
you eat
Hayes
with
did
your
what he did in
father.
1877.
Yeah, well,
Jim Crow
I
was an
never get
extension of
sick
the
at
earlier
my
black codes.
at dad's
Those
food.
codes directly
So
called
maybe
Civil
you
War.
need to
Over
look at
Confederate soldiers, taking jobs
yourself.
throughout Southern legislatures
Not
and
blame
police
me.
forces. They made it impossible to win
That's
court
very
cases,
rude for
heavily
you to
enforced
say.
unjust
That
Jim
I
Crow
don't know
laws for
what
black
you're
citizens
talking about.
upon black citizens. If
You want me
broke
to be
Jim Crow
honest about
laws,
your
you were
food.
arrested, fined, jailed, or just fucking murdered.
I totally understand
Black
where you're
people who were
coming
sentenced to
from.
forced labor received longer, harsher sentences than like a white equivalent of the same crime. Many of them would die in prison. Jim Crow
He's
restricted
too
voting, job
he's
access,
too
education.
muscly. He's got
These
too
laws
much
varied from
beef.
state to state. Here's some examples from South Carolina.
He's got too much
It
beef.
shall be unlawful for any white
There has
man
to be a
intermarry
cause
with
for
any
her to
woman
call herself
by
a
the
bad mother.
Indian or Negro races,
Eh,
or any mulatto,
True.
or mestizo, or half-breed, or for any white woman intermarry with any person other than a white man, or for any mulatto, half-breed, Indian, Negro, or mestizo to intermarry with a white woman. I do believe that person probably talked like that. Mestizo, by the way, somewhat of mixed European and Native American heritage. I had not heard that term before. Businesses also couldn't require whites to share a break room with blacks or bathrooms. The white man needs to retire to a separate break room to avoid the ills and evils of congregation with the black man. Some shit. Buses and trains had to have separate seating areas for whites and blacks. Certain businesses like circuses randomly. There was a whole fucking circus statute. Had to have separate entrances and exits. When the white man comes to watch the elephants and the clowns and enjoy his salted peanuts, having to sit near a black man really kind of destroys the experience of the circus and harms him in ways that I'm sorry. Listen. I could try to rationalize it. I just don't like it. I don't care for it. Black people maybe weren't enslaved anymore, but they were still restricted in their movement, subject to extreme racism and violence. Had few job prospects. Were often forced to work as sharecroppers for low wage, put them in debt for their farming
Also,
supplies.
I think I wasn't
They had to
here
give
for
up their
this,
crops to
but
landowners.
why
This kind of
are
debt
you
peonage system, another type of
straw
slavery right continued for
mule
decades.
donkey thing?
Meanwhile,
What?
across the South, KKK vandalized,
What are
destroyed
you talking
schools,
about?
tortured black citizens, attacked innocent
Mass-
families. After
Mass,
Jim Crow
I've
laws
always
put in
been
place,
this.
KKK felt like they had fucking carte blanche. Just do what
Mass,
they wanted to do,
I
lynch
don't know
people,
what
all
you're
kinds of
talking
shit.
about. What?
Initially, larger cities
What do you
across the
mean?
U.S. didn't enforce these Jim Crow laws, at least not strictly. Then in the 1880s, black
European-
Americans were flocking to
What?
cities in
Huh?
large numbers to escape the
No.
virtual slavery of the rural South. Then, now that the issue is real for them, whites in the cities, both the South and the North, were like,
This is for Yule.
You know what?
Yule
okay, maybe we
ends
should enforce it.
on
and
January
they started
1st.
demanding stricter laws to limit African American abilities
So,
to have their kids attend
Yule,
the same schools, buy
Yule
homes in the
goats.
same neighborhoods, all kind of
He's a Yule goat.
Everything from theaters,
Yeah,
restaurants,
Yule.
waiting rooms, train stations, water fountains, bathrooms, entrances, elevators, cemeteries, fucking cemeteries. Right, like Jesus Christ, cashier windows all segregated. Black people forbidden from living in white neighborhoods, attending white schools, using white phone booths, being treated in white hospitals or some, being incarcerated in white jails, right? Placed in white nursing homes, etc. Some states even required separate textbooks. We cannot have them read the same book and feel as if they may be equal. Atlanta courts even made black and white people swear on different Bibles. The white people wouldn't have to touch the same fucking Bible. The black people do. When Jesus walked the earth, what was important to him is that the white and the black man not cohabitate or touch the same items. It was a part of his vision for heaven. Right, that's Jesus loved prejudice. If anybody knows anything about Jesus, it knows he hated when people are treated evenly. He loved discrimination. That's why he made sure that all his disciples were white. I bet a lot of those Christians back then actually thought that Jesus and disciples were white. Hopefully no one listening now still thinks that. How could you fucking think that now? Dude looked a lot more like a member of ISIS than he did a Southern country club guy. So many people's lack of understanding of how fucking geography and race historically converge is mind-boggling. Dude was from Bethlehem in present-day Palestine, not Pennsylvania. Come on. Interracial cohabitation forbidden. Many smaller towns even posted signs making it clear that black people were not welcome in their town. And Robert Smalls lived through all that nonsense. Lived in South Carolina, in the heart of this nonsense during this shit. And accomplished so much in spite of it all. Never let any of it break his indomitable spirit. So let's now examine a timeline. This motherfucker's kick-ass life.
Strap on those boots, soldier. We're marching down a time-suck timeline.
Time to open shop. Hope you have
April
a
5th,
great rest of
1839.
stream. Community
Robert
stay amazing.
motherfucking
Awesome.
Small,
Love you all.
born
I
in the
miss you,
slave quarters
Heathen.
of a house on
I miss you already,
511 French
Heathen.
Street in Beaufort, South Carolina.
I spent most of my
Small was born
life
in,
with my
Beaufort,
grandmother,
also
and my
with Diane
mom's health
Beaufort,
isn't
in the
great,
same house he grew
but
up.
it's no excuse
The
for the
house is,
sudden
still there.
change in
Keep up.
who she is.
The Robert Smalls house, a
I
National
don't
Historic
even
Landmark.
want to go places with her
And a
most of the
memorial to
time
Smalls'
because
life
she
stands less than a
started
half mile
using
away.
the
The churchyard of
slurs
Beaufort
and being
Tabernacle Baptist
awful.
Church, where Smalls is buried. Beaufort, South Carolina is situated on Port Royal,
Man,
one of South Carolina's beautiful sea islands. Sea Islands, a low-lying chain of over 100 islands off the Atlantic Ocean, stretching for 300 miles across South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. Over 30 lay off the coast of South Carolina alone. The Spaniards first discovered Beaufort in 1521. The Huguenots tried to settle it in 1562, then the English in 1670, then the Scottish Covenanters in 1684. Swamps and local tribes made it hard to settle. The British would build a fort in 1711, and Henry Somerset, 2nd Duke of Beaufort, founded the town that same year. Incorporated in 1711, that's an old-ass town for America. Beaufort, the second oldest settlement in South Carolina, besides nearby Charleston. A gorgeous little town. Got lost in some pictures again this week. So many cute cafes and coffee shops, and well-preserved antebellum houses. Still creeps up into the 60s. In December, a lot of sunshine, ocean inlets all around. What not to like? People still raise cattle not far from this town. A little bit of farming is done in the area. Some shrimping, some light manufacturing. Only about 13,000 people in the city limits, but around 200,000 almost in the island's metro area. It looks very peaceful. It wasn't too peaceful for those who were enslaved there, though. Port Royal Island thrived on a plantation economy with cash crops like indigo, rice, cotton. The island's only 13 miles long, 7 miles wide.
I've tried for the last 3 or 4 years to have her to call me her daughter and my preferred name.
Have long had, almost always had, a predominantly black population, one that centuries ago developed very interesting, distinct dialects.
I don't know what to tell you.
Well-known Gullah.
I'm at a loss.
In just a bit. Today, many of the sea islands are uninhabited, but some, like Hilton Head Island, Paris Island, Fort Sumter, Tybee Island, are used for tourism. Some heavily become very attractive areas for tourists and for people purchasing second homes. A lot of local concern.
All
actually,
I know
with
is
the
that
local black population getting pushed out.
I'll try to be
Right?
as much as I can
Traditional, black settlements
to be here
being
as a
pushed out and
friend.
replaced by white country clubs.
That's all I can say.
Paris
Like,
Island used as a
I
Marine
mean,
Corps training base.
I don't
Robert's
feel
mother,
like
Lydia Polite,
I don't feel like I'd give
43-year-old woman
the
forced to work
correct
as a house
advice
slave
that
in this
you would
area. Lydia
need.
never told anyone, not even Robert,
Like,
who his father was.
I know that you're going
Robert was
through
most likely
hard
based on his looks and
times
historical
and
guesses, biracial,
family
black
stuff and all
white,
that,
which has led to several
but I
theories
feel
about
like
who
I
his
would not
father could have been.
give the
Most popular
correct
guess, his father is
advice.
Henry McKee, enslaver and son of the original plantation owner.
Yeah. I don't want to give wrong advice.
Guess,
I don't want,
plantation manager, Patrick Smalls, there was his father. I mean,
I don't want to give
same last name. But we'll get into like how last names don't necessarily work that way in this place at that time. Was his mother a mistress?
I don't
want to
give advice that
was she raped? Was she maybe not violently raped? Maybe she
messes
even
with anybody or anything like
consent.
that.
How much
And,
consent can you really give?
I
in a
want
slave
them
owner
to
slave
be able
relationship? And the
to
punishment for saying
figure
no
stuff
would be
out.
far worse than agreeing
And I want to help
to the rape.
out people, but
What
like
enormous pressure,
I'm not a life
placed on black
coach.
women to pretend to consent. And I'm sure a sizable
I'm
number
just
of
some
black
guy
men
on the internet.
also raped. No stats can ever be gathered to figure out how common this all was, but plenty of individual stories out there in various historical accounts. Probable father, Henry McKee, 27 years old in 1839 when Robert was born. Henry himself, known to friends as Sugar Britches, born in 1811, one of 11 children of John and Margaret McKee. His father owned Ashdale Plantation, large Sea Island cotton plantation on Ladies Island, South Carolina. So many islands, only about 1,000 feet of water separated this island from Beaufort on Port Royal Island. John McKee, Sugar Britches' father, inherited the plantation,
And
tended
also,
enslaved people.
that probably doesn't sound the most
John was going to
nicest.
enslave 95 people on the plantation in total during his lifetime. Ended up owning a mansion within the city of Beaufort as well. His wife Margaret founded the Beaufort
That's what I
Female
hope.
Benevolent Society.
That is what I hope.
This place provided relief for destitute
I
female
hope
children.
that I can at least
White
be
children. Come on, son.
a
The McKee family was among
a fun-
Beaufort's elite. John McKee
a
died
fun
in
guy.
1834. Sugar Britches, his only living son. And he inherited everything, including 61
Let's
enslaved
see.
people. In 1836, Sugar Britches married Jane Bold, daughter of a wealthy Beaufort couple. They had their first daughter, Eliza Jane, born in 1839 in April. Henry Sugar Britches McKee's life contrasted starkly with Lydia and Robert's lives. Lydia had been born on the McKee's Ashdale plantation back in 1796. As a young child, she grew up doing chores like gathering firewood and plants. She received minimal clothing and food, corn, molasses, meat. The family most likely grew their own food to supplement their diet. They were allowed to keep pigs and chickens. They could sell meat and eggs to the McKees, their owners, or next to nothing, of course. God, that would be fucking awkward. Hard to negotiate a fair price, right, in a slave-to-master relationship. How much for a dozen eggs? 25 cents, ma'am. Wonderful. A penny it is, then. Thank you, Lydia. With their meager earnings, the enslaved people at the Ashdale plantation could purchase clothes and items like coffee, sugar, and tobacco. Lydia, not allowed to read growing up, but her mom did teach her to speak Gullah. Let's talk about Gullah a little bit now. Gullah, English-based Creole, right? Culture and language created by enslaved West Africans in the Sea Islands. Gullah, a word for the island's culture, various ethnicities of West African people forced to develop a common language, also called Gullah, so they could communicate with each other. Gullah culture emphasizes spiritual music, storytelling traditions. Saturday evenings were reserved for celebrating culture during rare social times. Everybody could get together. Very interesting how it sounds. Sometimes also called Geechee or Gullah Geechee. And this is from a YouTube channel, Gullah Grits TV.
Gullah Geechee words and phrases and how to use them.
This is very cool.
Omar. Kuya for what is you?
That's to heal,
Nisa or Nam.
neither or not one.
Directly.
To come back soon.
Barbarian.
Barbara Ann.
Charlie.
Charlie.
Dartha.
Dorothy.
Couldn't.
Cousin.
Water.
Water.
Can on.
Doing the most.
All right, let's put it all together.
Hmm?
Child, the other day I had to go to my cousin Barbara and Charlie and you know what Dartha used to say.
Even if I miss some, it's not for not wanting to be here. It's just because of time. Sometimes I'm asleep. It's okay. No, it's okay. Everybody has to sleep. Like, specifically humans. We have to sleep.
They still waiting on me over there.
Isn't that is so interesting to me. That is, yeah. That, this
Sometimes we
dialect
just
was,
have to go
you know,
nights.
invented so they could speak without the slave
Then
masters
you
knowing
guys,
what they were saying.
where's the care
And
package
it's carried
buttons?
over, to the
You're
present day.
fine.
There's still
You're fine,
many people who can
Ayame.
speak Goa, and it's just a version of English with some other words
I
from
just
other
wish
cultures thrown
my
in,
fucking
from the Caribbean,
hips
the West
didn't
Indies,
hurt
some
like a
African
bastard.
words, mixed in. And when
I
spoken,
hope I
even
don't
if,
get
like,
what my
80%
dad
of the
has,
words
which is
are
hernia.
slang, like a heavy
He had
slang English.
a.
If you don't know
I
how to
just want
speak
to make
Goa, you're
sure
not
that
gonna
I
know
don't get a
what's being said.
hernia,
Not exactly.
but there
Because of
is
a long period of relative isolation for most whites while working on
because
large
he's
plantations in
had
rural
it.
areas, the
There's a
Africans of the Sea
possibility
Islands
that I
enslaved
might
from a
get
variety
it
of
as
Central and
well.
West African ethnic
And
groups.
also, I need to find
And it
out
has developed this
how
distinct
much
culture
iron's in my
that
diet.
has preserved much of their
Some
African
bullshit.
linguistic and cultural heritage
Always
from various
some other
peoples.
bullshit.
Total remaining Gullah population around 200,000 today. When Robert's mom
Isn't
Lydia
it
got older, she
always?
was forced to work in the fields, Sea Island cotton plantations. They would utilize a task system at this time, which was not implemented everywhere in the South. Each person would have a daily task based on, age and abilities. This allowed enslaved people to have at least some control over their free time. They were able to tend to their own crops and livestock, make clothing, go hunting and fishing, as long as they got their tasks done for the day. Enslaved people on these plantations created an internal economy where they bartered and would sell items to one another. In 1805, at the age of 9, Lydia was taken from her family to work in the McKee house.
But
in
I hope
Beaufort.
everybody else is
Margaret
having
and
a
John McKee
great
visited
day.
their
Hope
Ashdale
everybody's
plantation
doing
for
good.
Christmas. Margaret brought oranges for the kids, small gift for each enslaved person, and a yearly allotment of clothes for each person. The other children hid from Margaret, but Lydia approached her. Margaret was impressed, decided to bring Lydia back to Beaufort to work as a house enslaved person. Some reward. Lydia and her mom devastated, obviously didn't want to be separated. Lydia was allowed to return to the plantation on Sundays, but over time, those visits would become fewer and farther between. Lydia cooked, cleaned, helped raise the McKee children. She was 15 when Sugar Britches was born, put in charge of caring for him. Possible that Lydia and Sugar Britches had a close relationship because he likely spent more time with her than his own mother. When Sugar Britches took over the plantation in 1834, Lydia would move into the slave quarters behind his house. And 5 years later, she gave birth to Robert. And Sugar Britches, may have been Robert's father, but some historians doubt this because, Lydia was a maternal figure and they find it pretty creepy. Okay, fair. However, I would argue, stepson having sex with stepmom, porn videos, super popular on porn sites, like that I find to a fucking very creepy level. Vice, Mashable, other sites have reported on this trend for years. The fantasy of having sex with a maternal figure who isn't blood related, it didn't come out of thin air. So who the hell knows? Just because this lady helped raise him doesn't mean he didn't have sex with her. What I do know is that no one actually did call Henry McKee Sugar Britches. It's just fun for me to say. Where did Robert's last name come from? Does that indicate father? Like there was that guy Smalls that was the manager of the plantation. No. He
Both
most
my
likely chose
beloved
his last name
parents are
himself when he got
allergic
older.
to coconut. I'm
Maybe he chose
extremely
it
allergic to
because he
coconut.
thought that guy
One's
was his father, but probably not.
allergic to
It was common
shellfish. I'm
custom for
allergic to
enslaved people at the
shellfish. One
time to
has
choose their own last name.
scoliosis. I have
His
scoliosis.
crewmates on the
One
ship,
has
he'd steal for the Union Army. They would call
fibromyalgia.
him
I have
Small or Smalls.
fibromyalgia. I
Could
know
have
a
been a
lot of
nickname that
their health
became a last
issues are
name.
very
In
likely for
1862,
me,
someone did ask Robert
unfortunately.
about surnames, for enslaved people in South Carolina. And he told them that enslaved people chose their own
piling
names, but would
on
never say
and
that name in
piling
front of their
on,
enslaver because it was a way for them to reject the enslaver's claim upon them and assert their own identity. So he just picked it. And it has no association with any people near. Robert grew up in the McKee house in Beaufort. He grew up cleaning Sugar Britches' boots, carrying logs in for the fire, bringing water in from the well, similar chores. He would accompany Sugar Britches on trips to the family plantation in Ashdale nearby. And it is so fun to call him that. Lightens up such a sad, heavy tale a bit. Robert played with the McKee children in his free time. Because of this, he received slightly better treatment. The family favored him above other slaves, so much so that his mom worried he'd reach manhood without grasping the true horrors of the institution into which he was born. Interesting. Wonder how much this influenced how ambitious and daring he later became, right? He spent a lot of time with these white kids, a lot of time really where he truly got to see that they were no better, no different than he. That knowledge must have done wonders for his confidence, self-esteem, but also been a terrible burden to bear. Despite knowing, really, truly knowing they were no better, they were not enslaved like he was. Robert really did get a unique view of both worlds growing up, that of wealthy white people and that of, enslaved people. Author Kate Lineberry, author of Be Free or Die, a book about Smalls, wrote, "No one ever lost sight of the difference in their lives. While the McKee children learned to read and write, Robert tended to their father. While they slept in luxurious rooms in the main house, Robert slept near his mother in the simple slave quarters with only basic furniture and supplies. Lydia taught Robert to speak Gullah there. He was able to communicate with the enslaved people at his mom's old plantation in Ashdale. Even though he never experienced field work himself. Because he received preferential treatment, young Robert was able to get away with things like ignoring the city's slave curfew growing up, often stayed out late with white men, something that troubled Lydia. He was given a taste of what freedom looked like, but not given actual freedom. That had to fuck with his mind a little bit. Let him know how not free he was and what could happen to him if he kept carrying on like the white men he hung out with. His mom sent Robert to the Beaufort jail one day to watch a whipping, and then sent him to a slave auction. This was a big wake-up call for Robert. He was outraged at the indignity of it all. He had been sheltered from this. Then he became defiant and often found himself arrested in local Beaufort jail after this. No sources really say exactly how he showed his defiance, what he got arrested for. When enslaved people were arrested for breaking curfew, for example, if they weren't taken to jail, they would be delivered to their enslavers for punishment. Robert most often apparently delivered to Henry. Robert said years later during an interview, "I've had no trouble with my owner, but I have seen a good deal in traveling around on the plantation. I've seen stocks in which people are confined from 24 to 48 hours. When whipping, a man is tied up to a tree and gets 100 lashes from a raw hide. 100 lashes, fucking 100. And I bet those 100 lashes were delivered with vigor. God, that hurt. Made me for weeks, if not months." I continued, "Sometimes a man is taken to a blacksmith shop and an iron of 60 pounds is fastened to his feet so that when it's taken off, he cannot walk for days. I've heard of whipping a woman in the family way by making a hole in the
I want
ground for her
kids, but
stomach.
at the same time, I don't wish
My aunt was whipped
this
so
on
many
them.
times until she
On a
did not have
positive
the same
note, the
skin
beings
she was born with.
with in my
Robert
relationship
said that
have
enslaved
made
people were punished for
me
the simplest
happier than
thing
I've
if it was not done
ever
to
been.
suit the owner's
Good.
notion. Right? They were whipped till the
Good.
blood came and then washed down with salt and
I'm
water.
glad that
Whew.
the people
Think about some of
around
the
you can make you
worst serial
happy.
killers we've covered here on Time
Don't
Suck in the past.
let life.
Right? This same type of person,
You
that same
got
type of
one
person
life.
existed
Live it.
back at this time. But I guess,
Be
probably didn't
happy.
often have to roam
Find
the country,
happiness.
look for victims. They
Find
owned
those
them,
things that make you
and then they
happy.
just
Try
could
to
and
make
did what
other
they
people
wished. Their
happy.
sadism was legal.
It's as easy as that.
Terrifying thought. Imagine Albert fucking Fish if he was your slave master. Right? No laughing then. "Well, Robert, looks like you brought in 2 logs of firewood when I clearly asked for 3. Hope you're thirsty and hungry, and you got your fat bottom good and thickened up. Doing those squats like I showed you. It's time for whipping. Dipping some hot apple cider and lapping up a little piping hot peanut butter." Albert Fish is a slave master. What a fucking nightmare. Not that he's not inherently a nightmare already. Could have been those equivalents back then. Probably were. Not like anyone had to get a fucking psych eval before they became a slave owner. 1851, when Robert's 12, he's sent to Charleston to work. Henry now sold a house on Prince Street, moved to Bay Street to be with his in-laws. William de Treville, son of a senator, will purchase Robert's boyhood home. Henry now sent Robert to Charleston, 75 miles, from Beaufort. Yeah, like I said, Henry would receive the majority of Robert's salary when he's working in Charleston. That's interesting, right? You could go work for someone else and then send your money back to your master. When Robert first moved to Charleston, he most likely lived in the slave quarters at the home of Eliza Ancrum, Henry's sister-in-law. Oh, Sugar Britches, sister-in-law. Robert worked many jobs, first as a waiter at the Planters Hotel, gas lamp lighter, Steve Door foreman, sailmaker, then a hack driver and a rigger. Hack driver was a 19th century equivalent to a taxi driver. Was a
live the best
By
life.
19, he had many jobs. Allowed to keep $1 a week of his
Be
wages.
the best you can be.
That probably bought him too
life
much.
isn't
Black horse
perfect,
cost
but
about $25 back then.
be amazing.
Fuck, isn't going to get you a lot. Robert dreamed of buying his freedom, but that seemed pretty impossible because of the little money he was allowed to keep.
Life is
Only the South
difficult
Carolina
already.
legislature could free enslaved people,
live
and it would
a
take years of
positive
labor to
and
be able to
nice
afford it if they did grant him freedom, which was unlikely.
I'm glad I
to do
can
so
at least
could be
be
basically
a
whatever your
little
owner
bit
decided, whatever Sugar Britches
positive
wanted.
for all of you
At that time,
guys.
it could easily cost $500-$600.
Be a little bit
to buy your
awesome
freedom
for
if
you
your owner allowed it,
guys.
and if the South Carolina legislature said okay. And he's keeping $1 a week, so that shit's not going to happen. When Robert was a teen, he went to work at the Charleston docks for a while. Was one of his
I'm
main
always a
jobs.
bit
Job that would
tired
lead him
and
to
stuff
finding
like
freedom in a
that,
different
but
way.
I also
worked first as a stevedore, I mentioned earlier, aka a longshoreman. As a stevedore foreman, right? Loading, unloading cargo,
God
supervising
damn it!
that.
Why am I so
He
tired?
worked hoisting horses that would help
Hate
load and unload
this.
vessels
Hate
as well. His
this.
employer was a man named John Simmons. John liked Robert because of his work ethic. After a year, he put Robert in a rigging loft. In the winter, he then taught Robert how to make rope lines and sails. In the following summer, he hired him as a sailor on a schooner. Learned all kinds of maritime skills that are going to come in real handy. Robert became an expert navigator along the South Carolina, Georgia, and even Florida coast after this. On December 24th, 1856, now 17 years old, Robert marries Hannah Jones, an enslaved hotel maid who worked in Charleston. Hannah was enslaved to Samuel Kingman, worked for Planters and Mechanics Bank in Charleston. He purchased Hannah and her 3 kids a decade earlier, Charlotte, Clara, a baby boy named Bostic. Bostic not documented any records after his birth, likely died in early childhood, as so many kids did back then. Hannah was a dozen years older than Robert, described as having a kind face and a strong spirit. Showed him the ways of a lady. Hey, Lucifina. Together, Hannah and Robert went on to have a daughter named Elizabeth and a son, Robert Jr. Sadly, Robert Jr. will die of smallpox as a toddler. Man, rough fucking times for parents back then, right? Before
You're a
vaccines
really cool
and modern
person.
medicine, much as Big Pharma can go get fucked in many ways. I mean, they have collectively done a lot of good for the world. Robert loved Hannah, but he may have gotten married for more practical reasons, later saying, my idea was to have a wife to prevent me from running around.
You're a really good person.
Have
Goat.
somebody to do for me.
Tired
and
or
keep
not,
me.
you're
Okay,
just
very practical,
you,
not
and that's the
necessarily
coolest
romantic.
part.
Shook
I
bridges
try.
And to give Robert permission to marry Hannah. And of course, he gave it.
I
Then
just
Robert got
wish I
Kingsman
would.
consent. Hannah donor by offering to pay him $5 a month. Wow, man, clearly he's being allowed to keep more than $1 a week now. Both Hannah and Robert's enslavers allowed them to then live in a house together. Having a family meant that Robert was not just concerned about himself anymore. His worst fear now was his family being sold to enslavers far from Charleston. That was always possible. Another horror to imagine. Imagine that your partner, that your kids are owned by one person and you're owned by someone else. And at any time, for any reason, either owner can sell you or your family to anyone they please. There's not a fucking thing you can do about it. Not legally. Robert asked the Kingman family if he could purchase his wife and children's freedom. This technically was not legal, a slave buying the freedom of other slaves, but it did happen sometimes, very, very rarely. The Kingman said yes, but they're going to need $800. Robert, fucking did some math. He's like, God damn it. Let's work for a couple decades, earn that much money, and save it. His realization that he would likely never be able to buy either his or his family's freedom, and certainly not, all of their freedom, would soon fuel a daring escape. The American Civil War begins April 12th, 1861. A few months later, that July, experienced oceanic navigator Robert is hired as a deckhand on the Confederate supply ship, the Planter. The Planter was recently converted from being a cotton steamer, now rented out by the Confederate Navy. Primary job to carry supplies,
Small amounts of caffeine, maybe.
in Charleston Harbor. Scotsman James
I
Ferguson
don't have
owned the
any
ship.
caffeine.
The craft was new, built in 1860, 147 feet long, made of oak and cedar. The Planter was particularly valuable because it could navigate in less than 4 feet of water, which was necessary with all the hidden sandbars
I got,
among all the sea
I got
islands along the
V8
South Carolina
Splash.
coast. Ferguson
But that's
originally
just
piloted the ship to
mostly
transport
sugar.
cotton and passengers from Charleston to Georgetown. Then, when the war broke out, he leased the ship to Confederates for $125 a day.
Come here, big
fuck
boy.
yeah. Big money back then, roughly equivalent to about $2,200 a day now, $65,000 a month. Not bad for something you're leasing out. The Planter carried supplies,
big
weapons,
boy.
soldiers, dispatches
I'ma
all
pet
around the
you.
harbor.
What are you
Planter
gonna
also
do
surveyed
about it?
sandbars, destroyed federal lighthouses,
What are
or
you
the
gonna
federal
do about it,
lighthouse
big
in the
rabbit?
Hunting Islands, helped lay torpedoes and some inlets to
Ah.
prevent a Union attack. Then in September of 1861, ship owner Ferguson stepped down, and Confederate Captain Charles J. Relaya took over. Relaya, one of
Let me have a
Ferguson's
little
business partners,
snack.
and an experienced boat pilot. Robert already knew the harbor well, and his time on the Planter only increased his piloting skills. After just 2 months, he's promoted to wheelman, which really meant pilot. But he wasn't allowed to be called a pilot because at the time it was not in accordance with coastwise nautical etiquette.
Hey, big
For a
rabbit.
black man a pilot.
What is
All these
it?
fucking weird rules people make up to fucking stroke their own goddamn egos. Oh, so he's a pilot. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a common mistake. No, he's
Hmm.
a wheelman.
I heard.
You will rouse some feathers if you call that wheelman a pilot. Yeah, but he's steering the ship.
Maybe.
I don't.
Maybe
Listen
I
here.
should try
Listen here, son.
something.
You don't understand
Does-
all ways around here. Okay, he's a wheelman. He is not a
I
pilot.
don't want to keep drinking
You saw calling him a
gallons
pilot.
of
People are
fucking
gonna
sweet
think,
tea to keep
you,
me up.
are quite friendly.
Because
with
that's
the Dolphin sword,
what's needed to
which
keep
could
me
lead to a serious decrease in social standing, which do have consequences. Fuck is wrong?
What are you doing, big rabbit?
This promotion. The wheelman
gonna
critical
give me
to
more
his escape
pickle
plans. Over his
chips.
time on the boat, Robert
I want
earned the
more.
trust of 2 groups: the other black crew members, the white officers who ran the ship. All the time he'd spent with white friends growing up, paying off here.
It's
after
just a
nearby
fucking-
Fort Sumter had fallen to kick off the war. President
It's
Lincoln
because I
ordered the
literally
blockade
stream
was to be placed
at
on all
night.
major southern ports. as
right
I
after I get
And Charleston was one of the largest ports in the South.
I've heard
Major supply
Sneak
zone.
Energy
Blockade after it was
and
enacted, Charleston still
Gamer
got supplies
Subs
from
are
blockade
pretty good.
runners. People put
I've heard
smuggled goods into the harbor and then
Guacamole
sneak cotton
Gamer
rice and
Fart.
shit back out and take it to Europe. But you know, that's
That
pretty hard to
one's
do.
that
Sometimes
one's
they
pretty
get caught.
popular
Various
these
railroads would
days.
then deliver what supplies they could smuggle in all around the South after their delivery in
Guacamole
Charleston.
Gamer
The
Fart.
Union would call Charleston the rat hole because there were so many channels in and out of the harbor, so it was impossible to stop all the traffic. But the Union got some. If the Union had been too successful, I guess Smalls maybe never could have escaped. Right? They were getting all the ships. Maybe he could have got his ship. I don't know. May 13th, 1862, Robert Smalls and a crew of enslaved men decided to try and pull off the unthinkable. They planned to steal the planter in the middle of the night. Oh, I know why I wrote that last note, because if they were too successful, they would have sold his ship before he got to fucking smuggle it out of there. Bingo! It's all coming together. May 13th, 1862. Robert Smalls, crew of enslaved men, tried to pull off the unthinkable. They planned to steal the planter in the middle of the night, sail right out of Charleston Harbor. Not going to be easy, though, of course. Confederates defending Charleston, the water around it, defending various forts, possessing various forts, including Fort Sumter. General Roswell Ripley commanded the CSS Planter and all other Confederate ships in the harbor, and the Planter was the most valuable war vessel the Confederates had in Charleston. Robert and his crew had one plan: escape or die. If they were caught, they couldn't fight their way out, they were going to commit group suicide, so they would not be forced back into slavery. They planned to jump into the water and drown themselves. The Naval Committee report on the escape reads, fearful was the venture, but it was made. Robert's daring escape was not planned in a rush. He spent weeks planning, preparing his crew. Right? One day, a crew member joked about how much Smalls had looked like Captain Relaya. Relaya was off the ship at the time, and this is before he started planning, and this crew member pulled out his wide-brim hat, placed it on Smalls' head, joked about the resemblance between the two men. This was the first spark.
It sounds like
Smalls
insanity,
had to start
but
plotting his escape plan. Relay and the white officers would leave
it's
the ship
definitely
most nights. They
something.
did this often because they liked to visit their wives.
I've heard
and
it's
kids in the city,
actually
even though this was a
something.
direct violation of General Orders Number 5, requiring white officers and crews to stay on board 24/7 if their vessel was docked in the harbor, which the planter was. Captain Relay got caught for this. He'd face a court-martial. The fact that he kept doing it anyway showed how much he trusted Robert. Lucky for Robert, Relay also, leave his hat in the pilot house when he's off duty. So now Robert plans to steal the ship by impersonating Captain Relay. Robert tells the men he's planning this with to not ever joke about the escape while on the ship. Don't raise any suspicions. He asked them if they were serious to meet at his house so they could really get to planning. Robert knew that since September 1861, the Union officers creating the port blockade had been accepting escaped enslaved people. Most escaped enslaved people had made it to the blockade in canoes. No one had ever stolen a massive ship before. Just a few weeks earlier, a group of 15 enslaved people had seized a barge from the waterfront and rowed that to the Union fleet. That barge belonged to General Ripley, right, commander of the Planter. He was furious that enslaved people had outsmarted him. Smalls knew that his escape would now, be a little harder. He's going to be looking even more closely. It was already going to be so hard. You have to pass two forts, Johnson and Sumter, as well as gun batteries, additional ones along the shore, and guard ships. The Planter made lots of smoke and noise. It'd be impossible to slip away, in silence. He'd have to trick the forts, trick other people into thinking he's on a routine mission. The main obstacles to his plan seemed overwhelming, right? Making sure none of the three white officers would be on board, avoiding detection from numerous guards along the coast, where the ship was docked, picking up passengers, passing by forts, finally convincing the Union blockade officers not to fucking shoot them out of the water. Robert normally worked with a crew of 10 men, including 3 white officers: Captain Charles J. Relaya, First Mate Samuel Smith Hancock, and Engineer Samuel Z. Pitcher. The black crew of 7 men acted as engineers, deckhands, and in Small's case, wheelmen. John Small, Alfred Gordine, they were the engineers. David Jones, Jack Gibbs, Gabriel Turner, Abraham Jackson were deckhands. 3 additional men, Abraham Alston, William Morrison, and Samuel Chisholm, also recruited to help their escape plan. Robert didn't really want to tell any additional people about his plan, but he knew he needed a little extra manpower.
I drink tea and coffee.
He
Damn.
put his trust in his crew, hoped they wouldn't say anything. He told them about his escape plans during their meeting in either late April or early May. 3 other men, that came that were not, part of the crew were friends and neighbors who had experience in the water. Author Kate Lineberry wrote, their individual decisions could not have been easy. All knew that whatever they decided in that moment would affect the rest of their lives. It was still quite possible that the Confederacy would win the war. If it did, staying behind meant enduring lives of servitude. The promise of freedom was so strong and the thought of remaining in slavery so abhorrent. These considerations ultimately convinced the men to join Smalls. Before the meeting ended, all had agreed to take part in the escape and to be ready to act whenever Smalls decided it was time. Robert decided to tell Hannah his plan, but asked her to tell no one else. She asked what would happen if he got caught, and he simply told her, I shall be shot. If they were caught, all the men would die, and the women and children would likely be whipped and sold. Although she was afraid, Hannah wanted nothing more than freedom for herself and her family. She agreed to go and told Robert, "It is a risk, dear, but you and I and our little ones must be free. I will go, for where you die, I will die." Okay, so there wasn't just practical, their marriage. A lot of love there. Elizabeth, just 4 years old. Poor Robert Jr. not live much longer, just a baby. This time, the journey would be difficult with children, but Robert and Hannah could not leave them behind. Robert instructed Hannah to be ready to escape whenever he told her it was time. Hannah was forbidden to tell other women anything until the last possible moment to protect the mission. He told some friends to get ready. Something's going down. While the crew waited, they worried about deckhand David Jones. David Jones. Gordine said of Jones, he was given to talk, and whenever he got hold of whiskey, he wanted to tell all he knew. Oh, the eternal enemy.
Almost everyone I know energy
plan.
drinks me tea and coffee. It's mostly just sweet tea for
Jones
me.
was losing his nerve, and they were scared he confessed to planned officers.
Kind of sweet tea for me.
All right at first, but after a few days, he began to weaken and predict disaster. And was evidently ready to give the whole thing away. In this emergency, we got at him one night and threatened his life if he did not brace up, and thus frightened him to being steadfast. Like how eloquently, they fucking threatened this motherfucker into shutting the fuck up.
Yeah.
Or they're going to kill him. The way he wrote it. In this emergency, we got at him one night, threatened his life if he did not brace up, and thus frightened him into being steadfast. The crew spent 2 weeks making supply runs all around the harbor. They removed a cannon from Coles Island near the mouth of the Stone River. This is part of the Confederate effort to put their limited supplies in strategic locations. On May 12th, the crew picked up 4 cannons, 42-pound rifle, smaller guns, 200 pounds of ammo. Smalls was loving this as they're doing this as part of their Confederate duties because he's like, okay, this is going to make the ship more valuable to the Union. It's going to make me a hero. And then he knew the white officers, were going to leave again, this night on May 12th. Conveniently, the Confederate guard boat that monitored the entrance to the harbor also out of commission this night. And Robert knew that the next day, on May 13th, the Confederates were going to put Charleston under martial law in anticipation of a Union attack. So it was now or never. The plan to return to Charleston docks the afternoon of the 12th, scheduled to go out again in the morning, another supply delivery. So the ship was stocked with, 200 rounds of ammo, 32-round pivot fan, 24-pound howitzer, 4 other guns, food, whatnot. Small tells his men, fucking time. But 2 immediate problems present themselves. Problem 1, Hancock announces that he's now going to sleep on the ship. One of the white crew. The black crew is surprised. This is not his normal routine, but they can't act suspicious. Smalls tells his men, fuck it, we're still going. According to Gordine, he said he wouldn't give up, saying that he would either lock the mate in the stateroom or kill him. It was finally decided to go ahead, but we had scarcely come to that conclusion when the man went ashore and thus saved his bacon. If he had remained with us, he'd have either been carried out to sea as a captive or thrown overboard as a corpse. I love how this guy writes. Problem 2. Deckhands Jones and Gibbs felt the risk was too great and they changed their minds. Now the crew worried that they were going to snitch. Right? They also lost they'd also now lost 2 crew members, making the ship to the blockade a bit harder. But they're going anyway. Later that night, Hannah arrives with Elizabeth, Robert Jr., and Clara. Charlotte, Hannah's oldest daughter,
it's not
chose
sweet
to stay
tea
behind
unless
with the
your
family.
tea is
John
mostly
Small's
sugar.
wife, daughter, joined
I'm
her.
from the South
Lavinia
myself.
Wilson,
Love
slave
me
to a
some
bank
sweet
cashier,
tea.
Anna
I
White,
mean,
no information known about
living
her
in
other
the
than her
South,
name,
it's real
also joined
easy.
this group. Hannah brings them all to the plan,
Milo
but won't tell
sweet
them why.
tea.
Smart, right? The men won't let him leave, even though they needed to be home before the 9 p.m. curfew. Smalls waits until the last minute to reveal his plan. Too dangerous to let people know too soon. The women are terrified when they find out. According to Gordine, they cried and prayed and entreated, and if Smalls hadn't had the grit of a bulldog, he would have let go. It took an hour to calm those women down, and then we locked them in the staterooms and threatened to kill the first one who made a loud noise. All right, so they're hysterical. What? But I mean, rightfully so. Worried about getting fucking killed, whipped, separated from the kids, all kinds of stuff. The group then made their final preparations and their emergency plans. They got caught and weren't killed immediately, right? They're gonna jump overboard, drown themselves. At midnight, 3 of the crew go with the women to the Etowah, ship tied up at the North Atlantic Wharf. With everything ready, the men have to wait and stew in their anxiety. I guess they're going to keep some of the women safer now in case something happens. They're trying to get out of the harbor. They won't go down with them. They have them wait until they're moving a little further away. They can't leave too early. If they got to get to Fort Sumter before first light, they may be stopped. If they're too late, people are going to see a black crew piloting a ship with no white officers, which means certain death. 2 a.m., Smalls puts Rayla's straw hat on to hide his face. He's going for it. Orders the crew to put up the boiler, hoist the South Carolina and the Confederate flags, get this shit moving. Now they got another problem. Wind. Right? The wind is going to blow the smell of smoke into the city and possibly draw attention. There was a massive fire in the city 5 months earlier, so the police were primed to respond to the smell of smoke. The men waited. thinking that they might get, their plan shot down at the last second, but no police ever came. They ease on out of the dock in full view of General Ripley's headquarters. The Chicago Tribune would write of this years later in 1882. The design was hazardous in the extreme. The little boat would have to pass beneath the guns of the batteries in the harbor. Failure in detection would have been certain death. Fearful was the venture, but it was made. The daring resolution had been formed, and under command of Robert Smalls, wheelsman, steam was put on. And with her valuable cargo of guns and ammunition intended for Fort Ripley, a new fortification just constructed in the harbor, about 2 o'clock in the morning, the planter silently moved off from her dock, steamed up to the North Atlantic overlay. Smalls blew the first whistle. The signal to the ship was preparing for normal duties, and they passed without incident. The ship passed a Confederate guard.
So the thing is that in the overlay,
also watched the ship depart. Neither one of them.
Strong overlay, so I'm drawing all these characters, these random bits and bobbles all over. It's gonna be a big old. It's gonna be a big old bar scene.
17 passengers, 9 men, 5 women, 3 kids.
So you got Bard in the background.
Slowly up to her place. We did not
while a few people are gonna be there.
The women and children then went below deck while the men stayed on board. 3:25 a.m. The planter continues on. From his position in the pilot house, Robert blows the ship's whistle while passing Fort Johnson. Fort Johnson had 2 batteries, 3 guns each. The crew passes again without incident. They then pass a Confederate boat patrolling the harbor without incident. When they passed the guard boat, Smalls rings for more steam.
All the other
Gordine later said, "We gave it to him down in the engine room,
my comics so far
had come, but not able to tell just where we were. John and I were alone down there. When the call came for a full head of steam, I was taken so weak that I could hardly stand. And when I looked at John, his face was the color of wood ashes. We were both as scared as rabbits in front of a dog. And it was the same with all others except Robert Smalls. If he lost his nerve for a single minute, no one noticed it." Again, I wish this Gordine guy would have written so much more. The planter then passed an anchored gunboat. Smalls saluted the boat with a whistle. They then passed a brig with 2 barges. Smalls actually shouted a greeting to the brig's pilot. He was good, smooth. Wonder if being out there around all that salt water caused this guy Steele's balls to ever rust. God, this guy had fucking big balls. 4:15 a.m. The planter approaches Fort Sumter, the most fearful part of the journey. The Confederates had constructed a log boom across the channel, left a gap to allow blockade runners through, though. Any vessel passing through had to pass under the fort's cannon. Smalls pulled the whistle cord for the correct signal, 2 long pulls and a jerk, even folded his arms to mimic Captain Relea. The sentinel on the parapet called for the corporal guard, reported the guard boat going out. The soldier didn't realize that the guard boat was out of commission and the planter was not the guard boat. Crew member Gordine said, "When we drew near the fort, every man but Robert Smalls felt his knees giving way and the women began crying and praying. The sentry guarding the fort yelled, 'Blow the damned Yankees to hell or bring one of them in.' And Robert responded, 'Aye, aye.'" Holy shit, how much sweat was dripping down the crack of his ass at that point.
So you draw
past Fort Sumter,
comic now what? For duty. Or what? And also, me sorry, because I just woke up and my brain didn't work. It's okay.
He asked for have you seen that?
This is my overlay that I'm working on, just sketching it out, slowly getting it done. Gonna get the Be Right Back screen, and then after that,
Planter was heading straight for the Union blockade.
I've got to make the I've got to make the
alarm sounded just after
the intro screen. So I've got intro, not intro.
Smalls ordered the crew to replace the flags with a white bed sheet brought aboard by hand.
And then
Gordine again for half an hour. We expected to hear the boom of a big gun.
After all that,
when we finally got out of range, we realized we'd actually escaped.
I'm gonna get the end
there was more
screen as
weeping
well.
And praying and singing of Halloween songs.
I got 4 screens to work on.
Onward at the head of the blockade, and the ship's crew almost then, gets killed. The Onward's crew almost fires on the planter, but Robert's crew, they had that white sheet out, in time to signal their surrender. So many close calls. Acting Volunteer Lieutenant J. Frederick Nichols, the USS Onward, actually ordered his sailors to open her ports and fire due to a little miscommunication in the final moments of the impossible escape. But the rising sun would save the planter, because before firing, they were able to see that sheet. The Chicago Tribune would report in 1882 again. In the misty morning, a frigate was described off the ball. The planter approached her. In the mist, the white flag was not seen. And to the terror and surprise of the planter's crew, the strange ship hovered round and presented her broadside and opened her ports. One of the officers on the quarterdeck discerned the flag of truce. The vessels are now within hailing distance, and the captain of the Union ship asked what boat that was and what she wanted. The reply was given, and the planter's errand explained. The captain ordered her to come alongside, but his order was not heard by Smalls and his men, who proceeded to go around the stern of the ship when they were brought to a standstill by the captain's thundering tones as he called out, "Stop or I will blow you out of the water." An eyewitness later recounted, just as number 3 port gun was being elevated, someone cried out, "I see something that looks like a white flag." And true enough, there was something flying on the steamer. It would have been white by application of soap and water. As she neared us, we looked in vain for the face of a white man. When they discovered that we would not fire on them, there was a rush of contrabands out on her deck, some dancing, some singing, whistling, jumping. Others stood looking towards Fort Sumter and muttering all sorts of maledictions against it and the heart of the South, generally. As the steamer came near and under the stern of the Onward, one of the colored men stepped
It's
forward
all
and taking
good.
off
We
his
got
hat,
a
shouted,
Yama here.
"Good morning, sir. I've brought you some of the old United States guns, sir." What a fucking great moment. Smalls brought guns, ammo, and important documents, shipping route, signaling, mine locations, docking, and departure time. Quite the bounty. His info led directly to the capture of Coles Island just a week after his escape. Lieutenant Nichols now transferred the planner to his commander, Captain E.G. Parrott of the USS Augusta. Parrott forwarded the ship to Flag Officer Samuel Francis DuPont,
Yes,
Fort Royal,
sir.
with a letter
I
describing
will
Smalls as
save.
very intelligent
Fine.
contraband.
Fine,
This
Acro.
contraband was one
I'll
of their terms
save.
for African American. DuPont was
Jeez.
impressed by the story,
Hey,
wrote to the
what's the
Navy
best
Secretary
way to
in Washington
draw a
that Robert was
kobold?
bad motherfucker.
That really
He just
depends
done
on
the
what you
Union a huge
want.
solid.
What are you feeling?
Robert's daring escape
What are you
reported in the
feeling
papers
for
around
a
the Union, making him a
kobold?
national phenomenon.
There's
Became a
so
war
many
hero in the
ways
North,
to draw a
enemy in the
kobold.
South. The Confederates issued a $2,000 reward for his capture. And Robert's escape greatly encouraged President Lincoln
So,
to now
like,
allow free black men to
all
serve
right.
in the Union Army. Smalls personally
Hold
met
up,
with
Yumi.
Secretary of War Edwin Stanton and President Lincoln to convince him to enlist black soldiers, and he did convince them. He personally delivered orders from the Secretary of War to a brigadier
right.
general
I'll
authorizing
show
the
you.
very first regiment
This is
black
just
soldiers
between you and
serving in the
me.
Union Army. Hail fucking
So-
Nimrod and hail Robert Smalls.
You can
Done
draw
did it.
them
On May
like
30th,
this.
1862, Congress passed a private bill authorizing the Navy to appraise the planner and award Smalls and the crew half the proceeds for rescuing the ship from the Confederates. Congress awarded Smalls $1,500, which was actually way less than half. This will come up later. He'll kind of sue them many years later to get more of the money. So symbolically a nice move, but also kind of a shitty move because they actually did not give him half the proceeds. He then went on a speaking tour across the country to talk about his escape and recruit black soldiers for the Army. He claimed to have recruited up to 5,000 soldiers
You can
himself.
have it like
And then he went to
that.
fight in the war himself. Joined the Navy. But despite his daring escape, he
Hmm.
initially not allowed to pilot a ship, not officially. According to the Chicago Tribune again, it was found that although the services of Smalls would be invaluable as a pilot, yet that he could not receive pay as such, there being some regulation in the service requiring these officers to have been graduates of some naval school. Smalls received a commission as second lieutenant of Company B, though.
You can draw
33rd Regiment, United
like
States Colored
that.
Troops. And he went on to conduct 17 missions in the Charleston area. In June of 1862, Smalls traveled to South Carolina's Modesto Island to
You can
join
draw
Union
them
Captain Ryan and his
with
gunboat.
a face
Piloted
like
the planner and Ryan's
this.
gunboat, the Crusader, up to Simmons Bluff on Wadmalaw Sound, just outside of Charleston. Smalls now fought directly against Confederate ships, possibly crewed by men from the area that he may have went out drinking with growing up, and helped drive the Confederates out of the area. Nice! How good most of that shit felt. Smalls continued piloting, acting as a blockading pilot between Charleston and Beaufort. He went up and down coastal rivers, identifying and moving torpedoes that had been planted much like, mines. Sounds terrible. On October 2nd, 1862, Smalls, DuPont, and his crew attended a public reception in New York. The New York Times published an article about the reception saying Robert Smalls entered the house and was received with deafening cheers. A few minutes later, he was presented on behalf of the black community with a very handsome gold medal, executed by Ball and Black, with the following inscription. Presented to
can
Robert
draw 'em
Smalls
like
by the colored
this.
citizens of New York, October 2nd, 1862, as a token of regard for his heroism, his love of liberty, and his patriotism. Well, hail Nimrod. In April 1863, Robert piloted another Union ship, the Keokuk, in the Battle of Fort Sumter and the attack at Folly Island Creek. Keokuk took several hits, eventually sank after the battle. Well, more than several. In the attack, the Keokuk was struck 96 times. Goddamn. 19 shots passed through her. She retired from the engagement only to sink the next morning near Lighthouse Inlet. Smalls left her just before she went down, taking on board Ironsides. Man, dude stayed with that ship right up until it went under. Dude was on that ship as he got hit fucking 96 times. It sounds like he was
So
a
this
boat pilot
is
equivalent
the
of like Han Solo.
Forgotten Realms
skills.
version
Do a lot
of
with the damaged craft.
Kobold.
During the attack on Falling Island Creek,
Just
Captain
the,
Nicholson
fluffy
piloted the
version.
planter. Confederate batteries fired at the ship. Nicholson became demoralized, left the pilot house at some point, and then Smalls, who was now on deck, saw the empty pilot house, assumed control of the ship, and sailed it to safety. And he was rewarded for his service by being given full command of the planter later that year. This made him the first black man to become a true captain of a vessel.
Steady
US service. He earned a
prism.
salary now of $150 a month, which made him one of the
Best
highest
way to
paid
draw a
black soldiers
kobold
of the war.
is the female
Small
make him
continued piloting
thick.
the planet
If
for
it's
the
a
rest of the
boy,
war.
make him beefy.
Right? The ship
What?
served admirably.
What are
as
you
a Union
talking
supply
about?
boat.
If it's
December 30th,
female, make
1864,
him
while awaiting
thick.
repairs
If
to the
it's
planter in
male,
Philadelphia,
make him
despite being a
thick.
goddamn war hero, Robert is removed from an all-white
You
street
do
car.
not
Slavery didn't
discriminate.
exist up north, but segregation sure as fuck did.
Thick
In the
is
following months,
in
he would lead one of the first mass
the
boycotts of
eye of
segregated
the
public
beholder.
transportation. I imagine forming some
And then
political
what I
ideals
like
as
to
well.
do
His work paid off
is
years
that
later in 1867.
some
When
give
the
them
city law
little
would finally
ears
integrate
like that.
streetcars there.
Some give them
The Civil
little
War
like
ends April
ears
9th,
like this
1865, starting a new chapter in Robert Small's
to make
life.
them a little bit
After the war,
different.
he's
I like to
awarded
do
in the ceremony
this.
aboard the planter in the same harbor where he'd escaped nearly 3 years earlier. How good that must have felt. Hometown boy makes good. Also, how many of the white people back home must have fucking hated him? Considered him a traitor. What a strange homecoming that must have been. But also, fucking people not happy for him winning the freedom of himself, his family, and everyone in the area that shared his race. Wonder how old Sugar Britches felt about it all. After the war, Smalls now commissioned as a brigadier general in the new South Carolina militia. And this had to have felt so good. Now he purchases his former enslaver's home in Beaufort. The home Sugar Britches had sold to William de Trifle, that senator's son. After buying the home, he also took in some of the McKee family, who are financially destitute now after the war. How cool is that of him? Also, how awkward was that for, the McKees? I wonder if the McKees ever forgot how the tides had turned on their fate. Maybe sometimes fell into old habits, said awkward shit. Robert, fetch me some firewood at once. Excuse me? I said, fetch me some firewood before I have you whipped. Motherfucker, I own this house now. Say whip again. You'll be sleeping in the goddamn swamp tonight. De Treville fled Beaufort after the war, which opened up the house for Robert Smalls. Hadn't paid his taxes. Now Robert was able to buy it. De Treville would later sue Smalls, claiming the tax sale was invalid, and the case would go all the way to the Supreme Court. And in 1878, the court would uphold Smalls' title. And being a war hero, no doubt helped him there. And that ruling would help many other black people keep their homes after the war. 1867, Robert opens a general store, school for black children, and founds a newspaper in Beaufort. Hot damn, I like this guy. War hero with empathy, taking some people who used to own him and now giving back to the community. 28 now, he spends a great deal of time educating himself, reading, writing, studying the government, shit he never had the opportunity to do before. He runs the Freedman's Cheap Store with Richard Gleaves, one of
How's
his
it
mentors.
going?
Gleaves going to
It's
become
going
lieutenant
well.
governor of South Carolina. Highest office ever held by a
I'm
black man in
teaching
state
how
history.
to draw a kobold.
Smalls also became one of the founders of
guess.
the Enterprise Railroad Company of Charleston.
I was
Soon held interest in the Beaufort
don't know.
Railroad Company and Beaufort Manufacturing and Improvement Company. Also purchases
Hope this helps just a little bit.
and land around Beaufort. Dude
Hope
was a
this,
fucking
I
mover
hope
and a
this
shaker,
helps
making power
just
moves.
a tiny
Smalls made enough money
fraction.
to send his daughter to the best schools, accepting black students in the country. Gave them a childhood he had previously never imagined possible for them. Then he also goes into politics. First serves as a delegate to South Carolina's Constitutional Convention. Then he's elected to the South Carolina House of Representatives and State Senate. Between 1874 and 1887, he would serve 5 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives as a member of the Republican Party. Robert represented the South Carolina district called Black Paradise because of all the political opportunities there for black men. He was the most popular candidate of the area, largely because he spoke Gullah. And did you know that in the mid-90s, so random, Nickelodeon had a kid show based on Gullah culture called Gullah Gullah Island? No idea. Would never have known about it if not for this episode. I want to play a little bit of the theme song.
Hey there!
Gullah Gullah.
Let's play together in the bright sunny weather.
Let's all go to Gullah Gullah Island. Gullah Gullah!
It's catchy.
See them do their all we need now is you there.
Let's all go to Gullah Gullah Island.
Gullah Gullah.
You get it? That's fun. I had no idea. Ran on Nickelodeon for several years. And Nick Jr., I think, specifically. Democrats called Smalls a blemish. I'm sure a lot of other words, way fucking worse than that one. And he made many attempts to remove him from the House of Representatives. From 1868 to 1870, he would serve in the South Carolina House of Representatives, the state house. From 1870 to 1874,
I
he
play a
served in the
kobold
state
in one
Senate.
of the
He
Indian
would act as
campaigns
chair
I'm
of the
in. Her
Printing
name's
Committee. After
Glitta.
this, Robert would serve 3
This definitely
non-consecutive
helps give
terms
me
in
an
the US
idea of how
House
to
of
draw a better
Representatives in
kobold.
DC,
Very much
1875,
appreciated. No
1879,
problem.
1882,
Hopefully it's not
1883,
just
1884,
jibber jabber.
1887. His most
Hopefully it
outstanding
makes
action was supporting a bill that
some
required
semblance
equal
of
accommodations
sense.
for both races on interstate conveyances. How's that he had to fight to have additional accommodations for
hate it
Black
when it gets a
Americans,
little
right?
bit hot.
That fighting to stay in
When
the
the
same
weather changes, I get
accommodation,
all
that was,
itchy.
completely unreasonable. It is clearly out of the question. You're out of order. In 1874, due to redistricting, Robert has the opportunity to run for the House of Representatives for the first time. Southeastern District of South Carolina, with a major, majority black constituency, 68%. He beats independent nominee J.P.M. Epping, a white man who ran on a reform platform opposing the Republican state government. And Robert wins roughly 80% of the district's votes. Landslide victory. He's the second black Republican to be admitted to Congress by unseating a white Democrat. The first, John R. Lynch from Mississippi. May have to suck that interesting dude one day. Congressman in the 1870s, again in the 1880s, then becomes a lawyer in his late 40s. Then, just before the turn of the century, in his 50s, embarks on a military career that will last over 10 years and take him all the way to the Philippines. Becomes a major, ends up getting buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Lived until the age of 92. Smart, interesting, tough dude. Back to Smalls from 1875 to 1877. He serves his first term as member of the 44th Congress. During his first year, he earns a position on the Agriculture Committee, obtains appropriations to improve the Port Royal Harbor, seeks federal compensation for the government's use of the Citadel, Charleston's military academy. In June 1876, he attempts to add an anti-discrimination amendment to an Army reorganization bill that required that race no longer affect a soldier's placement. It didn't take, but he fucking tried. July of 1876, Smalls addressed a bill to redeploy federal troops stationed along the Mexico-Texas border, South Carolina. He didn't want to relocate the federal troops already stationed in South Carolina. His private red shirt militias, a South Carolina white supremacist group, would then wage war on the government and free blacks. Smalls argued that moving more federal soldiers to the state would cut off that rotten part all around South Carolina so as to let the core stand. It is those rotten parts which are troubling us. We are getting along all right ourselves. He was never intimidated by those assholes. Kept cool and rational. Sought the best plan to reduce their ignorant power.
Yo, check the M goat.
Election campaign, Smalls toured the state with Republican Governor Daniel Chamberlain. And he once attended a rally in Edgefield, South Carolina. And at the rally, red shirt leader and former Confederate General Matthew Butler took over the meeting and threatened Smalls. Smalls was not intimidated. Smalls' opponent, Democrat George D. Tillman, made things worse. The New York Times called Tillman a Democratic tyrant, violent in his treatment of Republicans, incendiary in his language, and advising all sorts of illegal measures to restrain Republicans from voting.
In Christ.
Very nice, kind of formal way of saying this guy is a complete piece of shit.
Is that not it?
Smalls did not back down, publicly called Tillman the personification of red shirt democracy and the arch enemy of my race. Yep. That racist fuck needs to die. That's what I took from that. And then Smalls won the fucking 1876 election.
God damn it.
Luckily, the governor stationed federal soldiers around local polling places so that red shirts weren't allowed to intimidate voters. The piece of shit Tillman contested the military presence, hoped the Democrat-dominated Congress would rule in his favor. Smalls defended himself in the final session of the 44th Congress, describing South Carolina's election day as a carnival of bloodshed and violence due to Democratic intimidation. George D. Tillman really was a fucking prick. He was actually a big buddy, not kidding, of the dipshit President Andrew, help me, mama, for I can't read, Johnson. From 1877 to 1879, Robert would serve as a member of the 45th Congress, take a position on the Committee of the Militia. But then, being a black politician in the South, catches up with him in a bad way. October 5th, 1877, Smalls arrested in Beaufort on bullshit, trumped-up bribery charges. Accused of accepting a $5,000 bribe while working in the state Senate.
Itchy.
On October 6th, Smalls arrives in Columbia, South Carolina to face these charges of bribery. On October 7th, he's released on $5,000 bail pending trial. Then on November 26th, he's convicted of accepting a bribe and sentenced to 3 years prison with hard labor. Robert, not the only man convicted that day. Francis L. Cardozo, ex-state treasurer, L. Cass Carpenter, former proprietor of newspapers.
Better loves to draw Kobold and Dragons and Dinos.
Cardozo sentenced to 2 years, $4,000 fine. Carpenter sentenced to 2 years and a $1,000 fine, 2 years in jail.
Hopefully this helps you out just totally a little bit.
Motivated. Very likely politically motivated.
Figures out what you want.
99.9%, sure. Republicans outraged. Newspapers blamed Democrats for targeting Smalls because he's a successful black politician and businessman. They want him out of the House. On November 29th, 1877, Robert released from jail on a $10,000 bail pending his appeal with South Carolina's Supreme Court. Returns to Washington to face Tillman's election challenge before the Democrat Majority Committee on Elections. The Committee of White Democrats ruled in Tillman's favor, who was a white Democrat. What are the odds of that? On June 20th, 1878, just before the end of the second session, Robert keeps his seat because the entire House of Representatives never considered the findings of the election. Right? This was considered an important symbolic victory for Republicans because Robert spent so much time fighting the bribery allegations, wasn't able to accomplish much legislation that term. During the 1878 election, Small's appeal still unresolved. His chances of winning this year are slim. Tillman launches a smear campaign against him based on the bribery conviction. Black people also scared to vote because of threats from white supremacists in the area. Tillman wins 71% of the votes. Then worse news. December 1878, the state Supreme Court affirms Robert's conviction. Right? He appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court now. 1879, over a year after being charged, Robert's conviction is resolved. Oh, okay. So got through all of that. Robert's case, taken up by the House, referred to the Judiciary Committee, and they ruled in a lot of old-timey legal speak that the charges were fucking bullshit. Don't even worry about it. April 29th, to put an exclamation point on his innocence. I know, so many trials, so many hearings. The 1879 Democratic South Carolina Governor William Simpson pardoned Smalls. Right? Let's put all this shit fucking behind us. Sea Island Observer Laura Town would write about what happened to Smalls this time in her diary. Robert S. is very cheerful and says that the outrageous bulldozing and cheating in his last election is the best thing that could have happened for the Republican Party, for it has been so barefaced and open that it cannot be denied. Smalls knew he was still popular among Buford's Republicans and hoped to get his seat back. 1880, campaigns for another term in the House. It was difficult at the time for him to get black voters on his side, though, because fears of returning to slavery are fading. Black voters, primary reason for aligning with the Republicans thus far, and many are unhappy with some recent Republican corruption scandals. State's party's in chaos because the South Carolina Republican Convention couldn't even nominate a state ticket. A local journalist wrote Small's attachment to the disorganized and disgraced state party proved to be the strongest point of attack for Democratic opponents. And he loses the election, only gets 40% of the votes. Then calls for a hearing, though, before the Republican majority 47th Congress. On July 18th, 1882, he appears before the Committee on Elections. He wins the committee's support by testifying that his supporters have been scared away from the polls. Right,
I know it's not
right.
very much, but
House
did
knows it.
something on
Smalls, another
Kofi.
victory.
Okay, hold
Now he gets
up.
back to
Let me
his positions
see.
on agriculture and militia committees.
Look,
It was the same
you
situation
don't
last
have
time. He
to.
didn't have
That's
much
very
time to
sweet of
legislate
you,
because
but you
a
didn't
contested
have to.
Election. Then during the next election, the Democrats gerrymandered the state so that only one district would be likely to elect a black candidate.
Very sweet of
This
you.
district contained 1/4 of the state's black population. Robert was now running against two men,
Shut the
politician Samuel
fuck
Lee,
up,
friend and ally,
AVG.
And Representative Edmund Mackey.
Ah,
All deferred to Mackey, present an image of party
thank you.
unity.
Oh,
Shortly thereafter, in 1883, Robert's wife Hannah dies unexpectedly.
thank you.
Following her death, he runs again. Right?
That's
He
so
just never
sweet
stops.
of you,
Now wins again,
Ayame.
1854 or
So
1884,
sweet.
1885. He serves as a member
You
of the
didn't
48th
have
Congress.
to.
He only ran
That's
because on
very kind
January
of you,
28th,
and you didn't
Edward
have
Mackey
to.
died unexpectedly just after winning against Samuel
Okay.
Lee. Lee had already taken a federal patronage position in
I'm
Alabama.
just trying to
Smalls
help
wins in
out
a special election without
an
opposition.
artist.
March 31st, 1884, he takes office for the 48th Congress. He proposes federal debt relief for South Carolinians. Lost their property due to non-payment of war taxes, but the House rejects this proposal. He then works on an amendment to a bill regulating the manufacture and sale of liquor in Washington, D.C. Offers an amendment that would integrate restaurants in D.C. After much debate, it's added to the bill. The bill passes in the House, but the Senate rejects it. Again, he's trying. In December of 1884, a coalition of black state senators in South Carolina nominates Smalls for a seat in the Senate, but it's not meant to be. And he loses 31-3. Democratic Governor Wade Hampton. So now he campaigns again for the House and wins again in the 1884 election against Democrat William Elliott. Wins in a state really settling into some Jim Crow shit now. From 1885 to 1887, he'll serve as a member of the 49th Congress. Smalls asked Congress to approve a $50 a month pension for Maria Hunter at this time, widow of General David Hunter, one of the first white commanders in the Union to raise black regiments in the war, lead them. Hunter also issued an order to free enslaved people in Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. Democrats opposed Smalls' request, though, because of Hunter's slash and burn strategy in the Shenandoah Valley and for his lack of support of defendants' rights in the trial of the conspirators in President Lincoln's assassination. Oh, boy. Smalls gave an impassioned speech to the House. Can it be that there is a secret or sinister motive, either personal or political? Can it be that this is your revenge for all of his patriotic conduct? Yep, called him out. You pieces of shit, you fucking lost the war and you're pissed about it, and now you're not going to do the right thing. The bill passes in the House and Senate, but President Grover Cleveland vetoes it now. Says the case should have been handled by the Pensions Bureau. Weak, Grover. I bet he vetoed it because he was worried about the optics of how it would look with his constituents if he didn't. Same old shit that happens today. Robert also proposes a bill that allows the redemption of school farmlands outside Beaufort that are owned by the federal government. He submits a resolution requesting relief funds after an 1886 flood destroys crops and homes in the district. The House refuses, though, to provide those funds. Hard times being a politician. Then during the 1886 election, he faces opposition from a black politician, Henry Thompson. He will lose, and his career in D.C. is finally over.
I
But
sense
not done with
a
government
material
work quite yet.
here.
Between 1889 and 1913, he'll
My
serve as
Cobalt
U.S.
Glitter
Customs
is a
Collector back to
bard.
New
She's also the
Serves
one
two
who does
non-consecutive
anything involving
1889
making clothing and also
1892,
science stuff.
and 1889
Nice.
to 1913. Appointed to the position by Republican President Benjamin Harrison.
How you been? How's the stream been, by the way, bud?
And returns when Republican William McKinley takes back the White House. And then Smalls leaves his post in 1913 when Democrats take over the government yet again. And then backing up a little bit here, before 1890, at the age of 51, Robert remarried to Annie Wigg, 34-year-old teacher from Charleston. They would have a son together named William Robert, born in 1892. And then before he took that U.S. Customs Collector job in Beaufort, Robert had been offered a U.S. Army Colonel's commission in the Spanish-American War and the post of U.S. Minister to Liberia, but he declined both job offers to stay with Annie in Beaufort and their son. Also, before he retires from government service in 1895, Robert had delivered a speech before the South Carolina Constitutional Convention to prevent the disenfranchisement of black people, where he gave a now famous quote, "My race needs no special defense, for the past history of them in this country proves them to be equal to any people anywhere. All they need is an equal chance in the battle of life." Yep. 1895, Robert's second wife, Annie, would die unexpectedly. Rather than wallow in despair, that tough son of a bitch kept fighting for what was fair, what he'd done his whole life. The following year, in 1896, he went before Congress to try and get that full money for his actions during the war, that prize money. They didn't pay him enough for that ship he brought to them. He brought forth a bill to the House so he could receive $20,000 for the performance of one of the most daring feats of the rebellion. It wasn't the first time he'd brought this measure before the committee, but this time they did reimburse him $5,000 in addition to the $2,000 he got before. So probably still not the fair amount, but more. 15 years later, okay, now jumping ahead, after he's retired from the
My
government,
Cobalt is honestly
February 23rd,
insane.
1915.
She made a Tesla coil and
passes
another
away in his home
Cobalt
at the age
got
of
her
75 from
guitar,
diabetes-related
and she thought,
complications and malaria.
I can
Right?
combine
After a
these.
quiet
She
final couple
crazy.
years in his hometown,
She's
running his business,
crazy.
spending time with his family,
It's crazy good.
have to deal with Jim Crow bullshit. The item, a Sumter newspaper, wrote, "General Robert Smalls, the Bob Smalls of radical fame, one of the most notorious figures of the black regime, which was overthrown by the Hampton Revolution of 1876, died at his home here Tuesday, 23rd. Smalls, as I mentioned earlier, buried behind a bust at the Tabernacle Baptist Church Cemetery. And it seems, despite all the bullshit he lived through, he died a happy man. I hope he did. Did a whole hell of a lot during his life and never seemed to let the bastards.
No, I mean everybody has their own opinions about this stuff and all that.
Good job, soldier. You made it back. Barely.
Hopefully this is nice.
Robert motherfucking Smalls. What a life lived, right? Hope I did some of it, his story justice. So many accomplishments, so much spirit. Born in the slave quarters of a home in Beaufort, South Carolina. Never knew his father, but likely probably raised by the man in a way that was his father, also enslaved by that man. He lived the first third of his life as an enslaved man. He and his mother worked inside the McKee family home. Lydia made sure to expose her son to the true horrors of slavery, which made Robert rebellious, lit a fire in him to fight for what was right. It never went out. Then, knew he wanted to fight against the unjust institution of slavery. As a teenager, Robert worked on the Charleston docks, where he learned how to manage a ship, how to sail along the South Carolina coast. Age of 17, he got married to Hannah Jones. Now wanted nothing more than to buy his family's freedom, but it wasn't possible due to his low salary and the terrible unjust times he lived in. When the Civil War started in 1861, Robert sent to work on the Planter, Confederate supply ship, and he figured out a new path to freedom. He worked on the Planter for almost a year when he got the idea to steal the ship and sail to the Union blockade, which would rescue him and his family and release them from the chains of racial bondage. Robert entrusted his plan to a small crew of other enslaved men and 3 enslaved friends. Together, these men planned an escape that seemed impossible. And the men didn't back out, or the ones that didn't back out,
That's absolutely
they carried out that plan. Under the cover of darkness, Robert impersonated
Hopefully
ship's
she
captain,
looks nice.
sailed through 2 Confederate
I always
forts,
try my best.
past numerous other Confederates. Over the previous months, he'd memorized all the proper signals to make it seem like he was just on a routine mission. Now he and his family escaped unharmed.
Back to the main.
Served then in the Union Navy
Back
for
to the main
remainder of the war.
stuff.
and recruit thousands of black soldiers to help the North win. Also fought for the Union as the first black ship captain. After the war, Robert participated in Reconstruction of the
Like,
South by
there's
opening a
a
school,
kobold right
store,
there.
serving in local politics. Then he got back to fighting, the worst ways of the South by participating in the South Carolina state legislature and the U.S. House of Representatives.
Ooh.
Smalls had power and influence, represented hope for black members of the Republican Party. His main accomplishments were fighting for equal voting rights and anti-discrimination laws. Robert faced racism, jail, threats from hate groups, constant political attacks from white Democrats during his long tenure in politics. Never let any of that scare him away. He was determined to serve his community no matter who threatened him with what. He finally retired from his position as Beaufort Customs Collector in 1913, retiring from public service and at the age of 73, and then dying 2 years later, 1915, in the same home he was born in as an enslaved person. In the home he then, had to take a white man to the Supreme Court to keep. Robert Smalls was and still is an inspiration to so many. He valued hard work and determination, never gave up, never stopped fighting. A symbol of success during a time when the majority of people in the country he lived in, the country he'd fought for, were so totally against a black man succeeding. He gave hope to thousands of people in the South, despite whatever obstacles they faced, and there were many, they could still change their lives for the better. And now he gives hope to me, and maybe to you. What inspiration are you going to draw from him? I feel a little silly when I think about what I'm taking from him. I privately bitch quite a bit about how much harder it was to do stand-up and create content the past few years in a culture that had, increasingly became polarized and easily triggered, so easily offended. Bitch about being worried about having a sizable chunk of the audience here turn on me, seeing all this crumble, turn to dust because maybe I refused to pick the far right or the far left stance on this or that. I was worried that by not appearing to support BLM in the way some wanted, or by not appearing to support law enforcement in some way wanted, or in the way some wanted, by not giving blank, generalized, support to conservatives or liberals, that this would all be over. And you know what? Boo fucking who, if that does happen. Robert Smalls fought for what he believed in, expressed what he believed in, even if that meant it would enrage someone to the point of killing him. He lost shit all the time and then just fucking came back. And I'm worried that that me expressing my thought out opinions, might cause people to stop listening. How weak, actually. I'm
Kobolds, I
disappointed in
think, are
myself.
my
Think about that.
favorite damn
If this did all
device.
go away, and I'm not worried about that
Yeah, I
anymore,
mean,
just so you know,
it's
I can be a little
whatever you want to
paranoid.
draw
But
them
if it did,
as.
in the grand scheme of things, well, so what? It's a great ride, and I'll always be grateful. Would I be sad? Sure, but you gotta soldier on. Would it be comparable to Robert Smalls trying to win an election when white supremacists were terrorizing voters at the booths? Fuck no. Would it be comparable to worrying about the KKK might lynch you or someone you love every day? Do the divisiveness and stress of these times compare in any way to what many Americans went through for most of this nation's history? Nope. I don't worry about some sadistic motherfucker legally whipping me or one of my kids or my wife, because we got the wrong skin color to be out too late. I don't worry about someone literally selling my wife to some other slave owner who might then rape her and I can't protect her. Are things more culturally tense right now than they were pre-pandemic? Yeah. Are the times still much better than they've been for the majority of America's history? The majority of the world's history? Oh my God, yeah. Thank you, Robert Smalls, for a little perspective reminder. Thanks for the admirable life you led, the example you set, that's nasty and fucking grit you displayed. And thank you to all the historians who helped document his remarkable life so that his legacy will never be forgotten. He kept on trucking. All right, I guess we should all do the same. What's the alternative to just soldiering on? Hail Robert motherfucking Smalls. All right. That's his story. Now, before today's top 5 takeaways, I'd like to review what 2021 was like for me and for Bad Magic here in some ways. So many thoughts. Remember when I had such high hopes for 2021 at the end of last year? And then 2020 started off with a Capitol riot? Weirdest storming of a national capital ever.
Let's see if I can find something else to listen to. So since Robert, scared to death. Yeah.
That have come from the earth.
Kid, but she'll make things and then just leave them out on the counter for
With
like a
what?
couple.
Cook the meat first.
Right. Yeah.
So you were, I think we were going back and forth because I was losing my mind. I was like, there's no way she does that. We were both a lot of like, okay, Lindsay, you have to tell us what the deal is. So I talked to Grandma Charlene, and which is the most important thing. There have been a lot of messages about the casserole situation, and I want to address this.
Seriously?
Yes, so many messages.
About the tater tot casserole?
Yes, because there are so
All right. when I learned about kobolds, I immediately was like, yes, cute, cuddly, but tough and can be very intelligent. Yes, I love the cute kobolds. I'm very sad. I'm gonna have to write a letter to my Pathfinder game because I can't play a kobold. I will have to send them a letter, a very strong letter of like, let me play some rat folk, because I want to play rat folk. I want to play rats. They won't let me. They will not let me,
So
and
many
I'm
people that
so
are like, I
mad.
cannot believe he puts, or his mom puts, raw meat and then puts
In the
other stuff
Wrath
on
of the
top of it
Righteous
and then
game,
cooks
you
it.
can't
A lot
play.
of like WTF.
You can't
But then
play
a lot of other
kobolds.
people of like,
Or
well, actually,
the
like,
only
it would
furry
cook
race
out,
you
it would
can
be
play
okay. So
is
then
the
there's a lot of like,
fox
okay,
people,
Lindsay, you have to tell us what the deal is.
which
So I talked
their
to Grandma
secondary
Charlene,
ability
and Charles
is
says
just
that she has
turn into
two
human.
different casseroles. One in which the meat is
What-
cooked first,
What
and
the
one
fuck
in
is
which the
that
meat
point?
is
What is the
not
point?
cooked first. So her He-Man, like AKA
What's the
shepherd's
point of
pie,
that?
she
Like, who
cooks the
gives
meat
a
first.
shit? I don't want
Okay,
to
but
turn
that's
into a
the one with,
fucking
like,
human.
cheese on top and everything. I know what
that
that
one's
was.
like, it's like
Like,
ground
that's
beef.
one of their
Technically, it would be
fucking
cottage pie,
shitty
but ground
abilities.
beef,
And I'm
mashed
like,
potato,
you didn't
cheese,
even give
some
them
sort of,
like extra
ground beef,
claw
cream of
attacks or
mushroom,
bite
no,
attacks to
generally
make them
speaking, there would not be
fighters or
only cream of
anything like
mushroom the way
that.
your mom makes it.
Yeah.
But like it would
No.
just be ground beef, a vegetable, like
Suck it up,
corn, generally
Buttercup.
speaking, and mashed potatoes.
They
Now,
get
we
to
never
turn
put
into
cheese on it, but your
humans.
mom puts cheese on top of
Well,
everything. So I don't know if that's
I'll never use this
colloquial,
ability
if that's
because
your
it
mom,
doesn't
or
ever
if
come
that's, like,
up
my
in
family
the
did it differently.
story
That's a small town
of
trailer.
like
Okay, fair
people
enough.
see
Well, I
me
mean, I
as
grew
a
up poor, too.
different
We just,
person.
I don't know if we just like couldn't afford
Like,
cheese.
it's such a
No.
dumb
because
ability.
there was never cheese on anything. And
Couple
then
red
government
plus,
will give you
let
free
us
cheese.
play them.
well, we were on food stamps.
There's also other.
So,
there's
although that was, like, when
also
I was
the
much
bird
younger. I don't know.
people.
Anyways, and then her other
Tengu.
casserole, tater tot
Tengu are
casserole, you
also
don't cook the meat first.
not playable in the game.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were. I think we were going back and forth because I was losing my mind. I was like, "There's no way she
Tengu
does
are
that."
not
We were
playable.
both
Rat
right, actually,
folk,
because one time she does, and one time
kobolds,
she doesn't.
I'm impressed with my
many
mom and
other
stepdads. Just
furry
like
races. It's
how
like, you
tough and hardy they
fuckers.
must be
You
because my
sons of
mom
bitches.
routinely eats foods that are way expired, like
This is true.
by a year or two, like
know.
canned things that like they expired in like 2006.
I know.
And they're still in the cupboard. And then she'll leave things on the counter after. That's a big thing growing up. It does kind of weird me out, even though I did it all the time as a kid. But she'll make things and then just leave them out on the counter for
Like
like
what?
a couple days, like a casserole, not refrigerate it.
But it's cooked,
It is cooked, but then she'll just leave it out in the open air,
not covered.
not covered.
Mm.
Just that's the thing that happens. I just feel like their immune systems must be so just robust.
Yeah, maybe. Well, now, like when we would get pizza,
Like, I don't think food poisoning could do shit to me.
when we would get pizza
Yeah.
as a kid, and it would have meat on it, we would obviously it shows up cooked,
Mhm.
and then my parents would leave it in the box out on the countertop or on top of the oven or in the
All
oven, not
races should be
refrigerated.
playable.
So I guess the
Let me be
left
me.
out doesn't freak me out as much because then also I think about all the things
Let
that you
me
can buy
be me.
that like don't make sense not being refrigerated. Like, why can I buy tiny Horizon Organic milks
Mhm.
not refrigerated? Something
I
about
don't
that.
know.
I won't do it. It freaks me out. But why can't I? So
Must be sealed a certain way.
so there was the casserole update. I needed to clear that up before 2022 because there's just been
Right.
too many messages and I couldn't go into the new year with that hanging over my head.
Well, for new listeners, welcome to our new podcast called Casserole Talk,
Oh my God.
Casserole Breakdown.
I have so
with
many
Daniel Lindsay.
casseroles I could share. I have so many. I got so excited talking to our friend Doug Mellard. He was like, we were like, oh, like what meal at Thanksgiving are you most excited about? He's like, it's so silly. It's this like broccoli cheese casserole. I was like, oh my God, I know that casserole. I didn't know that anybody else knew that casserole. I thought it was something my mom made up. I think the recipe comes from the back of the Cheese Whiz can.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it is.
There we go. That's episode 2.
Episode 2 on catching up with casseroles.
I would
world's-
love it.
The world's worst podcast.
Come on, though.
We eat a new podcast. We eat a new casserole dish on air
Ooh,
every week.
my
and
misophonia, like my whole
Mhm,
body just went into
We
convulsion.
have 3 listeners who
Who don't mind?
We have our three fans. Our three fans band together, and they start a side podcast called Casseroles and Cats.
Perfect.
Uh-huh.
That would be actually a very fun podcast, I have to say.
Mhm.
You and me just chatting about life.
Mhm.
But we start with a casserole. That's how we jump into conversation.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Now, for real things that we have going on here at Bad Magic, through the crazy amount of generosity and support from our fans, both on Patreon and just the kindness of your hearts, you guys, we came up with a total of $49,000 for the
That's
Giving
awesome.
Tree this year, which is fucking crazy. 16,000 came from Patreon, 15,000 came from Dan and I, and the rest came from fans. And
Mhm.
yes, there were some big donations, like blown away. I'm like, $3,000. Are you
Jesus,
kidding
yeah.
me? How do you just have that lying around and just like, here you go?
Yeah.
But the vast majority, it's like $20 here, $50 there, $10 here. So the number of
If I want to
people
be
that
a
donated,
kobold, I should be
I
able
couldn't
to.
track it, but there
I
were so
want to
many.
be
So
like,
thank you.
oh,
Yes,
should be
and
able
with that
to,
money, we were able to have
etc.
198
I want
kids.
to be anything.
fantastic.
That's amazing.
And
You
also,
changed the
they
lives
don't
of
have Summoner
198
in the
children
game,
this holiday
which is a
season.
200.
Pathfinder
200.
You like an
original,
even number.
and
Mhm.
Gunslinger.
Okay.
You
And then
know,
also,
Two of
next
the
summer,
fucking
Bad Magic Summer Camp.
like
Wet hot American summer style.
very
adults
like
only
that's
camp.
what makes
We just wanted to
Pathfinder
give you guys a heads up.
Pathfinder. No, I'm
We will
like,
be
well, you should just
announcing
make
more
a
things as we
Starfinder
have more
game at
details
this
to
point.
share.
And they
Tickets will
did
be on
make a
sale
Starfinder
in
game, but it's
the
an
spring,
Amazon.
like probably
It's not
March-ish.
really a game.
That's not a definitive date, but just giving you a heads up. There will only be 500
It's like an
tickets available. So
interactive,
when we
like,
start
thing.
talking
It's
about
not-
it, and when we say
it's not
that they're going
very.
on sale, make sure you have
It's
your
not a
calendars
bit.
marked and
It's
all
not
of
a
that.
game.
And the dates for that, for people who need to
It's
request
a
off work, will be August
interactive
20th
audio
through
thing.
22nd here in Coeur d'Alene. So it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Mhm.
I don't know
And
what
there will
fully
be
it is.
variations therein, like when can I show up and all that. Don't worry. We'll tell you all those things. And in terms of pricing, save your dollars. Tickets will be similar to like any other type of like festival thing that you would go to, like Bonnaroo, Coachella, any of those kind of like multi-day sort of things.
Mhm.
Fucking no
then
one
The
knows
thing that
what you're
I'm most
talking
passionate
about,
not
Lindsay.
that I don't love like summer
Bonnaroo.
camp is great.
Fucking
next
what
year,
the fuck is
in January,
Bonnaroo? You
Dan and I
fucking
are launching our scholarship foundation,
Mhm.
which is like a huge passion project of mine. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. Dan has definitely been on board with it too. And yeah, we both just we just
Starfinder-
believe that
Starfinder
education
is good.
the way out. You know,
Yeah.
it's I don't know, we both grew up without a lot of money, and my family, I mean, I didn't have any scholarships because I didn't even know how to get them.
Mhm.
And I came out of a 2-year college with $100,000 worth of debt, which should never fucking happen to anyone.
Mhm.
And so I've always wanted to get into some sort of nonprofit helping people navigate that system. And actually those things already exist. So being able to just give money to people who need it is something that we are going to figure out. So starting in January, those Patreon donations that Patreon money that we take to make a donation to various charities, we'll be figuring out a percentage of that will be held back and put into the scholarship fund. The fund will build up over the course of the year, and then we will, have deadlines and submission processes. And we have hired somebody to help us work on that. And yeah, we're really excited. And as it unfolds, we'll be sure to keep you guys posted.
Very, very exciting for that. I would not have been able to go to Gonzaga if it were not for academic scholarships.
Right.
Yep. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. The option is to end up with a ton of debt that you can never get out from underneath.
Right.
I hate to
and then
work,
I have
but
a
I'm
paranormal
literally yawning
update
so big
to
my
share
eyes
before
are
the preview.
watering.
Oh, yeah, and
I'm
just like, if
very
you're a new
excited,
listener,
but
for some
definitely
reason
gonna
you're
keep
tuning in,
This is
learning.
not the
This-
typical
As always,
opening.
Yeah,
appreciate
it's normally
everything.
like 1-2 minutes max.
Yeah.
Like we try to really keep it condensed because we know you just want to get into the juice.
Yeah. We have some exciting end of the year
It's
announcements.
fine.
Yeah, we just want to talk to you guys a little bit.
But
I
this
just
is,
wish
this
I
is an
wasn't fucking
update to a
tired as
paranormal
well.
encounter
It's
that
also
I shared
warm
early
in my
on in the
fucking
podcast.
room. I
Oh,
fucking
yeah.
hate
A
it.
friend of ours, Neil
God
Vissel, who
damn.
works at a record label in Nashville. I did a stand-up album with a
God
few years
damn.
ago, 800-Pound Gorilla, a great comedy label. Also a Scared to Death fan, sent Lindsay and I an email verifying this this encounter I shared a while back. And he wrote, I hope you're both well. Really bummed that we missed seeing you last March. It apparently upset the entire world enough to stay
Okay,
indoors for a year,
Cat-Yo
mourning the
is,
misconnection.
is drawn.
Hope you and the family are all
That's-
happy and healthy. Hope we're able to connect at some point this next year. I had to share something. I've been listening to Scared to Death a lot and wanted to congratulate you both on another job well done.
Oh, thank you.
I guess I made it through the whole series twice now on my own, and a
Send a
third
big
time on a bunch of
hugs.
episodes
Thank you.
based on when my
Thank
girlfriend wants to
you.
spoop, which
Thank
was
you.
a big never
I'm gonna
before
see
she
what
heard
the
me listening to the
temperature
show.
is. It's getting
So
to
thank
me.
you for that too. I've started
Bitch.
drafting this email and put it off
Bitchy.
several times over the last few months, but the mention of my hometown of Uvalde, Texas, also Matthew McConaughey's,
Oh.
on this week's shoutouts prompted me to finish this out. I have a story to share about Uvalde as well, but that's for a different time and a separate email address. So I'm guessing that's a Time Suck update.
Or a My Story.
Or my story. Oh, yeah.
Because
hopefully.
this came to our personal email.
That's true. Yeah. On the episode that went out last week, Dan mentioned again his Rainbow Bar and Grill experience, and that's on the Sunset Strip in LA. I felt compelled to share for a while now.
I don't like
I've experienced the
so
same.
goddamn hot.
I worked as a photographer when I lived in LA, primarily shooting bands for music magazines, so I ended up at the Rainbow a fair
Standing
amount.
up a little bit.
It only happened once out of the first and second time I ever went to that place, and it never happened again.
Standing
so I'd
up
almost
just a
forgotten
little
it
bit.
entirely. When I heard you talk about it, Dan, the memory flooded back in. I was eating in the dining room downstairs, went up the stairs to use the restroom, just like I did. There was a band rocking in the little room to the side, so maybe I missed someone coming in, but I used the stall, heard the water come on. As I exited the stall, I found the hot water was on, had to adjust it to be able to wash my hands and leave. Never did the door open as far as I could tell. I don't think I ever brought it up to anyone, just assuming at the time that someone came over from the show in the side room, left the water on. I did find it weird that it was so hot, though. I wanted to keep it fairly brief, so that's it for now. I'll follow up with that story later. Just wanted to confirm the story and wish you guys a Merry Christmas. Hope to see you both in Nashville this next year. Best, Neil.
Aw, Neil.
So we hope to see you too, Neil. And yeah, and if you don't remember, or if you're a newer listener on the show, when I was in this place, the same place with Lindsay and our friend Joe Eschenbach, went upstairs. Definitely no one was in the bathroom because I used the urinal.
Well, and there was also like no one in
so
the
dead.
restaurant.
It was so dead.
We went to
early.
senior citizen dinner. Oh no, I'm stuck on my sweater.
At at 5 or so or 4, early.
Yeah, a very early pre-show dinner.
Yeah, and it was really dead. Went up there, and then the water was so hot, and it seemed to come on its own when I was using the bathroom. And then what was so weird is when I tried to recreate that by myself after that, and then later with Lindsay and Joe watching, could not get the water that hot again. And when I talked to the waitress about it, before I even said the sink, I asked if this place was haunted, and I'm like, well, I was just upstairs, and then she cut me off and said, oh, the water turned on by itself? So this is something that happens a fair amount. And what makes me really lean towards paranormal is, I mean, maybe some plumbing thing could make it like turn on that way, but why would it? There's nothing that would make it get super hot in those instances.
Sure.
But the same sink, same mechanism, not be able to get that hot otherwise.
100%.
So that was, thank you for that validation, Neil.
Does that make you more of a believer?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
How many stories are you going to close out 2021 with?
3.
Oh, you did go with 3. Okay.
I did.
know you were on the
did.
fence.
I was
Okay.
on the fence, and I thought, like, give the fans what they want.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I have 3 stories this week. I'm excited about all of them as usual. But let's see. Oh yeah. So we have one, an interesting setting, abandoned mental hospital, but not people sneaking in, like a planned visit from the National Guard doing some prep work.
Okay.
And so that was very interesting. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know how many stories like that we have. And then a family that knows they've got a spirit in the house. Mom doesn't believe, dad does. And like what happens when that spirit shows up quite a bit more frequently.
Okay.
And then lastly, our third story, somebody who wrote in, oh my gosh, wait, I think I have a problem with my stories. Oh dear.
Jeez.
Will you go ahead and talk about your third story?
Okay.
Because I'm going to look at something and make sure that this is okay.
Okay.
Oh, and I have a hiking story. I threw myself off because the first line of the first story is National Park, and I saw National, and I went with National Guard, but the National Guard's my third story.
Gotcha.
And I was
So
like,
your stories
oh, no,
are there.
I printed the same one twice.
Okay. Crisis averted. I have my standard 2. The first comes from the popular Caribbean. I always want to say Caribbean. This is not right, but Caribbean vacation destination of Aruba.
Oh,
Aruba.
Jamaica.
I know, right? The Beach Boys.
And also Caribbean Queen.
Billy Ocean. A tragedy from several centuries ago on the Dutch island just off the coast of Venezuela still seems to be echoing in the present along a little strip of land called Frenchman's Pass. Second story takes us to rural Nebraska, and man, is it creepy.
Okay.
We explore the legend of Seven Sisters Road, where a supposed series of tragedies in the early 20th century poisoned a land that may have already been home to some kind of strange monster.
I feel like we've had fans write in with that suggestion, Seven Sisters Road.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I know
We did the Seven Gates story on the show a while back, as well.
Yeah, we get
And
quite
Dice
a
Road.
few, and I send them off to the team, but also they're doing their own research. So
Mhm.
sometimes,
They just coincide.
it
Yeah.
just happens.
Are you ready to head to the place that makes us apparently both think of the Beach Boys song, Kokomo?
Look at my socks say,
Don't Stop Believing. They got Sasquatch riding Nelly, riding the Loch Ness Monster.
look at that. Look at that.
Mhm.
I think these socks were for you, but I stole them. So sorry.
I think it's a reference to Old Times Like episode.
Whatever, they're for me.
And now Aruba, Jamaica. Oh, I wanna take you
It's
to Bermuda.
Ooh, I want to
Bahama,
take ya. Not
Come on, pretty mama. Key Largo, Montego.
Montego?
Baby, why don't we go Jamaica off the Florida Keys?
Oh, what happened to the line to
Mm-hmm.
to the Kokomos?
No, it goes, there's a place called Kokomo.
Oh no, I think I have
You
it wrong in
jumped-
my head.
You jumped
Oh
early.
no, good thing I didn't chime in too much.
All right.
All right, let's go, Beach Boy.
Okay, Frenchman's Pass is the name of a narrow land passage on the island of Aruba between coral cliffs and the area known as the Spanish Lagoon, wetland now protected by the government. Today, Frenchman's Pass is occasionally used as a shortcut to get to a bridge that passes over the lagoon halfway between the airport and the town of St. Nicholas. Frenchman's Pass got its name after a deadly battle over 3 centuries ago. In the early 17th century, some French pirates tried to invade Aruba, so really almost basically 4 centuries ago, and they were confronted by tribal warriors at the narrow passage. An untold amount of French and indigenous fighters were killed, the dead almost exclusively being members of the local tribe who didn't have an answer for the French pirates' advanced firepower. In the end, literally all of the tribe's warriors are said to have died. Those not killed in the initial fighting fled into a nearby cave where the French then smoked them out.
Ugh.
The remaining warriors either died from smoke inhalation or ran out of the cave coughing and choking and were then butchered. And in the centuries since their deaths, countless people have reported experiencing strange and disturbing phenomena at Frenchman's Pass. Most of the reports have revolved around strange balls of fire seen suspended in the trees. These balls of fire or light have reportedly caused car and technology troubles. Occasionally, the balls have followed cars all the way through the pass. Others claim to lose their radio and cell phone signals in the area. Some have also reported feeling that their car hit something, then seeing nothing in the road, but then finding their car dented and covered in blood later. An unnatural silence, often heard throughout the pass, always after sunset, as if all living things flee the area at night. Perhaps the most disturbing activity encountered is when people hear crying and screaming carried on the wind. Many also see the apparition of an elderly woman in a shawl wandering the pass as if she is searching for something. And finally, an unusually high number of accidents occur along Frenchman's Pass, many attributed to the woman's spirit appearing in the road. Superstitious locals will stay away from the pass, but others and tourists often like to take it as a shortcut to the airport bridge or as part of an ATV tour. The following is a story that comes from 2 tourists who made the mistake of using the pass for an evening shortcut. Time now for the tale of the lights of Frenchman's Pass. Claire sat on the bed in her hotel room, staring out the window and watching the last of the sunset fade into the horizon. She tried to ignore the resentment she was feeling. Jordan, her workaholic husband, decided to book a late flight so he could be back to work bright and early Monday morning. Instead of getting angry, Claire forced herself to think of the amazing week they just spent together at the resort. She and Jordan had been having some trouble in their marriage recently, arguing too much, a lack of affection, and Jordan's obsession with work. Their therapist had suggested a romantic getaway as a way to reconnect and rekindle the romance in their marriage. No laptops or work cell phones allowed. And it had been wonderful. A little slice of heaven. They'd spent a blissful week relaxing on the beach, enjoying the resort and all its amenities, working on getting the spark back in their love life. And they did get a bit of that spark back. But right as they'd begun to fall into a wonderful new groove, real life showed back up, and they had to face the fact that vacations come to an end. And now Claire was frustrated with Jordan. Again. She understood that Jordan really had to work, but did he really have to book a 10 p.m. flight back home? Why couldn't they just wait until the morning? He could miss one day of work, couldn't he? The sound of the door clicking open made Claire turn around away from her soothing island view. Jordan rushed in, an excited expression on his face. Okay, I finally found a driver willing to take us. Of course, after I offered him a $50 tip on top of the fare, he grumbled, as he went around the room gathering their bags. Claire checked her watch, 8 p.m. Are you sure we should go tonight? It's really dark out there. Can't we just cancel the flight? You can call your boss, tell him you can't make it because you had some issue with the flight or something. I know he'd understand. He sighed irritably. Babe, it's fine. Remember Juan, the waiter? Claire nodded her head. Well, he told me about a shortcut to the bridge. It'll cut the travel time down, so we'll get to the airport faster, make our flight, and you know I have to get to work tomorrow. I have a big presentation that came up last minute with my team. Reluctantly, Claire gathered up their things. She looked back at the room one last time. She really hoped all their progress on the trip would come back home with them. She felt closer to Jordan than ever, and didn't want the realities of life starting to separate them again. Claire and Jordan waited in the resort's main lobby, watching the road outside as they waited for the driver. Jordan checking his watch every few minutes. The driver was running late. Finally, at 8:45, headlights pulled into the Circle Drive at the main entrance. Taxi painted on the side of the car in bright letters. Claire and Jordan raced to the car, throwing their luggage into the truck and hopping into the back seat. "You're late," Jordan rudely told her driver. Claire elbowed him. The man turned around to face them. "Apologies. The cab station is some distance away." "We appreciate you taking us on such short notice," Claire said, rushing to interject before Jordan could say anything else. "I'm Claire. This is my husband, Jordan. What's your name?" "Luis," he said. "So, Luis, how fast do you think you can get us to the airport? We have a 10 o'clock flight," Jordan inquired. He thought for a moment before answering. 30 minutes, give or take a few." Jordan sighed before perking up. "Wait, my friend who works here told me about a shortcut, something called Frenchman's Pass. It'll bypass the roads, take us to the bridge." Luis's eyes turned wary. "No, I don't think we will go that way." Jordan raised his eyebrows. "Why not?" "It's not safe at night." Claire watched Jordan's frustration rise. She prepared herself to jump in and stop an argument. But instead of fighting with the man, Jordan pulled a $50 bill out of his wallet. "How about now?" Louise eyed the money. Claire watched an internal battle play out in the man's mind. He clearly didn't want to take this shortcut, but the promise of a large tip plus fare was winning out. Claire wondered what was so bad about the area. Were the roads uneven? Was there a steep cliff? Highway robbers? Whatever it was, it clearly wasn't that bad because Louise accepted the money and gave them a gruff, "Okay, I'll take you." Jordan relaxed a bit into his seat, throwing his arm around Claire as Louise pulled out of the resort and onto the small island roads. Claire looked out the window, watching the dark landscape speed past them. Everything seemed so lively during the day, but at night it was as if the whole island went to sleep. It seemed like the three people in their car were the only ones outside at this time. It was an oddly eerie feeling. Louise turned off the paved roads onto a smaller dirt road. He slowed down to a crawl. Claire could see a look of trepidation on his face. He didn't want to be here, but why? "We are at the pass. Are you sure you want to go through here?" Louise asked them. Claire swore she saw a bead of sweat drip down his forehead. "Yes, we're sure," Jordan answered, irritation clear in his tone. Louise slowly drove forward into the pass. Trees arched above them, blocking out most of the moonlight. Now only Louise's headlights illuminated the road, casting odd shadows on the ground. They looked like strange, humanoid creatures. Claire was reminded of the haunted hayride she'd been on as a child, where the staff would jump out from the trees to scare the riders. She tensed up, expecting a man in a scary mask to jump out at any moment. She wished Louise would drive a little faster, but he kept to his frustratingly slow crawl. A glow now caught Claire's attention. She leaned forward, peering out the window, and saw what looked like orange balls of fire slowly floating down towards them from the trees. "What the hell?" Jordan whispered. Claire rolled down the window, poking her head outside. It wasn't fire at all. There were no growing flames, no smoke rising in the air. These orange orbs were balls of light floating in the trees and all around them. They slowly gathered around the taxicab, inching closer and closer. Claire rolled up her window in case they were hot. She didn't want to get burned. "Wow," she whispered. "That's so beautiful. What do you think that is, Louise? Some kind of mirage or something? Insects?" Instead of answering, he glared at her and Jordan, locking his eyes with them in his rearview mirror, his gaze angry, suspicious. "I can't do this anymore. You need to leave. I will not take you any further." "What?" Claire asked. "Leave where?" "Get out." "Hey, man," Jordan interrupted. "Just take us to the airport. Whatever these things are, they're not hurting anything. Just keep driving past them." "Get out of my car," he repeated. Slowly, Louise reached into the glove box, pulled out a real sharp-looking hunting knife. "I mean it." Claire's heart was pounding. Was this really happening right now? "What the hell are you doing, dude?" Jordan demanded. "All the times I've driven through the pass, nothing has ever happened. I take you one time, the lights appear. Something is not right with you. Get out, now." He pointed the knife threateningly in their direction. Okay. Jordan's voice shook a bit as he opened the door. Claire, just do what he says. Get out. Can we at least get our stuff?" Louise popped open the truck, never letting go of the knife. Claire and Jordan slowly got out of the car, never taking their eyes off of Louise, who was also giving them a suspicious glare down. As soon as they had their bags and closed the trunk, Louise sped off, tires leaving a cloud of dirt behind him. Claire and Jordan were now alone, with those strange lights floating around them. They inched closer and closer, one of them almost brushing against Claire's arm. Oddly, she couldn't feel any heat coming from them. What are we going to do? She asked Jordan. I'm going to call the police and report that asshole for threatening us and taking our fare but not taking us to the airport. I memorized his plate number when we got our bags out. Jordan pressed some buttons on his phone, then grunted in frustration a moment later. God damn it, no signal. Claire couldn't make herself care as much in that moment. She was too fascinated by the strange orange lights. They were so beautiful. She'd never seen anything like them before. She reached her hand out to touch one, and then Jordan grabbed her arm. What are you doing? Claire shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. I don't know. Don't touch that. We don't even know what these things are. We need to figure out how we're going to get out of here with all this stuff around us. It's got to be some rare kind of atmospheric refraction, I don't know, some kind of gas. We can find out later. Did you really have to pack so much? Anger rose within Claire instantaneously. Are you serious? We wouldn't even be in this situation if you didn't insist on taking that shortcut. We probably would have made it on time if you would have just let him take the main route. Now we're definitely going to miss your flight. Jordan checked his watch, did a double take. Something's up with the time. My watch has been stuck on 9:03 since the last time I looked. He pulled out his phone. My phone's stuck too. Claire sighed, pulled her phone out. 9:03. No cell signal. Great. Now we're lost with no cell signal. We don't even know what time it is. She crossed her arms, turned away from her husband, too angry to look at him. Jordan sighed. Claire, I'm sorry for starting an argument. We don't need to be doing this right now. I think the best thing to do is just walk straight through the pass. Juan told me it will take us right to the bridge. When we get our cell signal back, I'll call another cab, okay? Fine. You're right, she said. We need to work together instead of fighting. Grabbing their bags, they turned around to face the rest of the pass. Those orange lights had come to a standstill, frozen all around them, filling the trees. It reminded Claire of thousands of eyes, watching their every move. Claire and Jordan slowly made their way down the straight dirt road. The only sounds were their footsteps and the rolling of the suitcases behind them. It was completely, utterly silent out here. Claire was afraid to breathe too loudly. She had this eerie feeling of being watched, and if she made a sudden move or too much noise, she'd alert these glowing watchers, and something bad could happen. Neither Claire nor Jordan had any idea how long the pass truly was, how long their walk would be. He checked his phone periodically for a signal, and they remained stuck in a dead spot. Claire had no idea how long it had been. Her sense of time felt off. She didn't know if she'd been out here for minutes or hours. The pass felt endless. After what felt like miles of walking, a cold breeze drifted past them, rustling the leaves in the trees, making a strange hissing noise. It reminded Claire of a snake, just before it strikes. All the lights blinked out at once then, as if somebody had blown them out like a candle. Another rush of wind hissed through the trees. Claire and Jordan froze. He placed a comforting hand on her back as he looked around. The lights, although creepy, had provided plenty of illumination for the path. Now all they had was the dim light of the moon above them. Looking around, Claire could see that they were still in the middle of the path. The narrow path lay before them, behind them, in an unfathomable distance. Jordan, she whispered, turning around to face him. She was met with a horrified expression. What? Shh, he whispered. Claire turned back around to see what had scared him. An old woman was slowly walking out of the woods, hunched over, her hair in a long braid going all the way down her back, layers of shawls wrapped around her body. Fox. She carried a wooden walking stick in one hand, flaming torch in another.
Been?
Her hair was so
That was your
white.
stream.
All of her was
I was
white,
in there
actually.
for a second. Sorry, I wasn't there
was
for.
She actually glowing?
Sorry,
Claire
I
shook
wasn't
her head
there
to
for
clear
long.
her vision to try to get her eyes to focus properly.
Hello,
The old
everybody.
woman was glowing, casting a bright light all around her, brighter than the torch she carried. Claire was too afraid to call out to ask the woman where they were.
I'm
how
listening
far it
to
was
the
road.
spooky
Something in her gut
scaries.
told her this was not a good idea. It seemed like the woman couldn't see them, but if Claire spoke, maybe things wouldn't go well for them. Ghost, her mind spoke to her, as if it were a separate consciousness, not woman, ghost. Jordan moved closer. Claire could feel his chest moving against her back. He was breathing rapidly. Claire's heart was pounding. She was still too afraid to move.
I hope you're doing
The old
well.
woman never turned around to face them. Instead, she walked along the edge of the path, moving her torch around, craning her neck in all directions. It was as if she was looking for
I saw
something.
some
but what?
of it.
Jordan, what should we do? Claire asked. I don't know. Jordan's foot moved and kicked a rock, making a loud shuffling noise in the dirt. Claire felt his body grow tense behind her. He
So,
stopped breathing,
as you
pulled her tightly
know,
against his side. The
Raven,
light slowly
I'm
flickered
drawing
back on
that
now, from a
lady,
faint glow
that
to a bright,
chunky,
angry red.
that chunky lizard woman.
Claire had a moment of sickening realization.
And I'm
They
drawing
found
this
us.
lady. I drew
For
this
whatever reason,
lady.
maybe these things couldn't really see them
Drew
before,
my
despite being so
singer,
near.
and
Or
now I
rather, they
need to
couldn't see
know
what they
where I
were.
need to put
Maybe she thought her mind
the
had
two
all
other
kinds of
ladies
crazy
in
flittering
here
thoughts.
in this
Maybe we
picky.
appeared as nothing more than orbs to them, but now they could see her and Jordan. And if that were true, would she and Jordan now see what they really were? And what were they?
Oh,
She
the
didn't want
beauty.
to find out. The old woman now paused her search. She straightened up and slowly turned around.
Alright,
For a
fine.
moment,
I'll move
time
the
stood
cord.
still.
I'll move the cord out of
Claire
your
and
way.
Jordan froze, holding each other tightly, not breathing. The old woman locked eyes with them, cocking her head in
There.
an animal-like way. Her face
There you go.
contorted into a satisfied and terrifying grimace. The old woman's mouth opened unnaturally wide, and she let out an ear-piercing scream. The scream blasting through the air,
Tonight
shaking
was
the trees
chaotic,
as
and I love
carried
it,
over to
but
Claire and
I'm
Jordan.
very sleepy.
She winced,
Gotta
wanting to cover her
quickly
ears
get
and
my
block out
tea.
the
It's okay.
horrible sound. That
It's
was a
alright
scream
that
of
it was
pure
chaotic.
rage, and it was
My night
directed
has
right at
been
them.
pretty
After a moment of
non-chaotic
hesitation, Jordan
the
grabbed
whole
her arm.
time.
Run, he shouted, pulling her with
It's
him
been
as he
pretty
sprinted back the way they came,
unchaotic.
back towards the resort, back to the safety of electric lights, people, and cell service.
Oh, it's just
The
a
floating
spooky
orbs
story
flickered in and
about
out as they ran, illuminating the path one moment, plunging them into darkness the next. Claire and Jordan ran as fast as they could,
Yeah.
but neither one of them were in great shape. They had to slow down to a jog, then to a walk as they lost their breath and their muscles quickly cramped with exhaustion. Thankfully, everything seemed back to normal. Although it was still dark and unnaturally silent,
Ugh.
the strange lights were now gone. More importantly, the screaming woman nowhere to be seen. They left
Chimera.
behind all their things
Would
in the
you
middle of
like
the
to
pass,
join
but neither
the
one of them dared
Hakim-
walk back to
the
retrieve them.
Hakim
Instead, they walked
cult?
and walked
I don't know
forward
what that
until finally
is.
they heard the sounds of cars
No, I
driving
don't.
past them on
I
the
don't
road.
join random
A local
cults
police officer,
without
who happened
knowing
to be
where
passing
they
by,
are.
escorted them back to their resort. He seemed suspicious of their story when Jordan reported their cab driver, but he dutifully took down the license plate and made a report. The officer then dropped them back off at the resort where Jordan and Claire were forced to pay for another night. Jordan, of course, did not make it back to work on time. The next morning, they didn't bother to return to Frenchman's Pass to retrieve their things. They took the long way to the airport. On the flight home, Claire and Jordan mutually agreed that from now on all future vacations, no more shortcuts.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really know what it is.
Nope.
Huh.
Bunch of lights, and they said they saw a ghost of an old woman.
I would have gone back for my stuff the next day.
What did you have? Just
Yeah, the
during
light of
daylight?
day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe if it happened to you, though, maybe you'd be too freaked.
But I just feel like I would want to talk to maybe like the concierge or somebody at the hotel. Somebody has to, like, if that happened, I think I would feel like, okay, there's no way this was a one-off. I would want to talk
Yeah.
to somebody, and then maybe somebody at the hotel doesn't want to say. Just
But if
because,
you
like,
need to go
you
to
know, they could
bed,
get
go to
trouble at work,
bed.
like, don't scare the guests, yada
Sure,
yada
sure,
yada.
Get some
Let's just
rest,
say,
Shy.
what was his
You're
friend's name?
always
Juan?
invited to hang out
Waiter?
with me,
I would
but
find that guy,
also
be like,
if you
okay,
need
you told
rest,
us
go
to go
get
that way.
rest.
Give him $50 to go get the stuff.
If you want to
well,
show
also,
me your
like, what
whip,
the
you
fuck
can
do you,
show me
man?
your whip
Like, what do you know
and
about
your
that?
nay-nays.
Because it could have been a little bit of a setup.
Lad have already showed me his whip and
You don't know
nay-nay.
about that?
Huh.
No,
Yeah,
I did for sure. I'm suspicious of people.
You can show me your whips.
Yeah,
You
maybe
can
some sort
show
of,
me
like,
your
sacrifice
nay-nays.
or
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yee.
Chihuahua.
So, yeah, I a couple pictures here.
Okay.
The first one is just a
What you
picture of
guys up to
Frenchman's Pass.
tonight?
Okay.
So that's the little road that doesn't look too bad at all in the day.
No, but at night that would be creepy AF.
Yeah, especially this next one shows more of like how the brush can cover it in parts,
Mhm.
go completely over it. So at night that would block out part of the sky and
Oh
everything.
yeah. When in that first photo, there's just so many branches and things
Mhm.
growing in different ways. The shadows that would
Mhm.
cast would be. Ugh.
And then this last one, nearby cave, where some locals may have once, many years ago, died of that smoke inhalation.
Man, that's so sad.
Mm-hmm.
Also, caves really freak me out.
Yeah, they're just so
I don't know why
dark.
So
caves
dark.
would
and
freak
don't
you
know what's
out.
in there.
What
yeah,
did
and
caves
even
ever
ones
do
that
to
are like,
you?
what was that in Italy? There was like some like cave story that you told. Like two friends, they were on a
Oh,
foreign exchange kind of thing, and
I'm casually
caves
eating
in general,
sand
like-
as usual.
yeah, they were
okay.
crypts. I
Yeah.
think they were going through some like old
All right,
tombs and
Earth
stuff.
Striker.
Yeah,
but still a cave-like system. You know,
Mhm.
like there's
I mean, if
old
you need
mines
to eat
here. Going
sand,
into
go
any
eat
of that
sand.
really
I'm
makes
not gonna
me
stop
uncomfortable. It
you.
doesn't make me feel claustrophobic,
I
But my
personally
fear
think that
of
you
it's
shouldn't
all
need
gonna
sand,
collapse
but
on
you know, I'm
us.
not your
Like,
parents.
it's
you
not like
know?
I can't breathe in there. I just think like
You're
this is
your
fucking
own.
scary.
You're
Yeah.
your own
It's
person.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yee.
Don't care for it.
So I thought that was a good warm up story. This next one I found much creepier.
Okay.
So I'm curious if you do too.
Hope
I wanted to
everybody
ask you,
else
there,
is doing
like,
good.
well, I
Hope
just like made this
everybody
note of
else
Dead
is
Man's Curve. It's in
enjoying
Ohio,
themselves.
like
If you
on the
guys,
local freeway,
if you
like
guys
going.
want to
I wanna
talk,
say it's
go
coming
talk. If
out
you
of
just want to
Cleveland.
chill out, chill out.
But like we're
It's
just,
all good.
people, I don't know, speed a lot and die.
Mhm,
I don't really know the story behind it. But do you have anything like that? Like where you grew up, or because I don't know of anything around here like that.
No, I mean there were some bad corners in the canyon, like a windy corner. This is the one I can't remember the name for it, but I mean nothing paranormal associated with it. Just a definitely slow down.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
thinking about that like bullseye that's on like the.
Oh yeah, that one is just a really bad corner where
Okay.
a lot of cars have hit. My uncle was one of my Uncle Phil
Yeah.
crashed a Camaro in that exact spot because like a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, okay, 35 miles an hour, whatever. It's like this one is it's basically like a right turn in the middle of the freeway
Mm-hmm.
that isn't announced. It's a deceptively a hard angle.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
What-
a lot of people just hit it. That's why they made the bullseye there.
I just wonder like if anybody's had something happen there,
Not that I
something
know of.
paranormal, because
Yeah.
I'm sure someone has died there at that.
I would assume
I
so.
would. I mean, I would think
Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah, they
that
don't.
spirit could be
They don't
moving
add
around.
that shit
Maybe that's like what the Frenchman's Pass
until
thing is
somebody
too, though.
dies.
Mhm.
Maybe it's not all
Which is
this other
always,
stuff with
like,
fun and
isn't
maybe
that
not some big
kinda
sacrifice.
sad?
Maybe it's like some dangerous thing and someone died there and they're maybe that old lady was going to keep them safe.
She didn't seem friendly when she screamed.
Like, I don't know. Maybe
Who
she's
knows?
just screaming out in anguish. I
Yeah.
don't know. Also, I've never been kicked out of a cab. Have you ever been kicked out of a cab?
No, I've heard of people getting kicked out of cabs though.
Really?
Yeah, but no, not me personally.
I also want to know why 903. That was a very specific time.
Yeah, I don't know. Might have been just when they happened to go through there.
Mm. Oh,
I think so because they had a 10
they
o'clock
got picked
flight.
up at 8:45.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah,
just
okay.
when they went through there.
Okay, fair. All right, fine. Okay, I'm ready to go to Nebraska.
All right, we're gonna travel down another dark, dusty, lonely road. Some spooky setup here. Then we're off and running with this crazy story.
We haven't said spoopy a lot lately. I'm glad you're bringing it back.
Seven Sisters Road lies just a few miles south of Dunbar in Nebraska City, Nebraska, on maps simply called L Road. Part of it is paved, part of it is just dirt and gravel. Does not cut through any towns. It's not terribly long, nothing but farmland. A road that would go entirely unnoticed and unknown even to locals who live in the two little towns no more than 3 miles away, if not for a dark and disturbing
got
history
you,
that
but
gave
I'm gonna
Seven
go
Sisters
work
Road its
mode,
unofficial name.
Listening to Henry
In
talking
the early
with
1900s,
his mother
7 young
about
women
the flu.
allegedly murdered and
we've been
hanged in
babysitting
trees
and
along
then
this
may
barely used
need to
dusty
figure a
road.
plan for the day.
family went to live on a
Gotcha.
Along where
It's
the road
totally
now lies
fine,
below
Raven.
Dunbar.
I'll miss
The
you
family consisted of
anyway.
a mother, a
I'll
father,
miss you
a
so
brother,
hard.
and 7 sisters. They
I'll
lived in
mi-
an area
I'll
with
miss
7
you.
gently rolling hills, and after a heated argument one night, the volatile brother, long known as a troubled and violent young man, stormed out of the house.
No, I'll
He hid in
miss
the
you.
woods, stewing in his anger,
So
and
sad.
then one by one he lured his sisters out of the house, led each of them to the top of one of the hills, then hanged them from a tree.
Oh my God.
No one knows what happened to the bodies or to the brother afterwards. The parents, John and Julia Warden, are buried on the property. Julia died in 1880, John in 1901. They did have 7 daughters and a son. The only possible evidence that the story, might be more than just local legend. Back when this tragedy may have occurred, 7 Sisters Road did not exist. The area remained undisturbed for years following these supposed 7 deaths until construction started. As soon as the road construction finished, people began reporting supernatural occurrences. Once again, when something on the grounds where spirits dwell is disturbed, those spirits become active
Ugh.
and often seemingly angry. In November of 1968, a local deputy responded to calls about sightings of some sort of monster every night for a week. The monster reportedly witnessed emerging from a field night after night at roughly 11 p.m. The strange beast, said to be roughly 6 feet tall, looked like a cross between a bear and a wolf. Next, a group of teens partying in an old, not in current use barn in the area one night saw glowing red eyes in the cornfields out of which this beast would emerge. They sped off down the road, but then this monster supposedly grabbed the bumper, stopped the car. Before they were able to drive off, it shattered the back window.
Holy hell.
Not long after reports came in about this beast, farmers in the area and the occasional teen driving through the area began reporting hearing the sound of women's screams. And oddly, sometimes the sound of bells ringing loudly from a private family cemetery nearby. A suspicious amount of mysterious car troubles also seemed to plague the short stretch of road where the sisters may have been killed. Stalling, dimming headlights, frozen speedometers, windows rolling up and down on their own have all been claimed. One man's radio started playing the Doors song, This Is the End, over and over, no matter how many times he changed the channel.
Oh.
Or station, rather, I guess. The old Warden farm along the road, currently owned by Nate Sturm and his wife, Becky. They live there with their 2 daughters, Natalie and Abby. Natalie says she's heard bells and whispers. Becky says she's heard screams. It was blood-curdling. She said it was not a bobcat. It was definitely a woman screaming. It was crazy. One morning, Nate Sturm was out hunting before dawn, and he watched a strange creature walk upright directly towards him, he says. The creature had glowing red eyes. He prepared to shoot it, but then it ran off and left him alone. He says he hasn't seen it since. Natalie Sturm told the Omaha World Herald that most people don't see anything the first time they drive down L Road, but that
I'm
the
gonna
second
go for
time
3.5.
is when it always starts.
I'm
Only
gonna go
4 of
for
the 7
3.5.
slight hills remain. The other 3 ground flat for farming, but the spirits of the 7 women and whatever kind of monster may live in the fields with them has allegedly never left this area. Time now for the tale of the Nightmare Beast. Tonight was good, right? Lori smiled. Yeah, it was. Blake reached over and squeezed her hand. It was late, almost 10 p.m. They were making the just a bit more than a half-hour drive from Blake's parents' house in Douglas back to their small apartment in Nebraska City. They enjoyed a nice, if somewhat awkward, dinner together. Things were tense. Blake was working on repairing his relationship with his parents. Ever since he dropped out of med school a year ago, they were not happy with him, especially since they'd paid for most of his education. They were so disappointed they'd actually refused to speak to him for over a month. They were just now starting to accept the fact that Blake wasn't going to be a doctor like his father and continue the family practice. Lori was just thankful they'd gotten through the evening without any awkward, passive-aggressive statements flying around the table. She noticed that Blake didn't make the usual turn onto Highway 2 this night. Instead, he turned onto a long gravel road leading up to a little hill. "Where are you going?" Lori asked. "Oh, I found a new way home last time I visited my parents. Cut straight through to town. Faster by 3 minutes." Lori smiled. One of Blake's obsessions was finding the quickest routes home. He was always exploring different roads, timing the journey to find the most efficient way to travel around the area. He could be a peculiar guy, and this was one of his things, as she'd call them when talking to her friends, and she liked that he was a little quirky. She didn't even know this route existed. It looked like a private road, but there weren't any signs saying they couldn't pass through. There were no lights, just some power poles dotting the left side, a mix of cornfields and trees all around, mostly corn, but some pockets of the land were either too rocky or hilly to be worth turning into farmland. Lori stared out the window. It was one of those nights where the sky was especially clear. The moon shined brightly, and the stars looked like glitter in the sky. She became lost in her thoughts. Such a nice Sunday night. They were out much later than she wanted to be, but she didn't want to rush home when things were going so well. She still had to put clothes in the dryer, wash the sink full of dishes, pack her bag for work. She found herself getting lost in her to-do list thoughts. Had she washed her favorite shirt yet? Or was it still in the dirty clothes pile? If it was dirty, she could wear her white sweater with black slacks. Blake slammed on the brakes, jarring her out of her internal monologue. Lori went flying forward, bracing her hands on the dashboard to keep her face from smacking into it. The tires screeched, gravel flew up around them. Her eyes snapped to her husband. He was frozen still, mouth agape, eyes wide in terror. His arms literally shook as he gripped the steering wheel too tightly. Lori's eyes shifted to the windshield. Her heart dropped into her stomach, and she let out a small cry of fear. There was a monster standing in front of the car. She didn't know what else you would call it. "Blake," her voice cracked. "Blake, what the hell is that?" He said nothing. The thing in front of them was huge. It felt like it was 10 feet tall, even hunched over as it was. Its paws, for lack of a better descriptive term, were massive, tipped in claws that had to be as long as knives. Covered in matted, greasy-looking fur, long snout hung open, revealing massive canines dripping with saliva. Worst of all, the thing had glowing red eyes staring right at them. "Blake!" She took her eyes off the creature to look at him. His eyes were locked on the monster, seemed to be staring right back at him. Lori shook him. "Blake, we need to drive away." He showed no reaction to her words. It was like he didn't even hear her. Lori shifted her eyes back to this thing. It was closer. She could see the air clouding up with each heavy breath it took. "Blake," she said, as loud as she dared. "Blake, drive!" Nothing. He continued staring at the monster, his pupils dilated, almost blacking out the irises of his eyes, his skin pale, breath coming in heavy pants. The thing was closer. "Blake, please! Please drive!" she begged. Her voice shook, her heart pounded. What could she do? She wouldn't be able to push him out of the driver's seat. It was like Blake was hypnotized by this thing. Still locking eyes with him, and only him had some sort of hold on him. He wouldn't move no matter what she did. This thing took another step closer. Oh my God, drive, please! The monster now stood directly in front of their car. Its eyes shifted to Lori. No, she whispered, no, 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 no. Blake did nothing, still frozen in place, the odd stare on his face. Blake, drive, she screamed, not caring how loud she was now. The monster dug its claws into the hood of the car now, the claws making a horrible screeching sound as they dented the metal. It used its grip to propel itself upward, jumping onto the roof of the car with a loud, crunching thud. Drive! Lori screamed, pulling at his arm, punching his shoulder, anything to get him to react, to just put his foot on the gas and speed off. The monster's hand slapped down into the sunroof. It dragged its claws along the glass. Lori screamed. Blake still did nothing. Lori heard the loud crunch of metal. The monster's hand shot through the roof, reaching down with deadly claws, barely missing Lori's face. She screamed again, cringing backwards against the door. Blake! She cried, a sob rising into her throat. Was this even real? Were they going to die like this on a road in the middle of the country with some impossible-looking monster trying to eat them? She wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Just drive, Blake, okay? Please, please just drive, she begged. His head suddenly snapped towards her. Why? He asked. His eyes were emotionless, his voice not his own, almost robotic. The passenger side door suddenly ripped off its hinges now. A large clawed hand grabbed Lori's arm, pulled her out of the car. She screamed as the monster now dragged her along the gravel road, rocks cutting her skin, shredding her clothes as the thing dragged her into the woods. She tried with all her might to dig her feet into the ground to resist in some way. Blake, help me! She screamed. Surely someone would hear the screaming. Blake would snap out of it and save her, right? The monster continued dragging her further and further away into the darkness. Lori decided in that moment she wasn't going to die without at least trying to fight. She reached her spare hand out to claw at the monster's arm. When that didn't work, she grabbed a handful of gravel, flung it at the monster's head. It turned around and roared into her face, snapping its fangs, red eyes glowering at her. She grabbed another handful of rocks, threw them into its eyes, screaming with rage. The monster growled deep and threatening. Instead of eating her, though, it dragged her faster into the nearby patch of woods. Lori felt her jeans rip now, bare skin sliding against the gravel, her arm bleeding from the monster's claws. Now she's in a little grove of trees. When the monster suddenly lets go, sending her flopping onto the forest floor. It stands over her, red eyes glowing with menace. It opens its mouth, baring its fangs, saliva dripping onto her face. Lori closes her eyes, praying that if she's going to be eaten, she'd die quickly and it wouldn't hurt too much. But instead of eating her, the monster stops growling, goes completely silent. A moment later, Lori hears its pounding footsteps running off into the woods. It had left her? She dared to open her eyes. She blinked. She blinked again. Lori now watched as a translucent figure of some woman slowly floated towards her. Her long dress fading into wispy tendrils at the ends, barely brushing against the leaves as she approached. She was sure now she died, and she felt at peace. At least it hadn't hurt. Lori wasn't even the least bit afraid of this woman. She thought she must be some sort of angel. She waited for her to get closer, wondering what would happen next. Is this what life after death was like? Floating women, monsters, and dark woods? She wanted to laugh. No one had gotten it right. She wished she could tell Blake. Blake, she thought. That monster was going to kill him too. She had to find him, to warn him it was coming back. But she couldn't because she was dead. So where was he? In his own woods, seeing his own floating woman? Her woman was right in front of her now. A cool breeze seemed to emanate from her body, fluttering over Lori's face. The woman didn't speak. Instead, she held out her hand, palm up. Without thinking, Lori lifted her own dirty, bloody hand, gently intertwined her fingers with this ghost woman's. And she now felt the distinct sensation of falling. That stomach-dropping, twisting and turning feeling before she came to a stop with a jolt. She was back in the car, sitting next to Blake. Lori took a deep, shuddering breath in, her eyes darting all around, but the monster was gone. Just her and Blake. Her hand on her arm, his hand on her arm shaking her. He looked terrified. Jesus Christ, Lori, are you okay? Like blacked out for a bit. I did? Yeah, he said, eyeing her over with concern. What happened? I had to slam on the brakes. A doe ran out into the wood with his babies. I stopped so you could look. I thought you might want to see him. But you just froze up. You were staring out the window, then all of a sudden you screamed at me to drive. I've been trying to talk to you for the past minute. Are you okay? Lori was so confused. Did she just imagine all that? Her heart still raced with fear. Her arms stung from gravel and monster's claws, but no blood. It certainly felt real. But it was like she'd fallen into another world, then fallen back into this world. She had to have been dreaming, right? Everything was peaceful around them now. The road perfectly clear, the stars still glittered in the sky, no red eyes shining in the darkness. You're tired, she thought. You're stressed. A bombardment of logical explanations entered her mind, but none of them felt right to explain what had just happened. She'd tell Blake some other time, but not right now. Right now, no matter how peaceful it felt for the moment, she really wanted to leave this place. Then she heard what sounded like a faint scream in the distance, barely loud enough to hear, a woman's scream. She thought she saw a look of recognition on Blake's face that suggested he might have heard it too, but she chose not to ask him. I'm just tired, she said. Let's go home.
Oh, yeah. Would you believe me?
You know what? With the weird blacking out
Yeah.
and just going away,
Yeah.
something that you've never done before, and I'm assuming that she had never done before,
Mm-hmm.
I would think that something really fucking weird just went on.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Because that's an interesting, like, even though he didn't see anything, it's like what a weird trance for her to suddenly fall into out of nowhere. You know, no drugs. They just came from his parents' house.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm guessing no prior history of anything like that.
Probably not.
That would be, and then that little scream at the end that they talked about it. And if he
Yeah.
did hear that too, and she heard it with all that and stories of the area, yeah, I'd probably think something happened.
Little glitch in the matrix, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. Because how is it possible that like he didn't see any of that?
Who knows?
It's like a weird like Men in Black kind of thing.
Right.
No, it didn't
That's true,
happen.
that with in
That's
UFO
because it
lore, there's all
didn't-
those talks
You're
of
not
like
paying
car
attention,
stalling, those kind of
Lindsay.
things, which didn't happen
It
there.
was all in her brain. It was all a dream. You didn't pay attention. Again. I can't believe it because you're not paying attention, Lindsay. It was all in her head. It was not a glitch in the Matrix that just never happened. Oh man, I'd be a terrible co-host to her. I'd always be like, no.
But loss of time.
Mm-hmm.
But odd for one person to experience loss of time.
That's what I mean. It's like they Men in Blacked him, but not her.
Right.
It's like it didn't work on
Right.
her. Like this
Yep.
thing happened.
Sorry, I was thinking of the actual like lore around the supposedly real Men in Black, and
Yeah.
then I caught the movie reference. Yes, they did a little memory wipe. Mhm.
Yep. Yeah. Man, that's weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought for sure that last part with
Fucking legs hurt.
the white floaty woman,
Yeah.
and then the sensation is falling. I was like, oh my god, you're experiencing being hung because the women were hung
Oh.
because she said she felt, and then she snapped too.
I didn't
So-
even think of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So like clearly like trying to like share. I think that the ghost, I don't know what the beast was. I mean, probably symbolic of the brother or like, I don't know, some other entity altogether. But the woman clearly, if we're going to dive into this,
Yeah.
one of the 7 sisters, and they were all hung on the hills,
Yeah.
and they were all lured out into the forest by their
Mhm.
brother. So like a weird, I feel like that ghosty thing saved her,
No.
but not
Yeah.
without,
Yeah.
but like it came at a cost of like, I'm going to transfer my pain to you or something.
Right.
No.
my fear.
No, that woman
Ooh.
did not
Want
save
to see some
her.
pictures?
Yeah, I do.
Ugh.
This for and
God,
also
you-
just because
you're-
to save emails from coming
I
in.
don't think.
remember it did this
I don't
early on.
think that. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Fine. It's fine. It's fine. No need to. It's all good.
on time suck.
To
I get so
get
many emails.
Hold up
when
with
it's
the
a person
person
that's hanged.
who's
Oh, it is
obviously
hanged.
not
Yeah.
fully there.
I always forget. It's such a weird little Americanism.
I know it is. It is because it's like we do everything else different for past tense.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't follow the rules.
Yeah, that's a really odd example actually of like I don't know where that started,
Yeah.
but how you would say same word,
Mhm.
and if something's on a wall, it's been hung on a wall.
Mhm.
But if it's a person,
They've been
it's
hanged.
hanged.
I know.
I don't know where that. I can't remember where the root of that comes from. But
Yeah.
I remember I said that over and over in a Western.
I was just gonna say, was it like a Jesse
Oh,
James
yeah. It
kind
was
of?
like Billy the Kid, I think, in so many emails, which is good. I learned.
Yeah.
But
Now you know.
Now, I never heard that
Now
before.
you know.
This first picture is just a stretch of Seven Sisters Road, that L Road.
It doesn't even look that bad. I mean, during the day.
Yeah, and it's and it is like very nondescript. I mean, I reference him like taking it to go straight into town. It actually wouldn't go straight into town, but I'm guessing he just said like avoiding towns and cuts up. But it's just like this little like, like there's just an alphabet series of these little farm roads that just divide these old homesteads.
Right.
And it's more like an extended driveway than a home. This next one is the old Warden family cemetery, and that's that current owner, Becky. What does that say? Strum.
Strum.
Yeah.
Strum.
Just
Strum.
checking out the one of the family tombstones.
Would you buy land that had another family's tombstone on it?
Yeah, I would, because I like the Wilson. I talking about my buddy Kyler Wilson. His parents lived on a large piece of land at Race Creek outside of Riggins.
Yeah,
and there was a family cemetery on the grounds. It's pretty common for like homesteaders because they were living out in random farmland and they didn't have local cemeteries yet, and so a lot of times they would and had lots of land and they would just have a family cemetery.
No, I understand how a family cemetery happens.
Oh,
I'm saying I wouldn't buy
Really?
land. No. You're gonna live amongst dead bodies?
Everywhere's full of dead bodies. Go back far enough.
Not under our house.
We don't know that.
I do know that. In fact, I do. Idaho's quite young in terms of established states.
Indigenous. The tribe's been here. Yep.
They weren't there.
No, they were.
No, they didn't like our street.
They loved our street. We're probably living on a burial ground.
I know. I've been seeing a lot of shadows in the house lately.
Oh man.
I know. I saw one. Remember, I talked about it last week, and now I saw another one. I'm like, God damn it! I gotta cleanse the house. Gotta have a little chat with whoever's there. Time to go.
Time to get out.
I don't like it. GTFO.
GTFO. And this last picture, just a little field near the old Warden farm. Just kind of could be spooky at night. Thinking of little branches coming down.
I know farms are scary.
Yeah, and there is like I looked at like thank God for Google Maps, but it's like Google mapping the area and zooming down there, and and I think I understood when they were talking about the woods. There's like mostly farmland, but then just stretches around like irrigation canals and stuff, and just I'm guessing an area that was too rocky and just hilly to be easily farmed.
Okay,
and they would leave that wooded. So there are little like small patches of woods intermingled throughout the cornfields.
I see. Thank you for that.
Huh?
Google Maps is fascinating.
It is. I feel like a spy.
I know.
I'm like, ooh, what's going on here?
I know, it's kind of creepy though too. But
I like to pretend that it's live. That I'm like I have like some kind of God view of Earth, and I can just zoom in on people's towns and houses.
Well, I feel like on Apple Maps there's a new, but it's not live. It's just Street View, right?
Yeah, just Street View.
Yeah, because that would be.
They'd have to have cameras.
Well, there are cameras everywhere.
Yeah, and be tapped into them and streaming through like some insane server that is not even. That we don't have anything that powerful.
Never glitches.
Yeah, it'd be crazy.
Oh my god. What's your squishy this week?
He's some little kind of raccoon maybe guy. I don't know.
Is he from Fruit Ninja?
He might be. I don't know Fruit Ninja well enough. I looked at some images and he didn't pop up. Nothing looked like him, but he looks like a little Fruit Ninja guy.
I didn't know what Fruit Ninja
might be
was.
A fox. I don't know.
Oh, what does the fox say? You're welcome. Your mom taught me about Fruit Ninja.
Funny. My mom plays Fruit Ninja.
Well, she used to. I don't know if it's cool anymore.
I don't think my mom cares about what's cool.
Let me say, I don't know if it's popular because I think that she gets, roped into like, oh, do you know what this is? And she gets really excited about herself.
Playing a little game is funny.
Oh, man. Okay, so I'm excited. I haven't had a story with a picture in a while. So that's fun. So stay tuned after this story to see a picture about what I'm talking about. This was so weird. This guy, he goes on a hike and he comes into a clearing full of crosses. Not like one or two, but like 20. And not just regular old crosses. They're like dressed up. They have like clothes on them. Right?
That's creepy.
I know.
Clothes edition.
Whenever I get an email with a picture, I immediately like scroll down to the picture first. I'm like, oh, okay, that's creepy. Let's read the story.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah. When I saw that, I was like, what in the hell? Yeah. So very interesting. And I mean, this would freak me out. I mean, if you came upon a clearing like that, would you turn around and go back, or would you hike on through?
Oh man, depends on the mood I'm in. Depends on how adventurous I'm feeling.
Okay, that's kind of how I feel like that's how this guy said he felt.
Okay,
let's hear his story. I'm an outdoorsman with 3 years of experience working for the National Park Service and 18 years of memories exploring the backwoods of rural North Carolina. I live in a city now, but I haven't lost the confidence that 20 plus years of being outside brings you. I've climbed mountains with jaw-dropping exposure in Colorado, encountered wolves while solo hiking in Wyoming, and came face to
Wow.
face with a grizzly bear in Glacier National Park.
Holy shit, that's amazing.
You did too.
No, I did. Oh, that was Yellowstone. It was a little black bear,
Oh,
and I wasn't face to face. Thank God. It was. I
That's
turned my
pretty good.
back on it.
oh, it's pretty close. I was
Yeah.
trying to give you some street cred, man.
Oh man, I wish I had a story. Well, no, I don't.
No, you don't. No. And encountered off-putting people in the mountains of North Carolina and Washington State, and I've heard loud rustling outside my tent at 3 a.m, but I have never felt uncomfortable outdoors. As long as I maintained my composure and prepared thoroughly, I knew I could manage any situation. On the morning of the 5th of July, 2021, I felt no differently. I'd made plans with my girlfriend to go hiking, but after a long weekend, she decided to stay home. I packed my bag, made sure I had everything, grabbed my dog, and then set out on
Yes,
the
I
road to
think
central New Hampshire
that's what I
for
wanna
an
do.
easy day hike. I was going
With
to
you
climb up a small
guys.
mountain and traverse a ridge
We
before
could
coming
go
down and circling back to my car.
on a hike
When I arrived at the trailhead,
together.
nothing felt out of place. I quickly got out of
If
my
I
car
can,
and started
if I
making my way up the
had
trail.
good enough
The
service
day
the whole
was
way through, I would
beautiful.
love to do
The
a
air
hike
was warm
with you
and
guys.
breezy. The sky
A
was
full
bright
stream
with blue,
of
with bright
hiking
blue
with you
large
guys.
cotton ball clouds, and there wasn't any inclement weather in the forecast for the next few days.
That would be cool.
No more than 5 minutes into my hike, I stepped out into a clearing in the forest. In this field, there were about 20 crosses dressed in old clothes. I made my way forward and looked at these rough-shot scarecrows. Some were dressed in old hats, and others wore wigs made out of what appeared to be woven grass and moss. In hindsight, I felt uncomfortable and should have turned around then, but I took some pictures and decided to keep going. Maybe it was the weather or the 2-hour drive to even get there that kept me going. The next hour or so of my hike went smoothly. The trail was shaded and offered some great views of the surrounding mountains and lakes, and my dog was busy enjoying all the great smells that you can't find in a city. As I reached the crest of the ridge, I noticed a small old cemetery tucked off in the woods. Nothing too out of the ordinary. People had been homesteading these parts for hundreds of years. I kept going forward and lost myself in thought, thinking about old friends and happy memories. Something broke that line of thought abruptly, and I found myself frozen in place. An icy feeling washed over me, and my dog bristled with agitation. My dog stared off into the woods and began growling. Whatever she was growling at must have been moving as she circled me while keeping her eyes deadlocked on the forest ahead. I tried to listen for any crunching leaves, but the world felt silent except for the growl of my pup. In this moment, there was no breeze, no birds, no nothing. I came to and decided I needed to turn around immediately. I started making my way down the trail as quickly as possible, thinking about whatever I had encountered at the top of the ridge. I didn't want to dwell on it long, since it was one of those few times I've ever felt uncomfortable in the woods. I wasted no time in getting down off the ridge. Just short of a half mile from the trailhead, I felt a chilling touch, followed by a forceful shove. I went flying forward, smashing my phone and scraping myself up. I stood up to see no one behind me. A feeling of intense fear rushed over me, and I took off, running to my car with my dog. Blowing by the scarecrows, I didn't stop until I got to my car and only stayed long enough to throw my bag in the back seat and make sure my dog was secure. I peeled out of the parking lot of the trailhead and started blasting music to distract myself from what had happened. I'm not very superstitious, and I've tried to rationalize it to myself to no avail. Something was in the woods with me that day, but I never saw it. Still, I could feel its presence everywhere around me. Whatever was out there did not want me around.
Eek.
Yeah.
Actually feeling getting pushed
I know.
is creepy. And then just like, I was just racking my brain trying to think of like, why would someone put clothes on all those? And that's a lot of crosses.
That's the thing. It's not like just like one, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes, when there's an accident, let's say like on the side of a highway, there'll
Yeah.
be 1, 2, 3 crosses, something like that. But something about the combination of the crosses and the old homestead grave, where
Right.
I'm like, yes, like you were saying before, people have been homesteading forever. There's graves everywhere. Okay, that alone, maybe not so creepy because
Yeah.
it just feels
Yeah.
like it belongs there. But these crosses, we're going to look at them. They're
Oh.
like new. It's not, they don't feel, in my opinion, they don't feel old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe, you want
Let's
to
take a
pop that
picture.
picture up there?
Yeah, because I that's so
That's so fucking
weird.
creepy. That's not someone drying laundry. That's not. It's just, and there's like that one way out there, and what, like I don't know. it feels symbolic of something.
I
Like,
know it looks like it's like some kind of ritual or something.
I
where
know.
I'm like, what? Or it
Very
looks like
culty.
somebody who is
I've
seriously
seen that
mentally ill. But
before.
it's like, but that's a very weirdly specific thing to do because it's like it's not close to like road or anything. From what he said, he talked about like a couple hours.
yeah,
So it's a
yeah.
little ways
Yeah,
out.
that's not that weird. I've seen stuff like that
There.
before.
So who would carry all that shit out there
Mhm.
and assemble that just randomly
I know.
or for a joke? It feels very intentional.
I
And-
know.
Yeah,
and
it's
I
probably
mean,
intentional,
God,
but it's
yeah, that's
probably
so,
like
it's so odd. I've never seen
here's
anything like that.
will be
And I love these in a
lost
pit.
and stuff
Yeah,
like
because I feel
that.
like without the
I've
photo,
done
it
that
doesn't carry the
before.
same
I,
weight.
no,
True.
I
I
haven't
would've
done
read the
that.
story
I
and I'm
have
like,
seen
okay, sure,
families
creepy, but,
that
like,
do that before.
Seeing is believing.
I've never
Yeah,
done
yeah,
that
can you see that
before.
picture again, Joe?
Let me
That is
specify.
such an odd setup. And is that okay? Because some of them are clearly T-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Is that one? It's like from on our side, like off to the left. Is that one like a dress? Maybe
On the left, like the far first row.
First in from first closest row to us. Yeah, where Joe's little cursor is.
Oh, I think that's just like a very big T-shirt.
Oh, okay.
But he did say that some. I mean, we can't see it here, but he said some of them had wigs.
What?
I mean, it's just so specific, and he said that a lot of it was made of like grass. Like it's not. What did he say?
Mm,
Yeah. I looked at these roughshod scarecrows. Some were dressed in old hats, and other wore wigs made out of what appeared to be woven grass and moss. So it's like, I mean, that's a lot of time.
that's a lot of time, and like you would only actually use a real scarecrow to keep birds away from crops.
Right, and
there
that's
is
clearly not a crop.
No, this is not like at all. They're not growing anything there. That's like a tribute ritual. That's something that's super weird.
It's something.
A scarecrow scares away animals. This guy just
Right.
wanted to scare away people.
right,
He's
right.
like, you know what? I live up here and I want to scare hikers so they never come back here again.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, no shit. And I like in my mind, I decided to connect the grave and the crosses where I was like, okay, is it
Yeah.
like some tribute to that family? Like where there
Mm-hmm.
maybe there weren't enough graves and somebody did like maybe they're two isolated things. Maybe like somebody put up the crosses for
Man.
their family, something else, and then somebody else came along and was like, do you know what would be so creepy if we
Mm.
put clothes on
Huh?
these?
Imagine seeing that at night.
Whoa. Well, I would never go for a hike at night.
No,
so.
I know, but I'm just like, if for whatever reason,
Because if you were camping, what if you were camping
you walked out to go to the bathroom,
and you saw that?
that would be, man. I
Would
would
we leave?
Well, if it was in the middle of the night, we might stay tight, but we would be in the tent.
Good morning, you
I think the
boy.
safety might
How's
be
it
off 9
going?
millimeter.
I'm
Okay.
the
Might be just like-
Ulysses
just at the ready.
boys,
Okay.
just
To blast
drawing,
some monster.
Okay.
just
That, that wouldn't necessarily
drawing,
help us.
just
That feels good.
just
I feel safe.
drawing these
When you talk about his dog
faces.
getting all the country sniffs, I had to think of Gigi.
Of course you did.
I had made my little note about country dog. I love it when our dogs
Oh.
become country dogs, as
I
we call them.
know, it's so cute.
And Gigi especially, it's like could not be more jacked about all the fresh sniffs.
Mhm.
You can see her little nose twitching as she just runs all over the place.
I know.
And I love how dogs get like after a couple hours of that, so exhausted.
Well, it's overwhelming to their little
Yeah.
senses.
It's like just wears
Hope
them
you're
out just
doing
to get so
well,
many
by the
sniffs.
way,
Yeah.
Heart.
It's cute.
Hope everything's going
Dee Dee.
well.
Dee dee. All right, so
I'm just
I think
listening to
we've talked about
spooky
this 1 million
stories
times.
while
spirits living in your house. If they
while
feel
also
not
drawing.
scary, you think you would stay with them,
Yeah.
and you don't think that you would ask them to leave. Like you would just like coexist with
I
them.
don't know. It's all about gut feel. Maybe
Mhm.
maybe not.
Okay.
Maybe not ask them to leave.
Okay, well you know me, I'm like all of them got a GTFO. They can't stay. They
No,
got-
Hope
but
you're
like Joe
doing
brought up a while
well,
back, like,
Heart.
what if,
Hope
it's like some
everything's
little kid
going
spirits,
well.
they're just like,
Oh
it's a decent-
no!
Wow.
Tired.
Yikes.
Oh no!
Listen.
What happened?
It's not my problem.
What
I can't change
happened?
it. They're already dead.
What
make it better for
happened,
them.
my
I
friend?
don't think that spirits can feel better about things. I
How do
just
you
spit
know?
on myself?
To the
that's
sleepiest
just what I
of
think.
nights
Because do they really?
happen.
Do ghosts?
Who knows?
Do spirits
We don't
have
know. We don't know anything.
feelings?
We don't know. No one
I
knows.
don't know. I don't know.
Nothing in
Well,
particular.
let's find out what's going
Oh,
on in
okay.
this household, where there's definitely
So,
something.
Nunya.
We definitely know
Oh,
it's
okay.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is into it
I
except
love,
for the mom.
I love Nunya.
And then it escalates into something else entirely.
Okay.
And it might give a little credit to you, like,
Okay.
okay, well maybe you should keep them around. Maybe they'll keep you safe.
Ah,
Uh huh.
be protective.
I know, and which I hadn't really considered.
Well, guardian spirits.
Maybe Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's a different guardian.
I was born in 1998, which, by the way, makes me feel so old,
Yeah.
and grew
That's
up
too
in
young.
Minnesota in a 1950s Rambler. My sister and I always shared a room, my brother in the room to my right, and my parents to the room to the left. My parents worked in the trades, and my siblings and I went to public school. We were extremely normal. The only kind of seasoning in the family is that we have grandparents that are actual hippies. Like they believe in aliens and everything paranormal. And
Love it.
And in fact, my grandma was actually the one to tell me about the Scared to Death podcast. Isn't that great?
Thank you, Grandma. We love you.
Thanks, Graham. I first remember seeing the two ghosts of our house when I was very little, maybe 4 or 5. I woke up to go to the bathroom, and on my way back to my room, I saw 2 kids run past me in the hallway. Afraid, I ran to my parents' room to sleep with them. The next morning, I explained to my dad why I was sleeping in their room, and my dad proceeded to tell me about the 2 kids that lived in our house with us. My dad said that if I was nice to the kids and shared with them and played with them, they would be my friend. They are only kids after all, he said. From the way he talked about them, it was almost like something you tell your kids to explain something else with the hopes that they might understand the truth when they grew up, almost like Santa Claus. My mother, on the other hand, was extremely religious and did not believe in ghosts at all. She believed that all spirits either went to heaven or hell. They did not just hang around. She was always the skeptic on everything. The paranormal activity in our house was always happening, so it wasn't something we were ever worried about. It was simply part of our life. It was usually small stuff that you could explain away. Cabinet doors opening on their own, the house creaking in an unusual manner, the dog only ever sleeping in the kitchen with a light on, faint laughter from the laundry chute, and the sound of bedroom doors creeping open without a door actually opening. My sister talked to the children in her sleep, but even that didn't seem abnormal to us. We were used to it all. One night was different, though. My sister used to sleepwalk and have night terrors, making me a very light sleeper. One of these nights, I woke up to the sound of my sister quietly crying. Thinking she'd had a nightmare, I jumped over to her twin bed to see if I could comfort her. She looked at me with absolute terror on her face, and then she lifted a shaking hand and pointed to the corner between 2 windows. Immediately, I knew that something was different than her usual night terror. I looked to where she was pointing. A shadowed figure that was so tall it had to hunch over to fit in our room. It was very gaunt, so much so that you could see the knobs on its joints. It had abnormally long arms that almost touched the floor, gigantic hands with finger joints bent in the wrong direction. Its eyes and mouth were open, and they were darker than anything I had ever seen. I quickly and quietly moved in front of my sister so as to protect her, the figure's attention then shifting to me. Somehow it had frozen me in place. I couldn't talk, I couldn't move, and I could hardly breathe. My sister was crying with her face pressed into my back. I was so terrified and I couldn't do a thing. The thing started to move closer to me. It moved jerkily and wobbled like it was walking for the first time. It inched closer to us, a heavy darkness following it, encasing the room in an impenetrable darkness. It got close enough that I could feel its ice-cold breath on my face. My sister had thrown up all over my back and her face, but because she was so scared, but she wouldn't remove her face from my back. The thing lifted a warped, bony hand to my face and leaned its face close into mine. A sound came out of its mouth that sounded like nothing I had ever heard before. I felt like a statue, though. I felt like I should have been shaking. My sister, on the other hand, was shaking so hard I thought the bed would break. The next thing I knew, the kids were in my room, staring at the thing, breaking its spell on me. I immediately wet myself and gasped for breath. The kids then began to talk to the thing, asking it who it was. The thing made that bizarre sound again, and the kids then began to grow bigger and darker, which somehow made the creepy thing disappear. I had been looking back and forth between the kids and the thing, watching some kind of paranormal showdown. When I looked back at where the kids were, there was suddenly nothing. My sister and I were terrified and confused. The next morning, our mom found us in bed together, still covered in vomit. We must have passed out. She freaked out and thought that my sister had gotten super sick in the night. We didn't tell my mom what we saw that night. We didn't even discuss it between ourselves. That night was the only night that I experienced anything that I truly believe is evil.
That's wild.
No, weird?
It's so cool. I mean, yeah, it can be scary, too, but like so cool to think about this possibility of there being so many different things out on some other plane next to ours, or out, life after death, whatever it is.
Sure.
But I just love that thought. There could be like ghosts and monsters and maybe like other things that are good but that are not
Cute little kids that keep you safe.
cute little kids keep it safe, but things of not necessarily human origin.
Yeah.
Just like a variety of just like creatures or things. I don't know, entities. It's exciting.
I find it not exciting.
I just like thinking that there's so many different animals on this planet. What if there's all these other? Reminds me of like Lovecraft, like his kind of like celestial, or I think they like horror or whatever. But like there's just like these beings, so many different beings, space beings out there, or things out in the universe.
I just don't really care for it because it feels like the vast majority of them want to cause us harm. It feels like more often than not, I mean, I don't know, maybe that's just what we focus on here, but it feels as though more often than not, it's something that wants to get you, as opposed to like, oh, look at that cute bear. Look at that puppy dog. I mean, nothing feels like warm and light and fluffy and, oh, I want one of those. It feels like, get the fuck away from me. Get out of here.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I don't really care for all the variety of options that I might be GTFOing out of my house.
Okay, fair.
And I've been noticing lately, I don't know if it's just been like on my mind or I don't know, but in a lot of the stories recently, they're like, it was blacker than black. It was darker than dark. They had no eyes. They had no mouth, but it was just these deep black holes. Is that more terrifying, or is glowing eyes and fangs more terrifying?
I don't know. It's a toss up, but I want to say just that extreme darkness is more terrifying because it allows for like you don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah, like the void. The absence of something is just so much scarier than something tangible.
Yeah.
Oh God, imagine waking up to that.
Oh, thanks.
But maybe a reason to keep the thing in our house. I don't know. It doesn't feel scary.
Okay.
Like it doesn't feel malevolent. It scares me because I'm like, oh, what's that? But I'm gonna ask it to go.
Okay.
Just, I think it's a good idea.
Ask it to come say hi to me. So Dan wants an encounter.
Well, if you would sit down and do like a session with me.
What do you mean session? Are you some kind of weird doctor now?
No, but just like sit down and like let me like call in the energy. You could communicate with it and see if you believe it.
All right.
And see if it kind of gives you what you want.
There's some kid-free nights coming up.
Okay.
Let's get weird.
Let's get weird. Oh boy. But the last time I did some pendulum work with you, you were like, I don't know, I think your elbow's moving.
True.
Yeah.
But
you have to leave that attitude at the door.
Oh, okay.
You can be skeptical, but you can just not be an asshole.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You have to keep it in your head. Otherwise, you just change the energy of the room, and then, like, what's the whole point?
All right.
Okay, I don't think this is going to go well. Okay, our last story of the year.
Yeah, it is. Last story of the year.
Last story of 2021. And it's so interesting.
It's like,
I mentioned
you're
before
gonna
that we're
change
going
the
to a
energy of
mental
the
hospital,
room.
an
It's like,
abandoned mental
okay,
hospital.
It was a part of a planned tour with, what do you say? Like
The National Guard. Yeah, like a
I
training.
don't know, Miss
a
Scientist,
staged
but,
training. Because, they go in there. I mean, the writer sets it up for us, but they do like these mock trainings, like, okay, hey, when this disaster happens, a tornado,
right, we're gonna have to go in, we're gonna have to kill all these mental patients,
and you're gonna have to clear out the room, and you have to like check, and so how does it work, and what does that feel like in a real moment? So I never thought about simulations that way.
Yeah. Might need,
He's just a baby.
Creepily,
I didn't think about that in that context of that kind of building.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we've only gone to mental hospitals, like ghost hunting.
Or
like kids
like
breaking in.
abandoned places. Yeah.
But not like set up, intended to go there with a different purpose than ghost hunting.
True.
The one this just made me think about when Kyler was going to school at the Libby Center in downtown, almost downtown Spokane. There, that area is rough.
Yeah.
And there was this one house, and I always thought, like, God, that house was particularly bad.
There was several really rough, but yeah.
Yeah, but there was one that really just, I don't know, stressed me out. And I found out later from a classmate's parent of Monroe's that the SWAT team, that's where they would do, they would go with their battering rams and practice. Like, oh yeah, of course, like the National Guard does it. The fire department does that. Like,
that's what I think of as the fire department.
Burn or So, anyways, well, let's check out this mental hospital.
Let's do it.
Let's check you in. Okay. Hey, Dan and Lindsay. I've been contemplating for a while now as to if I should tell my story, and after hearing all the other scary stories from other listeners, I decided now is probably the best time. My job is to work with different National Guards around the country and help them train for catastrophic events like tornadoes, train wrecks, bombings, etc. Anything that may cause the Guard to be called in. It's a great job, and we have lots of memorable encounters with the soldiers. This encounter was much more memorable for me and not a memory I would wish on someone else. We were called to work with a certain National Guard, and when we arrived, we were informed that this would be a bombing exercise. The soldiers would be learning to clear buildings, assist injured people, and work with deceased people, actors portraying this, and train with cadaver dogs as well as search and rescue dogs. My team and I began to prepare for the drills, and we got word on where the exercise would take place. This state's National Guard likes to make things as realistic as possible, and they chose to work from an abandoned mental hospital. This specific location is pretty well known in the area, and there had been a lot of speculation about if it was haunted or not. Me being a creep and not getting scared very easily, I found the location cool and not at all scary. We drove to the site, and as we stood outside the doors of the massive hospital, I looked up and a shiver went down my spine. It definitely had a very spooky vibe to it, but I brushed it off, chalked it up to just reading too many stories about the hospital. We divided up into teams and went to meet our team leaders for directions. I was on Team Delta, and we were assigned to the basement. The captain that was with the National Guard was standing by the entrance as we walked in, and he handed us a map of the facility as well as a flashlight. He told us that the maps were for if we got lost, or if the flashlights were because most of the lights didn't work in the building. Our manager then said that she would set off a loud flashbang to alert us that the drill had begun. I entered the hospital, and the chill in the air was almost incapacitating. I immediately regretted my outfit of old shorts and a thin, long-sleeved t-shirt. Goosebumps formed on every inch of my body. The aura of the old hospital got 1,000 times darker. Things looked as if people who worked there had just up and left. Files, chairs, typewriters, coffee machines, office supplies, clothing, and even telephones laid where they would normally be in a functioning facility. Finding our way to the basement steps, and my friend Rachel made our way down to the West Wing. Our team leader told her to camp out near the staircase so the soldiers would find her first, and asked me to travel further down and make it a little bit harder for them to find me, since the training was really trying to make sure that they cleared the whole building and looked everywhere they could possibly look. Rachel found a dusty chair with a small table attached to it and quickly sat down, grabbing her card to memorize her ailments to tell the soldiers once they found her. See, some of us had injuries that the soldiers would have to work through and make sure they get us to safety quickly and alive. I clutched my card in my hand and turned to head down the hall. A couple 100 feet away, I found a door that looked promising. I looked over my shoulder and saw Rachel sitting in her chair. Stepping into the room, I saw that it was clearly an old examination room. An old, high-backed wheelchair was parked in the middle of the room, and the whole room was tiled with a drain at the center of the room right in front of the wheelchair. An old tray with examination equipment sat on the counter by the wheelchair. To my left, in the middle of the wall, was another door, and thinking about how I needed to make this a little bit challenging, I opened the door and pushed my way inside. I thought it would be impossible for the building to get any more cold than it was. Yet here I was in a room about the temperature of a freezer. Out of habit, I flipped the light switch on the wall, and to my surprise, a small light on the wall flickered on. It wasn't bright by any means, but it was enough for me to be able to see 3 feet in front of me. I flipped on my flashlight and got a look around the room. Operation room. In the middle of the room, close to another drain, stood a large metal table. It was surrounded by metal tools and cabinets hung on the walls. A fabric partition ripped to shreds leaned against the wall near the head of the table just beside the old sink. I picked a good spot, one where I was in the shadows but could still see the door, and leaned back against the wall. I sat there for what seemed like forever, waiting to hear the flashbang, but it never came. I was exhausted from making the 6-hour drive to the state where we were working and having to be on location at 5 a.m.
It has been forever.
I leaned my head back against the wall and closed my eyes, content to just keep waiting. And that's when I heard
it. So long,
a metal clanging
Floof.
in the room just outside my door. My eyes flew
How
open.
are you?
Rachel? I called out, hoping she would pop her head into the room where I sat. Nothing. Rachel! I yelled a little bit louder. Nothing. I stood up and walked to the door, pulling it open to allow me a larger view of the room. It was completely empty and looked untouched. I turned around and walked back to my spot, and I remembered thinking, oh, maybe it was just the flashbang.
I'm tired, just finished work.
I was just about to sit back in my spot when I heard the noise again. I spun around and kept my eyes glued to the door. Being only 6 feet away from the door, something in my body told me to run, but I couldn't. It was as if someone glued my shoes to the floor. I stood as quietly as I could possibly muster, and that's when it happened. In the dark of the room outside of mine, I first heard the footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps. Blood was pounding through my ears, but I refused to make a noise. Then I watched a dark, human shadow walk ever so slowly
Well, that's
past the door
good.
that
At
I had
least
just
you
pushed
finish
wide
work. You
open.
don't have to deal with
My
it.
breath was completely stopped. And at this point in time, my entire body went rigid and my mind just kept screaming, oh fuck no. The dark figure almost passed the door completely, but before it did, it stopped. Standing for a split second, facing the way it was walking. Then it turned to face me. A slow turn of its head at first, and then its body followed. It clearly saw me, and I don't think it was liking that I was there. Before my brain could process anything, the
woke
shadow
up earlier.
person leapt at
All
me.
right.
At this point in time, my whole body suddenly began to work. I screamed and jerked backwards, falling into the metal stool and my forearm slicing open on something sharp from the operation table. When I hit the ground, I gripped my arm in pain. I could feel the blood beginning to rise to the surface of the cut. I kept my eyes shut tightly as I scooted back to my spot. When I stopped moving, I noticed that there was no more sound in the room. It was deafeningly quiet. I rested my head back again, slowly releasing the grip on my arm until it was just in my lap. I prayed to find the courage to leave the room and find Rachel. I sat with my eyes still closed, focusing on my breath when I heard, "Hey, you okay in there?" My eyes popped open and I looked at the door to see Rachel, standing there. I looked around the room frantically and jumped to my feet. "Did you hear me screaming?" I asked her, not really sure where to begin or what to say. "No, I don't think I could have heard you from where you were at.
Like
we were too far
3 or
apart."
2 a.m.
And I
Oh,
looked at her
damn.
strangely. "I just went down the hall a couple 100 feet, I responded. "No, you didn't. You went all the way down and then around another corridor. Are you okay? You look like you're in pain." My head spun with everything she was telling me. I didn't even know how to form words. "I must have fallen asleep and I had the worst dream. I also don't remember walking that far away from you." Without paying my first statement much attention, she said, "Well, they're having technical difficulties and we have a delay. They want us to come back up for a regroup with the rest of the teams." She started walking and I followed her, my mind completely forgetting about my arm and telling my brain to chalk it up to a horrible dream. We walked up the basement stairs and through the hospital. When we hit daylight, I was so relieved. The warmth on my skin was amazing, and I just stood there, arms by my side and head tilted back, letting the sun warm me up. I felt safe and calm, feeling like my experience was a nightmare and it was behind me. Until I heard my manager come up behind me and say, "Hey man, you're bleeding. What happened?" She pulled my wrist to my shoulder so I could see my forearm. There on my arm was a cut and blood coming from the cut. My sleeve split open to reveal the injury. 2 years later, I live with a scar on my forearm. Whenever people ask me how I got it, I simply tell them I fell while working, nervous to say who or what gave it
So
to me.
you are tired.
I've gone to
Well,
therapy for PTSD
if you want
after
to chill
this
out,
occurrence. I
Wow.
suffered from
Totally.
insomnia and my anxiety shot through the roof. I had to take a leave of absence from my job as well, not feeling like I was stable enough to travel so much or even pretend to be in one of those disastrous situations. Every little thing made me jump for months after it happened. Finally, I'm back to my normal self, but much more sensitive to the paranormal.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the scar, actually having like a physical proof of it, I was gonna say it reminded me in some ways of my second story, where it's like two people are down there
yeah.
and one person saying like, "What, you didn't hear me scream?" or something like they might have went into a trance or something, but then they did come back with the physical injury,
Yeah.
which matched up with what they felt while they were in this, seeing these things,
Yeah.
seeing this dark entity. Yeah,
So weird.
creepy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The thing that threw me the most was that like this person, Rachel's sitting here and this person thinks that they're like there. Like
Right,
they
and then
said like I went in that room and they distinctly call it out. Like I looked back and I could still
You're
see
driving.
Rachel.
Yeah.
But then
Oh,
Rachel
goodness.
comes to find them like, "Where are you? Like why are you so far away from us? What?" It's like, "What? How did
Right.
I get?"
There are two
there?
interpretations of like what actually happened in that physical space were so different.
Well, yeah, and I mean, they just weren't like if you were walking down, like just think about the building that we're in. If you
Yeah.
were at the door that we walk in,
Yep.
and I sat there and you walked to this end, you could see me.
Yep.
You would look back, you'd see me, I see you, we wave at each other. But
Right.
then later I come to find you and you're on the other side of the building. how the fuck did you get there? And why was
Right.
the last thing that you remember looking back and be like, oh yeah, there's Lindsay?
Yeah.
What?
Mm-hmm.
How, like, what, did you teleport? I don't understand. How did
Yeah.
you get there?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
love like the collectively all these stories. You know, people's sense of like time, space, everything like can get like bent
Mm-hmm.
and move around, and yeah.
Ah, it is a crazy, crazy world,
Exactly.
and I know you love it.
Weird. Yep, mysterious world. Be
You-
so boring if it wasn't.
I mean, there's plenty of things in this world to keep us interested, intrigued, fascinated, busy. I'm good with that. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I can go first.
Okay, go for it.
I'll thank some Annabelles. Thanks to the following Annabelles for supporting what we do here: Stephen Young, Jacob Huff, Marissa, Bailey Broom, Joy Henson, Allison Davis, Ethan, possibly with an I, Salcido, Maddie Margison, Brett Kobe, Nicole Sheely, Elizabeth Wheeler, Matthew and Misty Sybil, Trey, Kiana Martinick, Anili Garcia,
Boy.
Corinne Wickwire, Space Leader
Ugh.
Britt, oh, thanks Britt, Aaron Kelch, Tanner Johnson, Hardeep
Right.
Gill,
30 more
Callie
minutes.
Luwaji,
I only got
Elizabeth,
10 more
Crushane,
minutes.
Scott
Give
Thompson,
me 10.
Thomas Smith, Matt Brady. I paused at Elizabeth because I thought it was I saw N where there was an H at first, and I thought it was Elizabeth couch name. And I'm like, that is an interesting last name. Hi, I'm Miss Couch Name. Shame.
Oh boy. I would like to thank the following.
It's 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes. And going to bed. Let's see. Is there anything I can listen to? Not too loud. It's loud enough that it's interesting. That's background noise. Oh, ending. Sad. I'm not ending just yet. I'm not ending just yet, Floof. Come on now. Come on now. Don't be that way. You know, I'm not ending just yet. Don't be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And also, you caught me right when I was about to, you know. And also, you're sleepy. If you're sleepy, then go to bed. Not while driving. Go to bed when you get home. I don't know how long your commute is. I'm just meh. I want to cry. No! Floof! No! Don't cry. What makes you want to cry? Work suck? Yeah, but feeling sad, unmotivated, depressed. No! No! Poor Floof. I'm sorry you're not feeling good, Floof. Just normal life, huh? I get you. Nothing makes the life good. No! You got friends. You got incredible friends. You got me, you got...
You'll drive away with the confidence and peace of mind you want. Express Oil Change and Tire.
You got Dix. You got Willow. Well, you also got the rest of this community. I'm sorry that you're not feeling good, Floof. Just know that your friends are here for you. Ah, Real Kaz. See, people are here for you. We're here for you. If everybody doesn't know, Real Kaz is gaming. Didn't know? There's the realest Kaz, not the fake Kaz. Real Kaz. I thought you would be going on for another hour. How was your stream, by the way? Hope it went well. Hope the dead was by daylight. Don't take anything today. I got you. I'll be back in 1 hour. Maybe need some rest. Gotcha. Gotcha. Seems everybody's fucking tired today. Like immediately, it was good. I'll be back again. Immediately, Fox raids me, and then immediately he's like, "Yeah, I gotta go. I'm fucking tired." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, all right, okay, okay." I was playing Metroid and Dead by Daylight. It was alright. I wanna commit arson. Oh no! No, don't do that! Don't do that!
Outplayed. Capture your best gaming moments. Let's say you had an awesome play.
Please tell me someone saw that.
With Outplayed, your plays turn into lasting memories. Outplayed automatically saves your game's highlights, making it easy to relive the action.
I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm so sorry that maybe, you know.
Download it for free now.
Do you have any friends online? Maybe they could talk to you about stuff.
Enjoy no hidden fees, plus unlimited DVR storage with YouTube TV. Try it free.
Because I only can do so much. Burn the last tree in 5 kilometers. The last tree in 5 kilometers. That's a lot of. That's a few clicks away. I'm sorry, Good. Today I'm just not feeling it. I understand. If you're not feeling it, it's okay. Go get some rest. You're alright, Floof. Go get some rest. You're okay. You're A-okay. Get some rest. Enjoy that time. You need some time. Take it. I'm sorry I'm not as helpful as I could be. I apologize. Probably the weather. Yeah, maybe it's the weather. It is free real estate.
It's free real estate.
It's free real estate. So many free real estates. You don't want to save that money at all. Like, fuck that. Like, fuck that. Is raining. I think it's raining over here. Let me see. Yeah, rain showers. It says it's raining on and off.
Have confidence. No confidence.
Meet Suvi, the magical all-in-one countertop kitchen robot. Suvi saves you time and lets you cook delicious meals for you or your whole family.
Baby.
The best part? It takes up less space in your microwave. Planning ahead? Simply load your ingredients, schedule dinner, and Suvi does the rest. With its revolutionary cool-to-cook technology, your ingredients stay refrigerated until it's time to start cooking. Suvi's multiple zones ensure that everything is ready at precisely the same time. In a hurry? With Rapid Cook Mode, you can go from fully frozen ingredients to a perfectly cooked dinner in less than 25 minutes. Whether you want to bake a cake, roast, steam, broil, slow cook, sous vide, or even wake up to egg bites, Suvi does it all.
I was very enamored by that commercial. Huh. I was very enamored by that commercial. Let's see who we're rating. Who are we rating? Fuck. Might be the usual one. Well, we got Enigmatism. Could send you over to Enigmatism. How long has he been on? You know what else? I'll raid Enigmatism. Just because, why not? Thank you guys so much. Alright, guys. Thank you guys so much for being amazing. Nice. Thank you guys for being amazing. Thank you guys for being stupendous. Thank you guys for the raids. And thank you guys for understanding that I also get tired. I understand that everybody else is also pretty dang tired as well. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Thank you guys for being awesome. I know it's so easy for you. So I do appreciate it when you guys are awesome. And my Twitch overlay is coming along pretty nicely. So all I need is to fix some things, some issues that I have with it, but other than that, it's totally fine. Thank you guys for being amazing, stupendous, and amazing. I will see you guys later, and keep being amazing and stupendous. Thank you guys so much. I will see you guys next time. Night night. Ugh.